It all kicks off with an insane battle where our main character pulls off the incredible feat of defeating the Demon King and his entire army of monsters to save the continent. Standing in the middle of the ruined battlefield, he had finally pushed back the threat in their darkest hour. Exhausted, Yimo confesses that they've finally managed to win the brutal war. Just then, a woman appears with the rest of the group, confirming their victory and announcing they can move on to the next phase. However, in the next moment, he's viciously stabbed in the back. Sinister shadows surround the completely exhausted protagonist. In total shock from the betrayal, all he can do is question why his own allies would do such a thing. With his bloodied hands on the ground, Yimo desperately tries to understand why he was backstabbed like this. Screaming in agony from the blow, he swears revenge, promising to drag every last one of those scumbags down with him. Suddenly, the scene changes, and someone is calling his name over and over. A very worried teacher kneels down, asking how he feels, while our protagonist realizes he didn't bite the dust. Yimo looks at the crowd of students around him, completely lost as to where he ended up. Still seated, he even starts to think this bizarre place might be the underworld itself. But soon, a guy shows up, mocking the supposed young master of the Yi family is so fragile he passed out right during the test. His buddy next to him corrects the joke, saying the kid doesn't even have that title anymore, since he was kicked out of the family like a piece of trash. To make the humiliation worse, the rival tells them to ignore the failure and continue the physical exam because he wants to set a new time record. The smug guy agrees right away and gets ready to show what his strength is capable of. As the teacher resumes the test with the class, a flood of memories hits the protagonist's mind like a lightning bolt to the head. Clutching his hair, he discovers that he's been reincarnated on a different continent in the body of a boy also named Yi Mu. Turns out, the boy's former family was famous, but they left him to fend for himself because his meridians were blocked. Indignant, Yimo thinks it's crazy to get a second chance in such a peaceful world. From the recent memories, humanity here hasn't mastered the arts of cultivation and just lives surrounded by some mysterious energy. Focusing this force in his hands, the protagonist recognizes what's known as spiritual flow and realizes it's quite weak in this region. Since he came from an advanced place, he knows the perfect way to effortlessly absorb this energy scattered in the air. Drawing the power into his new body, he begins the natural process to permanently enhance his physical structure. The first wave of energy generated is already enough to unblock all the boy's jammed meridians and reveal the level of a cultivator. Taking a step forward, he notices that even his new body's height has increased thanks to the sudden muscle development. Clenching his fist with conviction, Yimo lays out a plan to recover his maximum strength up to level 11 to force his way back to his own world. His main goal now is to make that pack of traitors pay dearly for setting up that deadly ambush against him. Sighing a bit from the stress on his body, the protagonist laments that his power is back to absolute zero, and he'll have to grind his way up from the start. To test the potential of the changes after his energy awakening, the boy decides he needs to assess the new limits of his physical form. He calmly walks over to the running track while the teacher asks if the student has recovered from that fainting embarrassment. Maintaining a serene posture, Yemo just confirms that today is the 100-meter dash and announces he'll also be participating in the official race. The group of bullies makes fun of his attitude, reminding him that it's Lin Bei's turn now. The prodigy who's already been accepted into the sports academy. Full of himself, the arrogant guy laughs and accepts the challenge, claiming a loser like him has nothing to lose by getting humiliated in front of everyone. Unfazed by the uncalled for insults, the protagonist analyzes the situation, knowing he's only reached the first level of his cultivation arts. However, the basic stamina of a true cultivator already far surpasses any ordinary human athlete in this weak little world. Lin Bei gets into position on the track, accepting the challenge just because no one else in school would have the guts to run against a phenom like him. The teacher takes her position as the referee on the side and tells the two competitors to get ready for the starting gun. Silence falls over the bleachers as she begins the countdown from the number 3. The rival fixes his gaze on the horizon, waiting for the number 2 with pure confidence in his athletic talent. As soon as the pistol trigger is pulled, Lin Bei bolts off, breaking the wind, while the protagonist remains crouched in the same spot without moving a muscle. From a distance, the bullies mock the boy's slowness, claiming he didn't even have the reflexes to realize the race had started. Completely ignoring the noise from the students around him, Yimo keeps his focus on his breathing and starts his own mental count, saying 3. Like a true blue meteor, he finally surges forward, cutting through the wind wrapped in a purple aura. The bullies are left speechless by the absurdity, as the rise of the legend had long since redefined the continent's standards of combat. The teacher also freezes in shock, since the performance she's witnessing defies every law of physics taught in the world. Overtaking his rival, who seems to be in slow motion, Yimo displays a speed and perception that completely shatter natural human limits. He breaks with total control right at the finish line, showing the true essence of someone who has mastered ancestral techniques. Far behind and out of breath, Lin Bei is still trying to finish the course, while the protagonist ends his mental count, reaching the number 1. The entire crowd is rendered speechless watching the end of the race as the clock hits the number 2. Yemo breaks the red victory tape without breaking a sweat, making it clear that the contest was like a human fighting a monster. Standing at the end of the circuit, he calls out the number 3 and humiliates his opponent by stating that even with a 6-second head start, the gap between them is a chasm. Stuttering in disbelief at the display, the teacher checks the stopwatch and announces that the boy just set a new record with 9 seconds and 98 thousandths. Lying on the ground, completely devastated, Lin Bei tries to swallow the brutal defeat, questioning how that failure made the impossible happen. As the uproar grows, the protagonist acknowledges that this body's talent is fine for the basics, but it's still pathetic compared to his immortal version. However, he knows this small display of speed is just the beginning of his training to force his return to the far reaches of the universe he came from. In his past life, he ruled without mercy as the most revered supreme cultivator in all of the land of the fallen moon. It took only 50 years of bloodbaths for him to crush all the masters of the continent and become a solitary deity. At 65 years old, he had finally broken through the barrier of the 11th level of power, becoming the supreme force of that place. However, the reward for repelling the Demon King was a banquet of betrayal, where his own allies attacked him like a pack of hungry dogs. Back in this peaceful reality, facing the window glass, he concludes that he needs rare healing herbs to quickly force his way to the maximum level. The main obstacle at the moment is that the price of the ingredients on the online market is far beyond his imagination. On his phone screen, the bank account of the body's previous owner shows that the inheritance isn't even enough to afford the simplest weeds. Walking toward the hallways, he thinks he could solve his financial problems by drawing magical talismans to sell to the city's rich. He quickly realizes his app balance is a measly $50, an amount that can't even buy decent toilet paper, let alone divine scrolls. Faced with this financial chaos, the protagonist realizes that finding a source of income has become a fundamental requirement to grow stronger and crush the traitors. As soon as he steps into the student bathroom, he comes face to face with the same troublemakers who were doing the dirty work on the track. Some bruiser steps up, yelling that the brat was a real pain to find, hiding like a rat in the corners of the school. The aggressor introduces himself as Wang Bo, president of the boxing club, and warns that he's in a bad mood and wants to collect the protection money early. More fragments of painful memories awaken in the boy's mind, revealing that the body's previous owner was extorted weekly and had paid recently. The goons block the exit, forming a human barrier while they wait for their boss to beat the defenseless student to a pulp. Finding the victim's calmness strange, Lin Bei's right-hand man comments that their pet coward is acting differently than usual today. Going straight for violence, the bully throws a heavy cross, bragging that he's been fighting since he was a baby, while Yimo just thinks about how the original kid always took these beatings without a word. Effortlessly, Yimo dodges the attacker's punch and warns him that his speed is way too slow. With a swift motion, the protagonist lands an uppercut on the bully's chin. The impact sends the guy flying backward with force. Seizing the opening, he immediately follows up with a direct kick to another goon. The blow sends the guy flying, making him slam violently against the bathroom wall. Startled by the scene, the others are in shock and question if that kid is really Yimu. Walking slowly toward them, the protagonist taunts them, asking if they're scared. Angered by the provocation, the troublemakers tell him to stop with a scornful look and charge him together. Without even breaking a sweat, Yimu blocks the double attack, firmly gripping the fists of both aggressors at the same time. To prove his strength, he squeezes the pair's hands, showing them the absurd difference in power between them. The pain is so intense that the guys start screaming in desperation, begging the boy to let go because it hurts so much. Maintaining control of the situation, the protagonist warns that he's in no hurry at all, and they're going to settle this calmly. Overcome with desperation, one of the goons admits his mistake and begs him to stop squeezing. With that, Yimo just throws the two bullies to the ground like they were sacks of trash. Completely cornered near the sink, the last member of the group begs for mercy, calling the boy young master. The goon backs away, trembling with fear, as the protagonist slowly approaches, completely dominating the room. The previous coward mutters indignantly, unable to accept how that loser managed to do all this. In a surprise attack, he tries to strike the boy, declaring that he won't let things end like this. But Yemu easily sees the move coming and lands a powerful straight punch to the aggressor's face. The brutal impact sends the guy flying through the air, causing him to crash down, completely defeated. Bleeding and powerless, the bully leans against the wall, realizing the huge mistake he just made. Stepping on the defeated guy's chest, The protagonist coldly warns that if there's a next time, it won't be this easy. Terrified, he calls the boy a monster, his eyes wide with terror. On the floor, the remaining goons take the blame and beg him not to come any closer. Staring at the scum with disgust, Yemo demands they immediately return everything that belongs to him. Completely confused by the sudden demand, the guys ask what things he's talking about. Out of patience, he makes it clear that he wants back the money they stole from this body's previous owner. Realizing what he means, one of the boys panics and agrees to hand it all over right away. The guy quickly gathers the bills and hands them to the protagonist, assuring him the full amount is there. Leaving the bathroom, Yemo concludes that he might have overdone it a bit, but knows they won't have the guts to tell anyone. Away from the chaos, the boy reflects that he can't stay at the school anymore with so many people watching him and decides to move out. Counting the recovered cash, he's relieved to have finally secured his first investment fund. The amount is small, but he knows it's enough to buy basic materials and take the first step in his revenge. Imagining the process, the protagonist knows that creating magical scrolls is the fastest way to make a profit right now. This is precisely one of the most common methods used by lower-level practitioners in the world of cultivation. By fusing spiritual energy with the right items, it's possible to create objects with absurd effects that he can easily refine. In a secluded spot, he concentrates his power and commands the energy to descend upon the materials. The spell works perfectly, transforming the ingredients into a collection of colorful talismans that fall to the ground. Calmly bending down, Yemo carefully picks up his new creations from the ground, admiring the enchanted papers. The boy is certain he'll be able to make some good money as soon as he sells them all. Now on the city streets, his next objective is to find a good place to train and buy medicinal herbs. However, even after 3 weeks of wandering around, he still hasn't found any opportunities to sell his merchandise. Observing the people, he notices that the folks in this world are extremely suspicious of this kind of mystical product. Suddenly, the faint sound of crying catches the protagonist's attention in the middle of the street. Stopping in his tracks, he looks back, trying to identify where that strange noise is coming from. Just ahead, Yemo finds an injured puppy stumbling along the sidewalk. The little animal eventually collapses on the ground, powerless, and the boy deduces it's fading after being hit by a car. Feeling sorry for the situation, he kneels beside the pup to assess the severity of its injuries. Without a second thought, he takes out one of his healing spells, deciding to use the animal as a practical test for his magic. Upon activating the enchanted paper, a green light covers the puppy's body, instantly healing all its organs and wounds. Seconds later, the pup is back on its feet, barking full of energy as if nothing had happened. Smiling at his success, the protagonist pets the fully recovered animal's head. Just then, the person who caused the accident grumbles that it's just a stray, and there's no reason to look for it. A young woman named Su Jingwen argues angrily with her companion, accusing Wang Peng of having no conscience. Shrugging, the guy says he didn't ask her to follow him, and tells his colleague to take the puppy to the hospital by herself. At that moment, Su Jingwen finally turns her head, and is surprised to see the boy standing nearby. With the puppy in his arms, Yemo just watches the commotion with a calm demeanor. Wang Peng's jaw drops, not understanding where the kid came from or how the animal healed so quickly. Trying to process the scene, the young woman clearly remembers the animal was bloody and on the verge of passing just minutes ago. Noticing the bag in her hand, the protagonist suspects the customer is desperate to save a relative in the hospital. Seeing the young woman's desperation, Yemo realizes this is the perfect opportunity to sell his products. Joining the conversation, he extends his hand toward her and reveals that he used a magical object to save the dog. Showing off the small drawn paper, the boy presents his merchandise, calling it a protection amulet. Wang Peng jumps in, yelling, calling the guy a street scammer who's trying to squeeze money out of them. Pointing a finger, the rich guy tells Su Jingwen not to believe a word of it, claiming the unharmed animal was just a trick. Completely ignoring her companion's tantrum, she anxiously asks if the spell can heal someone in a vegetative state. Noticing the anguish in her eyes, the protagonist suspects the problem involves someone from the customer's own family. Taking on the role of a salesman, he explains that a vegetative state is spiritual damage that his item can repair. Presenting a blue talisman, the boy guarantees that this model, focused on spirit cleansing, is the most suitable treatment. Annoyed by the negotiation, Wang Peng claims his companion has lost her mind to think a little piece of paper could save her aunt. Paying no attention to the jerk, Yemo explains that it's simple to use just aim at the patient and cast the magic. Getting straight to the point, he sets the price, charging 20,000 for the larger versions and 10,000 for the smaller ones. Completely desperate, Su Jingwen agrees to pay 50,000 for everything while the guy yells that she's gone crazy. Losing his patience, Wang Peng tries to slap the boy's hand, telling the supposed liar to get lost. But before the slap lands, Yemo firmly grabs the aggressor's wrist, making him scream in pain immediately. Holding the guy's wrist tightly, Yimo warns that he's just closing a deal while the young woman is trying to save a family member. With an intimidating look, he makes it very clear that the one who should get lost is the preppy guy himself. Right after, the protagonist easily shoves the rich guy, making him trip and fall hard on the ground. To seal the deal, he hands the magical items to Su Jingwen, completely ignoring her fallen companion. Showing her the pieces, the boy explains that the yellow one is for protection, and the red one launches fireballs. To keep things calm, he comments that he sincerely hopes the customer never has to use the last two. The young woman clutches the amulets with hope and thanks the guy for his valuable help. Before he leaves, she asks to know the name of the mysterious seller she just met. Walking backward down the sidewalk, he waves his hand and replies that his name is Yi Mu. Still fuming on the ground, Wang Peng insists that the boy is clearly a low-life scammer. With the items in her hands, Su Jingwen admits the situation is ridiculous and the chance of it working is almost zero. However, deep in her heart, she clings to the tiny possibility that the magic is real. Far away, the protagonist walks on, satisfied, thinking that with the money secured, he can now look for a place to live. The next step in his plan is to find the essential medicinal herbs to accelerate his energy cultivation. Just then, the puppy lets out a bark, catching the boy's attention, who stops and looks down curiously. Standing in front of a large mansion, the protagonist's eyes widen as he notices a strong blue energy and recognizes it as spiritual flow. Completely focused, he feels a different vibration coming directly from the property's grounds. Intrigued by the yard, the boy is amazed to identify the rare silver heart grass glowing on the earth. Resuming his path through the city, Yemo reflects that with the money guaranteed, he can now rent a good place to live. His next big goal is to hunt for medicinal herbs in the region to speed up the cultivation process. Suddenly, the puppy lets out a bark, catching the guy's attention, who turns his head instantly. Before his eyes, the enormous mansion exudes a powerful blue aura, making the boy question if that is spiritual energy. Intrigued by the phenomenon, he fixes his gaze, trying to decipher where such magical force is coming from. Through the garden gates, he finally finds the precious silver heart grass emitting its own light. Elsewhere, Wang Peng groans in pain, while a nurse tends to his injured wrist at the hospital. Sitting on the gurney, the rich guy curses in frustration, swearing that street kid is a terrible influence. As he gets his bandage, he furiously warns that the boy had better never cross his path again. In the next hallway, a gray-haired man scolds his daughter, saying the assaulted guy had good intentions. The city councilman lectures Su Jingwen, stating that the embarrassment she caused is terrible for the family's image. Under pressure, the young woman hears her father say, she's become a laughingstock for getting involved with some random charlatan. In the background, two nurses gossip about the councilman's daughter spending a fortune on a fake amulet from a scammer. Ignoring the malicious comments, Su Jingwen focuses only on the spell in her hands with a melancholic look. With the mystical paper held firmly, she decides to try using the magic just one more time as a last resort. Furious with his daughter's stubbornness, the father throws his arms open, shouting that she's completely lost her mind. The man questions if his heiress really believed that nonsense, asking if the next step will be to perform some bizarre ritual. Unable to take the pressure anymore, Su Jingwen snaps back, shouting and demanding to know what her own father has done for the family. Near her comatose mother, she throws it in his face that if the woman had gone to the best hospital sooner, she would be cured. Overflowing with anger, the young woman accuses the councilman of never having truly tried to save his wife. She swears her father only wants to pull the plug so he can be free and enjoy life with his mistress, posing as a widower. Furious with the truths being told, the man raises his hand, ready to strike his own daughter, telling her to shut up. However, he hesitates at the last second and lowers his arm, giving up on the assault in the middle of the room. After a long sigh, the man in the suit turns his head, adjusting his tie to maintain the posture of an impeccable politician. With his back to the young woman, he grumbles that the older she gets, the harder she is to control. Near the door, the man coldly decrees that he will call the nurse to remove the tubes by force. Desperate at the cruel decision, the girl clutches her magical amulet, shouting that she will never agree to this. Leaning over the bed, Su Jingwen swears with all her might that she will not give up on her mother, no matter what. Suddenly, an intense blue glow illuminates the entire room as a faint voice calls the girl's nickname. The young woman freezes on the spot, her eyes widening in shock as she hears that familiar sound. Standing near the door, the councilman turns his head, completely perplexed by what he just witnessed. Lying in bed breathing through tubes, the mother wakes from a deep coma, noticing that her daughter has lost weight. While Su Jingwen cries with emotion, the politician runs desperately into the hallway, screaming for a nurse. Completely beside himself, the suited man demands immediate medical attention, announcing that his wife has miraculously awakened. Hearing the screams, the doctor and nurse are left with their jaws on the floor, unable to believe what they're hearing. Rushing through the hallways, the doctor announces they will run a full battery of tests on the patient right away. After the evaluation, the professional explains that although she's awake, she will need almost a year of rest to recover. Clutching the amulet to her chest, the young woman realizes radiantly that it was the boy's magic that saved her mother. With the stone glowing softly in her hands, she celebrates the living proof that the artifact was not fake. Looking at the test results, the doctor yells in astonishment, unable to find any logical explanation for the sudden cure. Startled, the doctor orders them to call renowned specialists, declaring they have witnessed a medical miracle. Far from the room, Wang Peng starts to panic, considering that the kid on the street might be a real immortal. Hugging her mother and crying a lot, the girl finally feels the relief of having her back after so many years of suffering. With her eyes full of tears, she concludes that there are gods on earth and promises to give her all to repay her savior. Meanwhile, in a quieter neighborhood, the protagonist finally finds the perfect house to rent. Inside the living room with his puppy, he celebrates the move as the first step toward his return. The dark memory of those who cruelly betrayed him in the past returns to haunt the boy's mind. With a look filled with pure hatred, he swears that none of those scumbags will get away with this. To be able to return to his world, the young man understands he will need to seek out spiritual sources and redo his cultivation from scratch. Determined, he promises that the day he returns from the depths of the underworld is not far off. Lying in bed, he laments that the natural energy of this planet is running out, making his progress difficult. As a perfect solution, the guy knows he needs to hunt for places or relics that preserve concentrated magic. He analyzes that the only elements capable of filling this gap are hidden natural sources and pure minerals. Suddenly, he looks amazed at the small pot on the table, surprised to have found the silver heart grass right in the yard. Detailing the plant's power, the guy states that it can be transformed into potent magic pills. Focused on the sprout, he plans to wait for the right moment to harvest it to advance toward the second stage of cultivation. But soon a concern arises, as the noise of making the pills would attract a lot of unwanted attention in the neighborhood. To avoid unpleasant surprises, the protagonist decides it's better to start his cultivation as soon as possible. Walking through the bustling streets, he looks for a good place to sell his things and make some cash. Sitting on a sidewalk with his amulets for sale, the boy laments that the materials are so expensive and money is still tight. Even trying not to draw too much attention with this magic business, he realizes he's ended up attracting trouble anyway. With a sharp gaze, Yimo notices that the same guys from before are back and are patiently keeping their distance. Since those guys have been circling his stall for 3 days, he concludes that their premeditated operation is finally about to begin. Without wasting time, the guy decides to pack up his things to find out who is so interested in him. At that moment, a female voice calls his name, making the protagonist look back, surprised by the sudden visitor. The girl is stunned to find her classmate working there on the street, since he had disappeared from school lately. Analyzing the situation, she comments that it makes sense he's out of money after being kicked out by his former rich family. Racking his brain, the boy remembers that this classmate was one of the few people who defended this body's previous owner in the past. Worried about her classmate's future, the young woman fumbles in her bag, offering him a loan so he can go back to school without worries. However, Yimo just turns his back and says he's very busy today, leaving the girl completely indignant at his cold attitude. Still standing in the same spot, she is left confused and starts to suspect that something serious must have happened to the guy. As he walks through an isolated alley, the protagonist uses his aura perception to map the exact position of the 10 enemies around him. With a menacing look, he decrees that he's going to put an end to this nonsense and finish off all the attackers once and for all. In a swift move, the boy bolts down the alley, leaving the goons behind. Soon the thugs emerge from their hiding spots, shouting for everyone to go after the runaway kid. The chase begins through the narrow streets, with the whole gang running desperately on the protagonist's tail. But the escape doesn't last long, as the young man suddenly stops and turns to face the entire crew. Completely cornered, he maintains a calm posture while one of the attackers celebrates, claiming there's no way out. Unfazed by the threat, Yemo just tells the rest of the group to come out of the shadows and show their faces. With that, several brutes armed with wooden planks and knives begin to surround the area. The bald leader of the gang steps forward with a sadistic smile, praising the kid's courage in facing them. Getting straight to the point, the boy asks what they want after spying on him for so many days and demands to know who hired them. Laughing at the question, the criminal mocks that the kid offended a powerful family and will now pay with his life. The bald man confesses he doesn't understand how the Harris of the Ning family got interested in a piece of human trash, assuring the boy he has no future. Recalling the previous owner's memories, Yemo remembers that he did indeed have an arranged engagement with this Ning Qingshu. Since the engagement had already been broken off because he was too weak, the protagonist finds it illogical for the family to try to take him out now. Reaching the conclusion that someone else is behind this, he swears he will pry the truth out of these goons by force. Hiding at the entrance of the alley, his classmate watches everything in shock, noticing that the criminals want to end the boy. Seeing the men pull out huge machetes, she panics, knowing her classmate has no chance against that armed group. Overcome with panic, the young woman quickly pulls out her phone, intending to call the police as soon as possible. However, a brute appears right behind her and captures her by surprise with a violent hug. Lifting the girl off the ground as if she were nothing, the thug lets out a disgusting laugh as she struggles in terror. Without mercy, the brute drags the hostage to the center of the chaos while she screams, demanding to be let go immediately. The other goons respectfully make way, recognizing that the huge guy is also part of the leadership. Showing off his prize, the big guy holds the girl tightly near the bald leader, who watches the scene with interest. The protagonist immediately recognizes his classmate, named Wang Ying, and doesn't understand why she came to such a dangerous alley. Full of malice, the boss mocks the kid's luck with women for attracting another pretty girl into the middle of danger. Even with a hand around her neck, the young woman ignores her own risk and begs the boy to run as fast as he can. Trying to intimidate the kidnappers, she angrily warns them that she belongs to a very powerful family from the capital, and that they will pay dearly. The threat has no effect, making the entire gang burst into laughter, as if they had heard the best joke of the year. With an insane and murderous look, the leader states that if they take them both out right there, absolutely no one will ever know. To prove he's not joking, the criminal points the sharp blade very close to the girl's face, who cries in terror. Raising the machete with pure malice, the bald man warns that she should choose her company better in her next life. Before the blade comes down, Imo rushes forward at an incredible speed, covered in a brutal magical energy. With a precise and devastating punch, the boy shatters the criminal's weapon into several pieces in the air. Immediately after, he violently grabs the leader's head, knowing that this level of strength will end up drawing a lot of attention. Shock is plastered all over the aggressor's face, unable to process how a kid could have such overwhelming strength. As he's thrown with full force, the boss collides hard while the protagonist reinforces that taking a beating quietly was never his style. The impact of the blow is so absurd that the criminal's body goes through the concrete wall of the alley, raising a cloud of dust. Free from danger, the classmate is frozen in place, trying to process if that monster is really the fragile boy she knew. On the other side, the brutes start to sweat and back away, frightened by the extraordinary display of power. Without giving a minute's rest, Imo coldly and lethally warns that he will only ask one more time who was behind that attack. Far away, police cars tear through the city streets as an officer reports over the radio that Scar's gang is on the move. Still in the driver's seat, the officer is confused by the sudden action and wonders what the criminal's big plan is for today. On the other end of the line, his colleague reports a confrontation in an east side alley involving dozens of armed men and an innocent hostage. With the urgency of the situation, the patrol car speeds up, and the officer demands they request immediate backup from headquarters. Worried about his partner, the inspector shouts into the radio for him not to try to play the hero alone against professional assassins and traffickers. Desperately trying to maintain contact, the officer continues to yell into the communicator, demanding a response from his colleague. His partner's trembling voice finally comes through the device, stuttering that backup is no longer necessary at that moment. Completely speechless at the crime scene, the agent tries to describe what he's seeing, but can barely form a sentence about the young man. In front of him, the scene is one of total devastation, with dozens of goons lying on the ground groaning in pain, in a pile of bodies. In the midst of the destruction, the protagonist holds the last thug by the collar with frightening ease. With his face disfigured from the beating, the gang leader bitterly regrets accepting that suicide contract. Pressing on the enemy's wound, Yemo demands to know if the information about his whereabouts came from the Ning family or his former household. Surrounded by a deadly aura, the boy warns that the miserable wretch has exactly 3 seconds to live to give a convincing answer. Staring death in the face, the criminal panics completely and begins to beg for a little more time. Suddenly, the police inspector finally arrives, running into the alley and screaming at the top of his lungs for the assault to stop immediately. With his hand on his firearm, the officer warns that if the boy continues to beat the injured man, the situation will go from self-defense to homicide. Facing the police authority, the protagonist frowns, suspicious if that intervention was just a mere coincidence. Still holding the gang leader in his hands, he coldly considers the option of using all his strength to erase the law enforcement officers as well. However, he concludes that his brutal display of power was already enough to strike terror into that entire scum. Showing cooperation, the young man just drops the brute on the ground and agrees with the officer's order in a very calm tone. Lying on the ground all beaten up, the gang leader sighs in relief, thinking he's finally been saved by the police. But Yimo analyzes the situation, knowing that his current strength isn't enough to go head to head with the government. With the gun in his hand, the inspector takes a deep breath, thankful that he arrived in time to prevent that guy from being finished off. The protagonist just turns his back and starts to walk away down the alley, accompanied by his classmate. However, the police officer gets his attention, introducing himself as Yang Chunkyu and praising the feat of taking down so many thugs alone. Standing right behind him, Wang Ying waves shyly, greeting the inspector politely. Yang tells them not to worry, saying his partner witnessed everything, while Luo Wen quickly introduces himself. With a suspicious look, the boy realizes that the government's surveillance network is really spread throughout the entire city. The inspector explains that Luo will only take them to give a basic statement, without asking questions outside the context of the case. But suddenly, another group appears on the scene, announcing that a certain Inspector Wang has just arrived. A man in a suit approaches with a cynical smile, stating that the boy would have gotten away scot-free if he hadn't shown up. This guy introduces himself as Wang Lei and warns that the student will be taken into custody on suspicion of intentional assault. To leave no doubt, the inspector waves an arrest warrant right in the protagonist's face. Outraged by the absurdity, the girl steps forward, questioning the decision since it was the thugs who were threatening them there. The man ignores her defense and sarcastically says that the only thing visible is a guy breaking the bones of ordinary citizens on the street. Losing his patience, Yang grabs the suited man by the collar, cussing him out and asking if he knows who he's dealing with. Maintaining a cold stare, Wang Lai retorts, guaranteeing that he is fully aware of his actions. In a threatening tone, he questions since when a level 3 subordinate can confront him and swears he will take his badge. The provocation leaves the officer completely furious, ready to lunge at his superior. But his partner, Luo, acts quickly, pulling his colleague back and begging him to stay calm. Observing the argument, Yimo interrupts, agreeing to go peacefully, leaving Yang in shock at his decision. Silently, the protagonist deduces that the real mastermind behind this attack spent a lot of resources trying to take him down. Clapping sarcastically, the suited man praises the sensible attitude of his new prisoner. But the boy understands that these kinds of traps will keep happening, so he needs to use this to extract information. Approaching with an air of superiority, the inspector comments that he doesn't understand why they're calling the boy a student. In that same instant, the man's eyes widen as he breaks into a cold sweat, realizing he said too much and gave the game away. Yimo lets out a dark smile, confirming that the corrupt inspector is also just one of the mastermind's lapdogs. Trying to cover up his blunder, Wang Lei pretends to understand to the accusation, and just orders the guards to take the prisoner away. As the officers escort the handcuffed boy, his classmate watches the scene with great apprehension. Far away, the boy holds up a button torn from the officer's uniform and laments the situation with irony. Still in handcuffs, Yimo crushes the button in his hand and swears that in their next meeting, he'll rip something much more valuable from that guy. At the police station, the corrupt inspector curses furiously, promising to show what happens to those who cross him. Now locked up, the protagonist sits on the floor cross-legged, calmly awaiting the enemy's next move. Suddenly, a guard steps forward, striking the cell bars hard with his baton to get his attention. Through the shadow of the bars, the officer reveals that a special visitor is arriving and that the order from outside is non-negotiable. Elsewhere, a terrifying man covered in scars cracks his knuckles, accepting the direct order to take out the boy. As he's escorted through the corridors, Yimo analyzes the structure and notices that it doesn't look like a normal prison. The heavy electronic lock emits a loud sound as it's unlocked for the new inmate to pass. The prisoner slowly enters the dark room as the officers close the heavy metal door behind him. Observing the closed environment, he deduces that the police want to use extrajudicial torture to extract confessions. With a smirk, the guy finds this desperate attempt at intimidation quite interesting. In the back of the isolated cell, he spots a muscular figure and questions if that giant is the mastermind behind the attacks. The mysterious man raises his head, commenting that for many years he has avoided raising his hand against ordinary people. Clenching his bandaged fists, he explains that he always maintained this principle because normal humans break easily. Surrounded by a red aura and a maniacal smile, the brute declares that the boy is extremely fragile. Introducing himself as Zhou Quan, the assassin reveals he was hired to eliminate him and asks him not to resist his end. Frustrated by the discovery, the protagonist sighs, realizing he's only found another mere henchman following orders. However, the boy focuses on the strange burning sensation he's been feeling in his body since he stepped into that closed place. Watching the enemy become enveloped in an intense energy, he finally understands the origin of that sharp perception. Staring at the giant's back glowing a rosy hue, the guy concludes that the man is exuding pure spiritual flow. Without wasting time, the brute charges forward, promising that the kid's end will be quick and completely painless. With a violent leap, the assassin comes down with a crushing kick, but only hits the floor as the boy dodges in the blink of an eye. The missed blow leaves the giant wide-eyed, completely shocked to have hit empty air. Taking advantage of the opening, Yemo gets inside his opponent's guard, blocking his arm, and warns that the guy made a big mistake. Staring at the big guy with an empty, freezing gaze, the protagonist finishes his thought, getting straight to the point. Landing a devastating blow, he throws the brute to the ground, stating that the real weak one here is the enemy. The impact throws the assassin off balance as the boy firmly grips the big guy's bandaged wrist. The immense force of the grip drags the criminal forward, completely breaking his combat stance. In a continuous motion, the guy throws his opponent's heavy body through the air as if he were a rag doll. The giant flies across the interrogation room and slides violently across the floor, struggling not to fall flat on his face. Regaining his posture, the assassin admits he underestimated the boy, but swears that from now on, the pain will be unbearable. The protagonist is unfazed by the threat and remains in the same spot, exuding unshakable confidence in the face of danger. Consumed by fury, Jokwon concentrates all his purple energy and charges like an out-of-control bull, cutting through the wind. The big guy throws a heavy punch charged with magical force while the guy prepares to receive the impact. However, Yaimo counters with frightening precision, breaking the assassin's charge in an instant. The direct clash against the defense shatters the brute's attack, making him suffer the consequences of his own blow. Spitting a lot of blood, the criminal is terrified, trying to comprehend where such overwhelming power comes from. The impact is so absurd that the giant is thrown backward, completely defenseless, falling awkwardly. About to hit the concrete, he realizes the imminent danger as the boy continues his relentless pursuit in the air. The force of the throw makes the assassin's body collide violently with the wall, destroying everything in its path. Amidst the dust of destruction, the protagonist lands calmly on the ground, keeping his cold gaze on the target. Even injured and bleeding, the big guy tries to get up, cursing in frustration at the humiliation he's suffering. In a final desperate effort, he leaps with his fist raised, screaming at the boy to stop underestimating him. Even with the shadow of the fist covering his face, Yemo doesn't move a muscle and faces the attack with complete boredom. Before the punch gets close, the protagonist lands a devastating kick directly to the assassin's stomach, making him spit blood. Coughing up a lot of blood, the big guy tries to recover from the brutal blow he just took to the stomach. The force of the impact is so monstrous that it sends the assassin's heavy body flying into the air as if it weighed absolutely nothing. Completely shocked in midair, the brute wonders how it's possible for a boy to have so much physical strength. Just then, the protagonist closes the distance in the blink of an eye, appearing right behind the enemy with a threatening magical aura. Without giving him time to breathe, the boy unleashes a devastating downward punch with all his rage. The attack lands squarely, smashing the opponent directly into the concrete floor, kicking up a lot of dust and destruction. Holding the giant's bruised face, Yemo demands to know exactly who was the mastermind behind this cowardly ambush. Keeping the pressure on the immobilized criminal, he continues the relentless interrogation, wanting to uncover one more detail. Staring coldly at the defeated man, the guy questions where the powerful spiritual energy covering his body came from. Far away at the police station, Wang Lei answers the phone, furious, asking what kind of monster the goons are dealing with. The inspector thinks it's all a bunch of nonsense and assures him that the prisoner is just a useless piece of trash who was kicked out of his own rich family. The person on the other end of the line doubts the boy is weak, but the suited man guarantees he hired a relentless brute for the job. The contact promises an incredible promotion as soon as the hit is completed, and Wang Lai expects his partner to keep his word. Back in the dark cell, Yemo sits in a chair and praises the big guy's resistance, who refuses to talk even after being all busted up. Spitting blood on the floor, the assassin admits they severely underestimated the boy, and that mortals should never mess with him. Intrigued by the statement, the protagonist wonders if there are other cultivation masters hiding in this peaceful world. The assassin decides to tell the truth once and for all and reveals that he met a very old monk a few years ago. Recalling the past, he explains that the man could knock down an entire tree just by waving his hand in the air. That absurd display of mystical power left the brute completely mesmerized at the time. Since the two ended up crossing paths, the monk gifted the giant a bottle of shining, divine water. Following the master's teachings, he spent the last few years drinking the diluted magic liquid to get stronger and stronger. The result of this continuous process transformed his body into a fighting machine far beyond natural human limits. With this information, Yemu deduces that this water is a spiritual liquid and plans to investigate its origin as soon as he can. The boy knows very well that pure springs only form where mystical energy accumulates over long periods of time. Cutting off his thoughts, he questions why such a formidable warrior would accept orders from such pathetic people. Overcome by the sadness of his own reality, the assassin reveals he has a sick son in the hospital and the treatment costs are absurd. Clenching his fist in frustration, he laments that the magic water can't heal the boy, leaving him with no choice but to work like crazy to pay the bills. Desperate for his child's life, the big guy confesses that he needed the quick cash to try to find a real cure. Hearing the tragic story, the protagonist reacts calmly, stating that this illness is very simple to solve. The miraculous promise leaves the assassin completely in shock upon hearing that the boy can save his defenseless little one's life. The boy explains that raw energy is harmful to ordinary people if consumed directly without proper mystical refinement. Holding his own green amulet, he teaches that specific rituals can isolate and amplify only the healing properties of the magic. Suspicious of the simple piece of paper, the giant questions if it really has the absolute power to cure such a fatal disease. To prove his point on the spot, Emo casts the spell, covering the assassin in a very intense green, healing light. Feeling his own wounds close in the blink of an eye, the brute is amazed by the absurd effectiveness of that technique. Showing another powerful amulet, the protagonist puts the deal on the table, demanding the mastermind's name in exchange for the sick child's life. In a completely lethal and dark tone, he makes it clear that the other option is for the big guy to meet his end right there, without ever seeing his son again. Cornered by the unfavorable situation, the criminal lets out a faint laugh, accepting his crushing defeat in the face of such an absolute being. He praises the boy's ruthless genius, admitting he has never met anyone so dangerous in his entire life of crime. Spilling the beans once and for all, the giant reveals he was hired by a rich and arrogant guy known as Young Master Jung. In a luxurious club in the city center, the so-called rich kid finds it amusing that Inspector Wang is afraid of a failed brat. Relaxing comfortably in his private office chair, Jung Wenkyo savors a glass of wine without a care in the world. Showing a disturbing side, the rich guy morbidly asks which piece of flesh his new companion wishes to eat now. Kneeling on the rug and bound by heavy chains, a gagged woman murmurs desperately, trying to escape that endless nightmare. Walking slowly toward the frightened hostage, the psychopath mocks that the girl still hasn't learned the house's good manners. Acting like a certified lunatic, Jung pretends to think seriously about what the next appropriate punishment for the defenseless young woman will be. In an extremely cowardly and cruel manner, he forces the hostage's mouth open with metal pliers, drawing muffled screams of pure agony. The agonizing shock of the pain causes blood to trickle from the victim's bruised lips, as she thrashes violently on the floor. Holding the blood-stained tool, the villain threatens to pull out another tooth to help her remember his club's rules. Pulling her hair with unmeasured violence, he continues the horror show, completely ignoring the young woman's desperate cries. At that moment, a goon interrupts the torture session, reporting that Boss Song wants to know the status of the mission against the boy. Wiping the fresh blood from his hands, the rich kid tells him to inform them that he himself will go to the police station to retrieve the insolent prisoner's body. Completely confident in the mercenary assassin he hired, the rich guy is certain there's not a chance in heck the target will get out of this alive. Returning to the prison, Jo Kwon hands over a valuable item through the bars as an advance payment for the blessed healing amulet. The protagonist receives the small, shining vial and immediately recognizes the magical essence contained within. Analyzing the liquid up close, he confirms that the purity of that concentrated energy is exactly what he needs to progress. The boy realizes that moistening the rare grass in his yard with this drop will make the plant yield magic seeds at an absurd speed. Very satisfied with the equivalent exchange of favors, Yi Mo puts the vial away, thanking the brute for the unexpected contribution. Sitting calmly in his previous chair, the guy warns that the rich villain won't forgive the failure of the assassination mission. Sweating from tension, the big guy agrees that the rich kid's fury is so cruel that a quick end would be considered a merciful way out. The protagonist stands up with complete tranquility, only demanding that the healing agreement be kept without fail by his frightened ally. With his eyes gleaming with pure hatred, the boy declares that he will pay a personal visit to the mastermind if the cowardly suit decides to hide. Meanwhile, the weather remains serene and sunny on the sidewalk in front of the enormous entrance gates of the renowned Ninghai University. An elegant young woman in expensive clothes gets out of a luxury taxi, catching the attention of all the students passing by. Su Jingwen adjusts her sunglasses, focused exclusively on her urgent mission to find the skilled young man who saved her mother from the brink. Holding a recent photo of Yimu, the young woman confesses she found it surreal that the magic seller was the famous boy abandoned by his own family. Walking confidently through the student-filled courtyard, she decides to visit the principal's office to find out which class the prodigy is hiding in. In the principal's office, the head of the school slams his fist on the desk, refusing the teacher's plea for help for fear of sinking his own career along with it. Desperate in the faculty room, the teacher begs for support, stating that she can't let the poor boy perish unjustly in jail. Suddenly, the rich woman appears at the office door, catching the teacher off guard, who immediately recognizes the old acquaintance. Hearing the commotion about the familiar name, Su Jingwen reacts with alarm and asks if the whole mess has to do with the boy she's looking for. Far from the civilized school environment, things really heat up when a heavy hand slams on the desk of an isolated police station. Outraged by an unacceptable order, Inspector Yang confronts his superior for wanting to release the cruel traffickers he worked so hard to arrest. Without backing down, the righteous officer points his finger in the chief's face, accusing the suited man of heavy corruption and abuse of authority. Leaning comfortably in his chair, Wang Lei scoffs at the accusation and warns that his subordinate will pay dearly if he doesn't have concrete proof. Yang slams the desk hard, shouting that he knows all about the dirty things the chief does behind the scenes. Inspector Wang Lei glares at his subordinate, pointing his pen and challenging him to say everything he knows. Just then, a commotion starts outside, with someone announcing that a woman can't enter the captain's office. Ignoring the warning, Su Jingwen storms into the office with Wang Ying, demanding Ye Mu's immediate release. Sitting in his chair, the suited man scoffs at his own guards for not being able to handle a single person. As he smokes, Wang Lei sizes up the woman, wondering about her level of power to be defending a boy who was kicked out of his family. Lighting his cigarette calmly, he coldly warns that the boy is a suspect in a robbery and serious assault, so he won't be released. Yang loses his patience for good and questions, since when the robbery charge was invented out of thin air. Blowing out smoke, the corrupt captain glares at his subordinate, asking who's in charge there, and stating that internal documents are confidential. Outraged by the situation, Wang Ying throws it in his face that the real criminals in this story were released without punishment. Pointing his finger, Wang Lei threatens to arrest them both for obstruction if they don't leave his office immediately. Unfazed, Su Jingwen places her cell phone on the glass desk with a sharp clack. Sitting comfortably on the sofa, the rich woman crosses her legs and challenges the suited man to try and arrest her. Accepting the provocation, the captain snaps his fingers, calling his team into the room. Several officers storm the office as Wang Lei orders them to take everyone to the detention room to cool off. Spitting pure venom, the captain decrees that the two are now official accomplices to the robbery and are under arrest. Immediately after, he suspends Yang from his duties, accusing the officer of covering for a dangerous criminal. But the tension is interrupted by the rich woman asking if Director Jing shouldn't have a say in these casual convictions. Finding the situation amusing, Wang Lei warns that slandering a public official will only increase the young woman's sentence. Maintaining a serene posture, Su Jingwen comments that she's heard rumors about the gang giving the inspector many benefits. The suited man's face darkens instantly, and he warns that certain words can cause a lot of trouble. With a sharp look, the young woman retorts, wanting to know if she can use her money and power to save Ye Mu too. Relaxing in his chair, the corrupt officer states that the boy's fate has already been ordered, and that privileges do exist. Blowing smoke, he confesses his macabre plan to take out everyone present, staging it as an attack against authority. Hearing such a direct threat, Yang and the student are completely terrified. Maintaining an ironic tone, Su Jingwen asks loud and clear if Director Jing heard everything correctly. A man in a suit emerges from behind the door, confirming that he heard every single word very clearly. Beginning to break into a cold sweat of desperation, Wang Lei stammers, trying to understand which Director Jing they are talking about. Sitting with all her elegance, the rich woman scoffs, asking if that man's voice still needs an introduction. In a complete panic, the captain jumps up from his chair, wanting to find out who exactly the woman in front of him is. Exuding authority, she reveals her name to be Su Jingwen, the heiress of the powerful Su family of Ninghai. Shock takes over the corrupt captain's face, as he doesn't understand how the trash kid knew such important people. Far away, a silver cross-shaped pendant emits a soft, magical glow in the air. Inside the cell, Ye Mu analyzes the object, noticing that the spiritual liquid contained within isn't enough to level up. Suddenly, the sound of the lock turning makes the boy look at the door, knowing someone is coming. The elegant steps of high heels echo through the dark prison hallway, approaching the back of the place. Su Jingwen finally stops in front of the metal bars, making her presence known in the confined space. Sitting in the dark, the protagonist raises his head, a little surprised by the unexpected visit. Accompanied by her classmate, the rich woman exudes friendliness, greeting the student and saying it's been a while. In another luxurious place, the rich kid Zheng Wenqiao smashes the table with a golf club, calling his goons useless trash. The rich kid sits down, furious with the news that one ally almost got beaten to a pulp, and the other ended up in jail. Gritting his teeth, he thinks that if he doesn't follow the Song family's orders, his own end will be quite tragic. A bodyguard approaches the sofa, wanting to know what the young master's new orders are from now on. The psychopath orders them to send the most elite assassins to capture the boy, and leave him barely breathing on life support. With a sick, purple gleam in his eyes, the rich kid declares that he insists on torturing that failure personally. Back home watching television, the protagonist sighs, noticing that the ingredients have consumed almost all of his money. On the bedroom floor, a small rustic cauldron rests, surrounded by various rare medicinal herbs collected earlier. Golden magic envelopes the pot as Mo commands the energy to condense inside it. Admiring the newly created golden pill, the boy is impressed with the power generated by that concentrated spiritual liquid. The young man's body floats in the air, bathed in an overwhelming aura as he absorbs the mystical medicine all at once. The pure force explodes throughout the room, marking the boy's definitive advancement to the long-awaited second stage of cultivation. As a test, he shoots off at high speed, passing his dog like a blur using the shadow steps technique. Clenching his fist, filled with confidence, Mo concludes that at this level, not even bullets from firearms can hit him anymore. Sitting on the sofa, he reflects that his resources are gone, and he needs to find another spring to evolve again. Looking at the banking app, the boy notices the almost zero balance and remembers his plan to hire a smuggler soon. Holding his phone, he laments that the travel fee charged by the criminal is 100,000, and he's still broke. At that moment, a TV commercial for Suyun Company's beauty injections catches his attention. The ad shows people frantically buying the miracle product that promises to freeze youth for a high price. With a brilliant idea in mind, the boy touches a small blue box sitting on his table. Full of mischief, he notices the obsession women in this world have with beauty and sees a great opportunity to profit. In a flashback to 5 hours earlier, the protagonist is having lunch at a restaurant, surprised that Jingwen is the councilman's daughter. The rich young woman maintains her class, explaining that it was because of this influence that her friend was able to call the director. Approaching the table, she politely asks her classmate to do her a small favor right then. Chewing his food without any fuss, the boy asks what his friend needs him to do. The heiress wants to know if Yimu knows the Suyun building, the headquarters of the largest cosmetics company in the entire Ninghai region. Without beating around the bush, she reveals that the building belongs to her and invites him to the celebration banquet for her mother's improvement. The protagonist pays close attention to the special request to attend the grand party that will take place on the top floor. Back in the present, at night, the company's luxurious skyscrapers shine, illuminating the dark sky of the enormous city. At the top of the building, an extremely fancy banquet gathers the most powerful big shots in expensive formal wear. Walking through the hall in his normal clothes, Mo plans to sell his magical beauty pills for a very high price right there. Opening the blue box, he displays the shining medicine, remembering that the female cultivators of his old world created this recipe. Observing the wealthy crowd, the boy is sure that he only needs to sell about 4 units to raise the 100,000. Confident, the protagonist understands that tonight is his big chance to become famous in this fancy industry and solve his problems. Nearby, Su Jingwen's aunt poisons her uncle's mind, warning that her niece needs to think much more about the family business. The other envious relative agrees right away and mocks the girl's older sister, who is lonely in the corner because she's getting older. The guy with glasses accuses the woman of being selfish in her youth, and that today she has become just a useless burden to the family. The elderly lady tries to defend herself against the cruel accusations but can barely form a coherent sentence. Jingwen enters the argument furious, reminding them that her older aunt sacrificed her youth, taking care of all of them. With a dark look, the man claims he's saying this for her own good, and that the woman should pressure her niece to get married soon. The lady starts coughing uncontrollably while the girl holds her with great concern. Exuding arrogance, the suited man states that a single woman of that age is like defective merchandise. Even though she's weak, the aunt argues that her niece has the right to make her own decisions about her future. The mere mention of autonomy makes the guy lose his mind with anger. Gesticulating wildly, he yells that thinking for herself at this age is the height of selfishness. In a tone of pure mockery, he questions if opening a small cosmetics company will bring back someone's youth. Suddenly, a voice comes out of nowhere, guaranteeing that President Su can indeed do that. The protagonist joins the group holding a small box and points out how disgusting it is to treat a woman like trash. With a piercing gaze, he states that this kind of thinking is extremely ignorant and pathetic. The suited man is in shock, not understanding who this intruder is and how he got through the door. Panicking at the sudden intrusion, the man starts screaming desperately for the security guards. Jingwen takes the lead and introduces Mo as the guest of honor who saved her mother's life. The lady realizes he was the one who sold the miracle amulet and thanks him from the bottom of her heart. Maintaining his politeness, the guy replies that it was nothing and that he's happy to help. The suited man wipes his sweat, claiming the girl fell for a scam and that the cure was purely the work of medicine. Ignoring the tantrum, the boy introduces himself to the crowd as the businesswoman's new business partner. Jingwen herself is surprised by the title he just made up. One of the guests in the back questions the crazy promise of restoring youth. Raising the wooden box, Yemo guarantees that the item inside holds the answer everyone is looking for. A wealthy woman scoffs at the scene, stating that this is nothing more than a cheap trick to get attention. With complete calm, the protagonist turns to the elderly lady and asks her for a small favor. He holds out the object and gently asks her to consume what's inside. The lady stares at the small box, curious, feeling a different energy emanating from it. The lid opens, revealing the powerful beauty pill shining intensely in the middle of the hall. The suited man completely freaks out, shouting that this is absurd and that the suspicious pill must be pure poison. Even impressed by the mystical glow, the woman asks cautiously if it's safe to swallow that. To give a vote of confidence, Jingwen assures her that she fully trusts her new partner's abilities. She convinces her mother to accept the gift, reminding her that it was the boy who saved her life before. An uproar takes over the guests, who doubt the existence of such a miraculous remedy. The boy leans close to the lady's ear, teasingly asking if she doesn't want to taste youth one more time. Remembering all the humiliation and insults she suffered because of her age, she finally makes a decision. Reaching for the glowing remedy, the woman firmly declares that she will consume the product. Without a second thought, she puts the pill in her mouth and swallows it all at once in front of everyone. The arrogant man and the rest of the hall are left with their jaws on the floor at the lady's courage. After a few seconds, they start to laugh, noticing that absolutely nothing has changed about her. The suited man points his finger, laughing, and calls the boy a cheap scammer to his face. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the hall, telling everyone to look at the changes in the woman's face. A magical aura explodes, revealing a rejuvenated and incredibly beautiful figure in place of the elderly woman. Looking at her reflection in a hastily brought mirror, she cries with emotion upon seeing her youthful face. The envious clique is left completely speechless in the face of the impossible miracle. Several rich women surround the boy, desperate to buy, and he announces that each one costs $20,000. A chaotic auction begins on the spot, with the ladies throwing out offers of $30,000, $50,000, and even $70,000. Observing their desperation, the suited man realizes that the real profit isn't in direct sales. The guy understands that the recipe for the remedy is worth a fortune, and that securing the production rights will make him rich. His colleague tries to remind him that the company is bankrupt, but he's immediately told to shut up. With a malicious smile, he plans to string the boy along until the arranged marriage happens and then steal the patent. The business competition awakens, and a portly millionaire already offers $200,000 for the product rights. Not wanting to be left behind, the arrogant man himself raises his hand, offering $1 million. Full of himself, he pushes away his rivals, claiming the young man as his family's special guest. Doing a complete 180, the swindler forces a smile and invites the boy for a private conversation. Offering $1.5 million, he shamelessly proposes that they split the production profits. Suspicious of the offer, the protagonist asks if the larger share would go to him or the other guy. Laughing, the crook says the bigger slice is his since his family has all the connections. Jingwen steps in front, crashing the party and asking if his family still has any credibility in the market. The man starts to sweat, accusing his own niece of betraying their blood. With a piercing look, the rich woman exposes that her uncle lost $80 million, betting the grandmother's company. Completely cornered, the suited man shouts that these accusations are a bunch of nonsense. The girl lists the investors' withdrawals and the bank's demands, offering to read it all out loud. The elderly lady is devastated to discover that her own brother sank their mother's inheritance. Trembling from head to toe, the bankrupt man questions how his niece managed to investigate his life. She exposes that he only showed up at the party to suck money from her mother, just like he did before. With absolute authority, the Harris makes it clear that he won't see a single cent from her. The weight of the humiliation makes the defeated man fall to his knees in front of all of high society. Desperate and crying, he begs for a chance to explain that whole financial mess. Appealing to their emotional side, the failure grabs his sister's legs, pleading for mercy. He crawls to his older aunt, swearing she has to help him because he's the only man in the family. Turning her face away in pure disgust, she laments that her brother has destroyed the entire family legacy. The lady turns her back for good, decreeing that he will have to face the consequences alone. The scammer stretches out his arm, screaming that they can't abandon him like that at rock bottom. The businesswoman stares at the man on the floor, warning that he can spend the rest of his life paying off his debts in court. The other option is to sell the bankrupt company to her for a symbolic price, leaving the man completely shocked. The deadbeat uncle scoffs that the boy brought about his own ruin by messing with big shots. Back at the party, Jingwen approaches Ye Mu, warning him about the dangerous people at the event. Wanting to help, the businesswoman suggests she can make great recommendations to patent agencies. The protagonist assesses that these agencies charge million-dollar fees and take almost all the profit, preferring to be cautious. Since they are now business partners, the rich woman agrees and states that she fully trusts his decisions. The banquet comes to an end, and the two pull up the luxury car in front of the student's rented house. The young woman compliments the place while Ye-mo gets out of the vehicle, commenting that he rented the property through a realtor. Standing at the gate, the boy thanks her for the ride and for her company during the eventful evening. With a gentle smile, Jingwon replies that there's no need for such formality between friends. The declaration catches the guy by surprise, but the businesswoman reinforces their friendship with all sincerity. Ye-mo stands on the sidewalk, watching the sports car drive away down the dark neighborhood street. Admiring the full moon, the protagonist reflects on how pleasant this quiet and friendly life is. He calmly walks to his front door, looking forward to resting after the long day. Suspecting nothing, the boy grabs the doorknob, ready to enter the comfort of his home. However, the door opens to reveal complete darkness inside the totally silent residence. As soon as he turns on the light, Ye-mo comes face to face with his puppy lying in a pool of blood, pierced by a sword. Completely consumed by hatred, the boy exudes a dark aura, wanting to know what the heck happened there. A little earlier, a goon was watching the house and reported over the phone that the target had returned with a woman. Hiding in the shadows of the yard, the thug passed the information directly to young Master Zheng. Over the phone, the rich kid ordered the girl to be captured as well, wanting to prepare a sadistic gift to plunge Ye-mo into despair. Back in the present, the protagonist runs desperately toward his severely injured pet. Without wasting time, he pulls the blade embedded in the dog's body out as carefully as possible. Noticing that the pup is still breathing, the guy quickly activates a magical healing amulet, and green energy envelopes the wound. Taking advantage of the distraction, two armed assassins leap from the shadows, prepared to finish the job. The intruder raises his knife violently and charges the boy, yelling that this is the perfect moment for the kill. In a swift move, Ye-mo dodges the deadly attack without even needing to look directly at the enemy. Frustrated by the miss, the goon insists and launches another heavy blow aimed at the guy's head. But the protagonist blocks the charge in the blink of an eye, smashing the thug with a devastating punch. Still holding the dog in one arm, he smashes the criminal's face into the floor, shattering all the concrete in the living room. The other goons who were watching the house invade the place, and are terrified to see their partner completely defeated. With the pup fully healed and full of energy, Ye-mo puts the animal on the floor and tells it to wait outside. The guy slowly stands up and faces the invading gang, surprised by the amount of trash that got into his house. Emanating a terrifying purple spiritual pressure, the boy asks if they all want to go at once. Ignoring the danger, the troublemakers charge, remembering Master Zheng's order to break the boy's limbs. With no patience for games, the protagonist swings his arm, firing a blast of pure energy that sweeps away the attackers. He grabs one of the thugs by the head with immense force, while the guy panics and tries to break free. With extreme violence, Ye-mo slams the intruder's body directly into the floor, shattering the room's foundation. The brutal display of power leaves the rest of the gang sweating, unable to believe the monster they're facing. Walking slowly among the fallen intruders, the boy starts to count and coldly states that the first one is down. Injured by the target's arrogance, another goon pulls out a huge knife and charges, wanting to slice the guy up. However, Ye-mo just extends his arm and stops the brute's heavy attack as if it were absolutely nothing. The protagonist twists the thug's arm at a bizarre angle, making the guy scream in pain immediately. Agony takes over the criminal's face as he hears his own bones crack under the boy's absurd strength. Next, Ye-mo lifts the aggressor by the neck, leaving him completely dangling and breathless in the middle of the room. To finish it off, the guy throws the unconscious body away and updates the count, announcing that the second one is down too. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, the gang leader changes strategy, pulls out a firearm, and orders them to shoot to kill. Before anyone can pull the trigger, Ye-mo becomes a blur of speed, mercilessly plowing through the shooters. Standing right in front of the shooter with a demonic look, he threatens to use every broken bone to smash the coward's teeth until he tells the truth. In a macabre warehouse far away, a table displays various surgical and torture instruments under a cold light. The sadistic young Master Zheng holds a scalpel and mocks the hostage, confessing he expected to capture someone less important. It turns out the kidnapped victim is Su Jingwen, who is chained to a metal bed. Gagged and terrified, the businesswoman struggles with all her might while the psychopath enjoys her anguish. The terror session is interrupted by the ringing of Zheng's cell phone vibrating on the metal table. The rich kid answers the call full of arrogance, asking his goons if the insufferable boy is finally gone. However, Ye-mo's voice responds from the other end of the line, announcing that all of the rich kid's men are history. Swallowing his initial shock, Zheng lets out a forced laugh and praises his enemy's ability to cause trouble. Showing he's still in control, the villain grabs Jingwen's hair, forcing her to groan in pain for the boy to hear. Hearing his friend's desperation, Ye-mo's eyes glow an intense red, consumed by pure bloodlust. Seething with hatred, the boy announces he's coming for him and tells him to release the woman since the score is just between the two of them. With a sick smile, the rich kid finds his opponent's courage interesting and prepares for the final showdown. Jung sets a 40-minute deadline and threatens to chop the girl up alive if his enemy doesn't arrive in time. But Yaimo tells him to guess his own address and turns to leave, hanging up on the psychopath. Standing in the middle of his destroyed living room, the guy just stares at the phone in silence, processing everything that happened. Fueled by hatred, he crushes the cell phone in his hand, promising that his meeting with Jung Wenqiao will be very soon. Back at the hideout, the villain approaches Jingwen, insinuating he'll record a torture video to provoke the boy even more. The businesswoman panics completely, trying to scream for help from behind the suffocating gag. Suddenly, a piercing alarm starts blaring non-stop through the warehouse corridors, interrupting the torture. A bodyguard anxiously reports that the fire suppression system was triggered out of nowhere in the merchandise storage area. Fearing the authorities will investigate the false fire, the rich kid runs to check, leaving the prisoner under the guard's watch. The psychopath violently kicks the door, furious with the unforeseen event right in the middle of his night of fun. Left alone in the terrifying room, Jingwen remains chained to the steel, not knowing what to do. With tears in her eyes and almost losing hope, she whispers Yimo's name, silently praying for a miracle. The scene changes, revealing that an hour before the attack, a biker was parked on a dark city street. Analyzing a paper with the address, the guy grumbles about the boring job of delivering a recommendation letter in the middle of the night. Riding his noisy motorcycle, the messenger finally arrives in front of Yimo's house, oblivious to the massacre that was about to happen there. Inside the car, the lookout confirms to young Master Zheng that the target has already entered the house. Just then, he notices strange movement outside. Standing on the sidewalk observing, the biker concludes that the rich guy sent 6 assassins to rough up the boy before taking him. Putting the hostage in the car, the goons confirm that the woman has been captured and is on her way to the boss. Hiding by the wall, the biker discovers that Jung Wenqiao set up an ambush at the house and kidnapped Yimo's woman. The luxurious UV speeds down the street, taking Su Jingwen far away. Determined to help, the messenger gets on his bike, planning to follow the car first and send the location later. He tears off at high speed, racing down the street after the kidnapper's vehicle. The tracking ends in front of a huge mansion where the phone suddenly starts ringing. Yimo finally answers the call and hears from his ally that his friend was taken to that enormous property. Jo Kwon quickly asks if the hideout's address is 32 Pinghai Street. Confused by the precision, the protagonist questions how the giant found the location so quickly. Finishing up at the house, the big guy asks for a favor for the boy to rescue his friend safely and leave the rich kid to him. With his eyes red with pure hatred, Yimo warns that he himself will send that rich kid straight to the underworld. Far away, the fancy mansion hall is protected by guards in suits. Jung Wenqiao yells furiously, questioning why the warehouse alarm went off when he had ordered everything to be turned off. The big guy dismisses the house goons and orders everyone to stand guard at the corridor door. Complaining about the boring job, the mansion's security guards lament not being able to have fun with the prisoner inside. Suddenly, the brute appears right in front of them, leaving the suited men very confused. Emanating a powerful purple aura, Jo Kwon advances with firm steps toward the terrified guards. With a completely serious look, he warns that the next blow is going to hurt a little. Seizing the opening, he lands a devastating punch directly to the arrogant security guard's chest. In a few seconds, both guards fall defeated at the giant's feet. Reaching the gurney, he frees the businesswoman, grumbling that the boy owes him a huge favor for this rescue. With the unconscious woman on his shoulder, the assassin understands he needs to get out of that place immediately. Running through the fancy corridors, he plans to leave through the back door before the gang reacts. The big guy approaches the exit, calculating that the car is right there in the yard and that the enemies are busy with the alarm. Without hesitation, he pushes the heavy double doors, wanting to escape for good. But a bright flash suddenly shoots out, hitting the brute head on. The violent impact knocks Jo Kwon backward while the girl plummets to the floor. With the gun still smoking, Jung Wenqiao lets out a sadistic laugh, bragging about his simply perfect aim. Bleeding on the floor, the giant is perplexed, not understanding how the rich kid got back from the warehouse so quickly. Pointing the revolver, Jung loses his patience, questioning the traitor's audacity to show up right in front of him. Slowly getting up to protect the girl, the brute tries to hide his pain, greeting his ex-boss with irony. Completely insane, the rich kid finds it all wonderful, imagining the cruel methods he'll use to torture them both. With wide eyes, he confesses he's getting way too excited about this totally sadistic situation. Consumed by mystical energy, Jo Kwon faces the danger and challenges the shooter to try and take his life by force. Outside the mansion, the security guards maintain a tight watch at the enormous entrance gates. Soon, One of the guards notices strange movement on the dark street and demands to know who's approaching. Emerging from the shadows, consumed by pure fury, Yemo advances in absolute silence. Annoyed by the lack of response, the suited man loses his patience and threatens the bold intruder. In the blink of an eye, the boy hits the security guard with a brutal punch directly to the face. Using his extreme speed, he immediately follows up with another crushing impact on the colleague next to him without letting him react. The rest of the gang backs away, sweating, in the face of that completely unreal force, frozen with fear. Without a moment's rest, the protagonist sweeps through the enemies, sending their bodies flying through the air with violence. Spinning his body in the air, he executes a devastating spinning kick that knocks all remaining targets onto the asphalt. The path to the mansion is completely cleared. After the heavy beating of the entrance security guards, seething with hatred, the boy announces his own arrival, ready for the great showdown. Inside, the giant is getting beaten badly by the goons, lamenting that he can't hold off so many enemies at once. Lying on the floor, bleeding heavily, he regrets the mission, knowing the rescue has failed for good. With a sick smile, the rich kid swears that after finishing off the traitor, he'll hunt down his son too. The rich kid lets out a macabre laugh, guaranteeing he'll destroy the brute's entire family, piece by piece. Suddenly, the huge double doors behind the giant explode into several pieces, flying across the room. Caught by surprise by the loud bang, Jung freezes, demanding to know who just invaded his house like that. The dust settles, revealing an intense mystical aura shining in the middle of the hall's destruction. Walking slowly, Yemo announces that he's the one responsible for sending that trash trait to the underworld. Relieved, the injured assassin celebrates the boy's arrival as he catches a magic paper thrown through the air. Holding the healing item, the big guy hears the order to activate the magic, just as he learned before. Completely desperate, the psychopath points the gun, screaming for the guards to shoot the intruder nonstop. A rain of bullets fires from the security guards' guns, covering the entire hallway in pure smoke and noise. But the protagonist dashes forward, breaking through the barrier of bullets with extremely agile movements. Easily dodging the shots, he trusts in his new level of strength, stating that firearms are completely useless now. Sweating, the rich kid is in absolute shock at his target's supernatural speed on the track. Like an unstoppable blur, the boy plows through the lines of security guards, breaking everything in his merciless path. Seeing his goons being massacred, the rich kid turns his back and flees, running through the fancy hall like a rat. In absolute panic, the coward runs desperately, intending to lock himself in the panic room at any cost. Out of breath in the hallway, he realizes he was deceived by the information, because that monster could never be a useless failure. Running for his life, the villain approaches the security panel, begging for the door to open at once. With his hands trembling from terror, he mistypes the access code and locks the system on the screen. Overcome by the terror of death, the rich kid curses at the panel, screaming and punching the useless buttons uncontrollably. At that moment, a goon's body collides with the wall right next to him, startling the coward. Completely cornered, Jung tries to maintain his composure, warning that the boy can't deal with his powerful superiors. To try and save his own skin, he readily reveals that the powerful Song family is the true mastermind behind the hit. Walking slowly with a piece of wood in his hands, the protagonist demands to know which exact member of the Song family planned everything. Staring daggers at the rich kid, Yemo decrees that the next answer will determine the level of torture the enemy will suffer right there. Trembling from head to toe, Jung reveals that Song Shaoan wants to take him out to clear up rumors that the boy touched the Ning heiress before the arranged marriage. The boy confirms he's never even seen this Ning Qingzhu in his life, let alone touched her. He quickly realizes this dirty rumor is a conspiracy set up against him. Desperate, the rich kid deduces it could only have been the Song family itself that made it all up. He tries to negotiate, saying that letting him go would be much better for both of them. Trying to intimidate, Jung warns that the Song family is dangerous. He reveals that Song Shaoan himself possesses monstrous strength, just like the boys, because he is a cultivator. With a forced smile, the rich guy guarantees he can help the boy stay alive if he's released now. He promises the boy will understand his value in the future. Ignoring the rambling, the protagonist walks toward the tied-up businesswoman at the back of the hall. He just repeats the word, value, with a tone of pure mockery in his voice. Certain he has convinced his enemy, the coward agrees, saying the boy needs to be sensible. But Yemo just bends down to pick something up from the floor. Without any warning, the boy lands a devastating blow with the plank directly to the rich kid's face. The brutal impact sends blood flying instantly. The force of the blow smashes the villain violently against the floor. Breaking all his arrogant composure, Jung collapses, completely destroyed by the merciless strike. Tied up and in tears, Su Jingwen watches the scene, completely terrified by the violence in the room. Maintaining a cold expression, Yemo looks at the damage he just caused without feeling a shred of pity for his fallen enemy. He then calmly walks over to the businesswoman trapped in chains while the psychopath remains unconscious and sprawled on the cold floor. With a dark look, the boy warns that the true value of that piece of trash will be decided by his victims. He holds a sharp knife, ready to act. In a precise and swift move, Yemo cuts the heavy chains, freeing the woman from her agonizing captivity once and for all. The steel chains fall heavily to the floor, making a loud noise throughout the room. Finally free, the girl breathes a sigh of relief, escaping that torture. To finish, the protagonist drops the blade, which clatters on the concrete floor, ending his part in that brutal rescue. Turning his back on the situation, the protagonist coldly announces that the life of that trash now belongs to her. All beaten up, Jung tries to beg for his life, offering his entire fortune in exchange for forgiveness. Traumatized, Su Jingwen grabs the knife on the floor firmly and warns that she wants absolutely nothing he has to offer. With a maniacal look of pure vengeance, the businesswoman decrees that her only wish is to send the psychopath to the underworld by cutting him up piece by piece. As the screams of torture echo from the back of the room, Yemo calmly walks past the injured giant near the door. He advises his ally to flee quickly as he has already called the police to clean up the mess. Surprised, the giant asks if the boy isn't going with him. Standing in the hallway, the guy explains that he'll be watching from the shadows until the authorities rescue his friend safely. Curious about his next steps, Jo Kwon asks what the boy's grand plan is now that he's extracted the truth from the enemy. Certain of his objective, Yemo swears he will wait for the perfect moment to investigate this Song Shaoan and wipe him out once and for all. The next day, peace returns to the protagonist's house, illuminated by the morning sun, as his puppy sleeps peacefully in its basket. Wiping the sweat after his workout, he reflects that even though he erased the rich kid from existence, the real mastermind remains a constant threat. Just then, the sound of the doorbell breaks the silence of the place, making the pup raise its ears in confusion at the visitor. Walking to the entrance, the young man finds the noise strange and wonders who could be bothering him at such an hour. As soon as he opens the door, the guy comes face to face with a security guard in a suit who greets him formally with great respect. The man shows a fancy envelope and says the car is ready to leave whenever the boy wants. Reading the note in the envelope, the boy is completely confused, asking where exactly the businesswoman is planning to take him today. With the garment bag in hand, he calls his friend, questioning the reason for such a formal invitation and suit. On the other end of the line, Jingwen laughs, confirming the delivery, and explains that it's the VIP pass to the luxurious Zhou family banquet. Analyzing the golden seal on the letter, Yemu doesn't see much point in the invitation and asks if his presence at that rich people's event is really necessary. The businesswoman explains that the hosts control the pharmaceutical market, which will help with the sale of their pills. To tease him, she lets it slip that his ex-fiancée will also be there. The shock hits him hard, and the guy repeats the information, incredulous at the bizarre coincidence of running into his arranged ex-fiancée today of all days. Recalling memories from his old body, he quickly realizes who his business partner is talking about. The heiress confirms she's talking about none other than the prodigy daughter of the Ning family, the famous and mysterious Ning Qingsu. Later, the grand banquet hall is already packed with Ninghai's high society, flaunting luxury and chatting in corners. Pointing to the side, one of the guests gossips about the presence of major business figures who have the power to shake the entire city. With no interest in the clique of suits, Yemo questions if such important people really care about a local family like the Jus. With a glass in hand, Jingwen nudges the boy, reminding him that he himself came from a golden cradle and should know the weight of connections. She teaches him that just the title of a Ning family relative is enough to make all those magnates crawl, begging for a lucrative alliance. With a smirk, the rich woman adds that the event drew so much attention precisely because the main Ning heiress herself decided to show up. At that moment, the huge double doors of the hall swing open, catching the attention of all the suits present. The crowd erupts as they see the leader of the Zhou family enter, accompanied by the much-talked-about Ning Qingsu. Focusing his vision on the blue-haired girl, the protagonist notices a magical aura around her and recognizes the presence of pure spiritual flow. With his gaze fixed on the young woman, Yemo tries to process that this cultivator was the promised fiancée of his body's previous owner. The two women walk down the red carpet, exuding elegance and drawing all the admiring glances of the luxurious banquet. With his eyes glowing red, he deduces that the young woman has mastered the mystical arts and questions if the elite of this world hides secret cultivation techniques. Intrigued by her posture, the guy realizes that the cultivator doesn't even try to hide her own magical aura, overflowing with pure confidence in her own power. Since the heiress is part of this powerful underworld, the boy plans to find an opening to extract crucial information about the assassin Song Shaoan. Without wasting time, Su Jingwen takes the lead and approaches the hostesses, wishing them good health to politely break the ice. Exuding friendliness, the matriarch of the Zhou family compliments the businesswoman and happily comments on the miracle of her mother waking up from the mysterious coma. Without losing her class, Jingwen thanks the older woman for her concern, confirming that her mother's recovery is progressing at a great pace. Seizing the perfect opportunity, she opens a fancy box, displaying her company's beauty pill as a special gift to maintain the hostess's youth. Completely surprised by the shining item, Jonah recognizes the famous miracle pill that has become the most talked about topic among the city's elite lately. The other guests begin to whisper, shocked by the expensive gift, as the remedy has disappeared from the market and costs an absurd fortune. Ning Qingshu herself loses her serious composure and her eyes widen in astonishment at the mystical power emanating from the small remedy in the box. Examining the medicine up close, the cultivator recognizes the flawless technique and admits that the skills of whoever refined it have reached an almost divine spiritual level. Curious about the creation, Qingshu asks which great master of alchemy forged something so pure, without even leaving a trademark on the piece. Taking the floor, the protagonist joins the conversation, announcing that the remedy was created by him and formally introduces himself as Zimu. The name drops like a bomb, making the hostess and the cultivator's eyes widen in complete shock at the unexpected revelation. With a huge smile, Jonah fondly recalls the time she held the boy as a baby and praises his impressive talent for refining remedies. With an ironic laugh, the older woman accuses the Yi family of being blind for kicking out such a prodigy, but is soon cut off by the serious voice of the Ning Harris. With her usual coldness, Qingxu throws it in his face that alchemy skills are worthless to the great families. Staring at the boy without emotion, the ex-fiancé guarantees that if things were different, his talent would have made him a sage in her family. With this, the protagonist confirms his suspicion that the elite does master the arts of cultivation, but concludes that these techniques must be trash compared to the magic of his home world. The cultivator continues her speech of superiority, stating that wasting time learning manual techniques is a great waste of energy. Suspicious of the origin of his power, the cultivator praises the boy's absurd level of knowledge and demands to know who really trained him. Yemo holds her sharp gaze, evaluating the girl and preparing the best lie to hide the techniques of his old world. Impatient with the silence, Qingshu turns her back, annoyed, demanding the name of the master who passed on that divine recipe. With a relaxed smile, the protagonist ends the matter, stating that he has no master and made the remedy just for fun in his free time. Before the boy can extract information about the Song family, a loud rich kid barges into the group, shouting birthday congratulations very loudly. The boisterous interruption completely breaks the tense mood of the conversation, drawing the curious glances of several guests around the grand, fancy hall. The loud interruption comes from a white-haired man in a suit who catches everyone's attention. The guests whisper, recognizing the man as the young master of the Song family. Jonai is surprised by the unexpected presence and greets the rich kid, calling him by the name Shawan. The protagonist casts a sharp glance, finally coming face to face with the target he's been hunting this whole time. Exuding friendliness, the rich kid explains that he would never miss Aunt Zhou's birthday, lest he get a scolding from Qingshu later. He soon notices Su Jingwen's presence nearby and curiously asks who she might be. The matriarch does the honors and formally introduces the girl as the heiress of the powerful Su family. The rich kid focuses his gaze on Yemu, showing great interest in the mysterious figure standing beside the businesswoman. Approaching with confidence, the man extends his hand and introduces himself directly to Jingwen. The young woman shakes his hand, commenting that she's heard a lot about his reputation. Just then, the newcomer turns his attention to the boy, asking for his name. Cold as ice, the protagonist analyzes whether the suited man is pretending not to know him, and decides to see how long this charade will last. Remembering the warning that this guy is also a cultivator, Yemo shakes his hand and says his own name very directly. During the handshake, the boy injects his own magic into the man, knowing it's impossible to hide energy when one's meridians are invaded. However, the spiritual flow travels through the enemy's entire body without encountering any resistance or defense whatsoever. It becomes clear in that instant that the suited man is completely hollow and doesn't have a single drop of magic running through his veins. As the handshake continues, Shawan starts to stutter the boy's name, showing a very exaggerated shock. Keeping up the act, the rich kid masks his surprise, stating that it's a great pleasure to meet the guy. Immediately, the suited man changes the subject and goes to flatter Qingshu, asking how she's been. The boy finds the whole situation extremely bizarre. Analyzing coldly, the protagonist understands that the man's tone of voice and flow don't indicate any lies. Without noticing any trace of murderous intent coming from him, Yemo begins to consider that perhaps this isn't the real mastermind of the attack. The event continues lavishly as the guests settle into the immense, fancy dining hall for the main dinner. The sound of clinking glasses echoes through the room, filled with big shots exchanging influence around the bountiful tables. After the meal, The house butler announces that the family has prepared a special ball in the main hall and invites everyone to participate. Soon, the ballroom fills with couples elegantly dancing on the red carpet under the light of immense chandeliers. Standing in an isolated corner, the guy tries to piece things together, reflecting on the fact that Shawan is just an ordinary human. Completely confused, he wonders what advantage that psychopathic enemy would have in lying about the song leader's abilities. Cutting off his thoughts, Su Jingwen elegantly walks toward him, holding a glass of wine in her hand. Before she gets close, a bold rich kid steps in front of her, politely asking the businesswoman for a dance. With no patience whatsoever, she shuts him down directly, saying she has no interest. Watching from afar, another guest warns his friend that it's crazy to try anything with the Su family heiress, since she's so unapproachable. The gossip continues, reminding him that she has even rejected the richest heir in the region without a second thought. The guy concludes that the woman has never made the first move with any man, while the rejected one backs away, embarrassed. But suddenly, the suited man freezes in shock as he sees the businesswoman's attitude completely change in the middle of the party. Even Qingshu is quite intrigued, watching the girl's movement as she walks through the hall. With his hands in his pockets, the protagonist watches his business partner stop right in front of him. Exuding charm, the rich woman extends her hand, covered by a thin glove, in a direct and completely silent invitation. To everyone's despair, Su Jingwen takes the bold step of asking her own classmate to dance. The guy who got rejected is speechless, not understanding how a nobody managed this almost impossible feat. Staring at the scene from afar, Shawan maintains a rigid posture, surrounded by his various suited goons. Without a word, the rich kid turns his back on the dance floor and walks out toward the cars. The security team follows the boss's quick steps through the fancy mansion's dark parking lot. Before opening the vehicle door, the rich kid orders that no one dare come near the car under any circumstances. With the order given, he gets into the back seat of the luxurious limousine, closing the dark door immediately. On the sidewalk, one of the security guards complains that the boss always does this bizarre ritual of locking himself up alone, but gets scolded by his partner to keep quiet. The goon comments nervously that all of that suited man's personal bodyguards end up getting weird and losing their own identity after a while. The guard finishes the gossip, remembering that these guards disappear without a trace. While inside the vehicle, the boss meets in the dark with a mysterious man. Without any warning, a sharp and extremely violent slap hits the rich kid's face with full force. The mysterious man yells furiously, calling him an idiot for having the audacity to hold another woman's hand right in front of Qingshu. Trembling with terror, with a hand on his badly bruised face, the rich kid stammers an apology. The man raises his hand, exuding a terrifying magical aura that illuminates the inside of the vehicle. Revealing a demonic face, he warns that the useless oaf is only still alive because he serves as a convenient puppet for his plan. Consumed by pure malice, the villain states that failing such simple tasks is an unforgivable and lethal mistake. It turns out this dark figure is the real cultivator, Song Shawan, who has been pulling all the strings, and he tells the fake one to pray his end isn't too agonizing. Immediately after, the real villain exits the vehicle, perfectly assuming the identity and posture of the cowardly rich kid. Walking with great authority, he orders the security guards to accompany him back to the grand ballroom. Outside, the goons gossip again that the bizarre ritual has repeated itself since the boss left the back seat alone. Meanwhile, the fake Shawan struggles desperately, tied up on the car floor in absolute darkness. Gagged and crying nonstop, the imposter tries to scream for help, knowing his days are numbered. Back at the luxurious ball, classical music entertains the guests who are enjoying the elegant high society party. Acting naturally, the disguised villain approaches Qingshu, apologizing for his disappearance and claiming he had an unforeseen issue outside. The villain is intrigued, noticing that the cultivator is paying full attention to something else in the middle of the hall. Following his fiancée's focused gaze, he reacts with surprise upon witnessing the couple dancing in the center of the floor. The suited man can't believe that the untouchable businesswoman is dancing with a nobody he's never seen before. Far from the phoniness of the rich, the protagonist leads his partner flawlessly as the soft music plays. Spinning with tremendous grace, the two form the perfect couple, completely stealing the show at the grand event. Admired by the guy's ease, the young woman praises his talent for that classical dance. Staring at the boy up close, she explains that they need to feign intimacy to facilitate the sale of their products to the Zhou family. Relieved by the situation, the guy thinks that he only managed to keep up with the steps thanks to the enhanced motor coordination from his advanced magic. Watching from the corner, Qingshu confesses her astonishment at her ex-fiancée's talent, but the family matriarch retorts that it has no practical use. With a mischievous look, the older woman teases the real Shawan, noticing that he was checking out the couple on the dance floor. Trying to maintain his good guy persona, the disguised villain just compliments the mysterious guy's flair. Testing the dangerous waters, the The rich kid questions if the hostess really doesn't know the boy, since they've never met. The matriarch doesn't buy the story, finding it impossible that the song's unbeatable espionage network doesn't know everything about an exile. Acting with great phoniness, the manipulator deflects, claiming he would never dare investigate guests within the Zhou family's territory. Exuding pure authority, the woman makes it clear she doesn't care about their tactics, but points out that the boy has a valuable gift for divine alchemy. Drinking his wine in peace, the protagonist thinks that his only wish on earth is to preserve some seeds for the advancement of alchemy. Observing the scene from afar, the matriarch of the Zhou family decides she will no longer stand idly by regarding the boy's affairs in the future. Completely irritated, Xiaowen glares at the woman and mentally wonders if that meddling old hag is daring to threaten him right there. With pure hatred for his rival, the disguised villain completes the thought, calling the boy a useless piece of trash while staring daggers at him. Just then, some rich folk start gossiping in the hall, trying to remember where they know the name of Su Jingwen's mysterious companion. One of the guests finally connects the dots and deduces, completely perplexed, that the boy is Qingshu's exiled former fiancé. The gossips assume that the abandoned guy is holding a huge grudge for losing the chance to marry such a perfect woman. Clinking their glasses on the table, they conclude that the failure only showed up there to try and take advantage of his former fiancé's absolute status. Having lost her patience with all this disgusting phoniness, Qingshu tells Aunt Zhou that she's very tired and is going home to rest. The manipulative rich kid watches the girl leave, maintaining his impeccable posture in front of all the guests like a good boy. With a glass in hand, the protagonist finds the sudden movement strange and is very curious about his ex-fiancé's abrupt departure from the banquet. Before disappearing, the cultivator stops near the boy and coldly advises him to abandon any vengeful plans he might have in mind. She states that the power web of the great families is absolute, and trying to use her name as a shield will be completely useless. Yemo raises an eyebrow at the random warning, not understanding where she got all this paranoia about imaginary conspiracies. Maintaining her untouchable superior pose, the heiress recommends that he focus only on alchemy to survive as an ordinary mortal. Not paying much attention to the arrogant speech, the guy just takes a sip of his drink with the utmost tranquility. The girl turns her back for good, warning that she sincerely hopes the exile knows what's best for his own future from now on. With pure irony in his voice, the boy retorts the provocation, questioning whose future exactly she is talking about. The cultivator freezes on the spot when Yimo points out that she is intentionally suppressing her own magical energy within her body. Without any beating around the bush, the protagonist exposes that the young woman adopted this desperate tactic because she is about to lose total control of her magic. Panic grips the heiress as her blue aura explodes unstably, not understanding how a human discovered her biggest secret. Surrounded by a dark pressure, he warns that her brutal training method grants quick strength but works as a guaranteed death sentence. He states very coldly that the promised fiance's weakened body is already collapsing completely with no chance of recovery. Shaken, she questions how a loser would know something so complex, while Yimo guarantees he has the definitive cure for her torment. Breaking into a cold sweat at the bombshell revelation, the young cultivator keeps her guard up, asking why she should put her life in his hands. Exuding total tranquility, the protagonist shrugs, stating that he's not the one whose days are numbered in this dangerous story. Yemo continues to be merciless, reminding her that her lifespan is slipping through her fingers at an extremely frightening speed. Taking advantage of her vulnerability, he proposes a direct deal where he will save the heiress's life in exchange for a small special favor. The guy approaches the young woman with a lethal tone and orders her to simply deliver a certain object into the hands of the villain, Song Xiaowen. This bizarre request leaves the girl completely speechless in the middle of the luxurious hall as the rich party continues bustling around them. Far away in the dark parking lot, the real Xiaowen glares at the target from a distance, exuding a purple aura completely dominated by evil. Outside the mansion, the night remains serene, with guests scattered throughout the beautiful, luxurious gardens of the host family. Walking through the flowery surroundings, Yemu and the businesswoman try to find a quieter place to chat, away from the suffocating crowd. Suddenly, a very familiar voice calls out to the protagonist, making him turn his head and interrupt his evening stroll with his friend. Matriarch Jonu appears on the path, displaying a friendly smile, wanting to close a deal on their miraculous beauty pills. The businesswoman gets excited about the golden opportunity and immediately starts presenting all the profit details to the wealthy hostess. Perceiving the malice behind it, Yimu is direct and questions if the old friend sought him out just for simple cosmetics. She asks to be called aunt, like in the old days, but the boy refuses, stating that he was kicked out of his own clan and doesn't dare to have such intimacy. In a rather melancholic tone, the mature woman compares the boy to Qingshu, guaranteeing that they both belong to the same breed of stubborn people. She confides that the girl became a mere tool for her own uncle after her parents' passing, having her life and marriage cruelly controlled. Luckily, the young woman was chosen to learn powerful magic, but the matriarch swears that freedom only comes if she reaches the supreme peak of strength. The businesswoman is in total shock upon hearing that bizarre talk about cultivators, ancient sex, and completely transcendental power. With a heavy expression, the protagonist understands that in this backward world, power levels function in a very precarious and limiting way. The hostess laments that the young woman chose a suicidal training that burns her own life force in exchange for instant raw power to escape. Yemo finds so much dramatic sincerity strange and soon discovers that the woman has tried to heal the girl's magical damage numerous times without success. Jingwen agrees with the tragic account, remembering that her mother also suffered from a deadly spiritual problem that no doctor could solve. Focusing all her attention on the guy, the hostess points out that he was the only living being capable of performing the absolute miracle at the hospital. With pure admiration in her voice, Aunt Jo confesses that the boy has surpassed the greatest mages and sees in him the only light at the end of the tunnel for her niece. Shaken by the sincerity of the compliment, the businesswoman can hardly believe that the president of the medical association admits to being inferior to her business partner. Looking at her colleague's profile, she deduces that his talent breaks boundaries, as talisman making requires a magic that is out of this world. The puzzle finally starts to make sense in the young rich woman's mind, and she begins to seriously consider if the boy is a living legend of cultivation. Unconcerned with the admiration of others, the protagonist can only think about how backward and pathetic the magical system of this useless planet is. Leaving the somber conversation behind, the hostess guarantees her full interest in the product and officially forms a monstrous alliance in the name of her billionaire family. The businesswoman celebrates exultantly, knowing that this masterstroke will multiply her small factory's money to stratospheric levels. Adopting a motherly tone, the matriarch begs the boy to try and break the young woman's curse, as she has a hidden heart of gold. To erase the bad impression from the past, the woman confesses that the promised Fancy put up a big fight with the family to try and prevent his expulsion. The weight of the truth hits Yemo by surprise, leaving him completely silent as he tries to process the noble act of the girl he hated most in the world. The sincere conversation is soon interrupted by the fake Song Shaoan, who appears in the flower garden with a cynical smile splitting his face. Using all his rehearsed politeness, the lying rich kid says he made a point of looking for the hostess just to say goodbye personally. The aunt falls for the act, praising the guy's kindness while he pretends to be surprised to find the two lovebirds relaxing in the outdoor area. Oozing cynicism with every word, Shaoan claims to have felt an immediate spiritual connection with Yemu, as if they were old partners. The suited man extends his hand, forcing a gentlemanly air, and says in a challenging tone that he can't wait for the day they meet again. Without backing down an inch, the protagonist firmly shakes the fake rich kid's hand, promising that this bloody reunion will happen very soon. During this threat-filled handshake, a light spark of magic explodes between their palms, marking a clash of energy ignored by everyone. The boy pulls back his arm, startled, feeling that something frighteningly familiar has just sprouted within the rich kid's body structure. Staring at his rival's back, covered in purple magical smoke, Yemo notices that a raw spiritual power has appeared out of nowhere in that empty human's body. A heavy atmosphere dominates the night outside as the rich kid gets into his gigantic limousine, guarded by several security men in black. Now in the comfort of the armored car, Agun obeys the promised fiancé, informing him that she sent a mysterious gift to be delivered inside. Seated on the soft bench, the villain is amused by the glass box, questioning why the cold girl would want to impress him today of all days. As soon as he analyzes the object, he finds only a simple green origami butterfly, left wondering about the enemy's unfunny joke. Ignoring the childish art, Shaoan tells a security guard to take the box, demanding that absolutely no one touches it without his order. His face contorting with a diabolical fury, he curses his useless goons for failing and forcing him to come out of hiding to deal with a mere piece of trash. Consumed by corrosive hatred, the true leader of the songs breaks his own power ring with blue lightning, muttering his target's names. With a completely manic and disturbed expression, he swears to break everyone's legs and plunge those cursed individuals into the worst possible agony. Still among the flowers back at the party, the protagonist smiles sadistically, planning to use the butterfly spell to make the girl take out the villain. The tense journey continues inside the limousine with the fake rich kid tied up, while the real villain stares at the glass box. The container completely isolates the magical paper butterfly, which glows intensely with a greenish hue in the dark. Far away, the enormous city skyscraper stands out, illuminating the serene and starry night. The protagonist observes the view from the top of the building, reflecting on the next steps of his plan. With his own spiritual butterfly glowing on his fingertip, he swears that the warning has already been given. The promise that they will meet again very soon carries a lethal tone in the boy's voice. Elsewhere, the matriarch of the Zhou family admires the pill, calculating that there are only a few days left until her resources are harvested. She plans to use the items at the Great Assembly of Cultivators, but suddenly gets startled, asking who is there. Two sinister figures emerge from the shadows, mocking that the genius of her old sect is still sharp. A bald monk covered in a red aura praises the woman's spiritual perception, even though she is gravely injured. The hostess is immediately shocked upon recognizing that the intruders are real cultivators. Maintaining a defensive posture, she demands to know what they want, invading her house like that. Spinning his prayer beads, the monk calls her benefactor, and teases that she's already calculating an escape route. Soon, a huge monk emerges from the shadows, justifying that the two have teamed up to ensure their prey doesn't escape. Pressured by their oppressive presence, the woman concludes that her enemies value her highly to send two masters at once. Forcing a confident smile, the matriarch directly questions what the grand objective of this unexpected visit is. The chubby monk warns that they've come to take her on a little trip and hopes she won't resist. The bald monk, however, loses his patience and suggests breaking all her limbs to make transportation easier. Seething with anger, the woman concentrates a purple energy in her hands and asks if they've forgotten where they're standing. Spreading the lethal magic through the garden, she decrees that since the two of them came here, they will be buried here forever. A thick fog immediately surrounds the intruders, leaving the brute completely confused by the surprise attack. The bald monk covers his mouth in desperation upon noticing that the purple gas is extremely poisonous. The matriarch trusts the immunity of the herb she's chewing, calculating that the corpse flower has enough toxin to take down an elephant. Knowing she doesn't stand a chance in a direct fight against two, she takes advantage of the gas distraction to try and sneak away. However, an absurd magical pressure appears right in front of her, completely blocking any escape route. Cornered and breaking into a cold sweat, the woman freezes before the bizarre energy blocking her path. A menacing shadow rises right behind her, revealing the dark power of the legendary shadow magic. Observing the mysterious silhouette emerging from the fog, the matriarch deduces that the man belongs to the terrible hidden sect. The newcomer walks calmly, confirming he's from the same faction that annihilated her old sect in the past. Desperation grips the woman as she questions the intruder's identity, since their attack date had not yet arrived. The revelation of the face under the shadows leaves the hostess completely stunned, unable to understand how it could be him there. The villain disguised as Emo burns a purple spell in his hands and cynically asks if she's surprised by this visit. Far from that chaos, a security guard yawns, bored, asking his colleague what they're going to eat at the end of their shift. His partner in a suit agrees to the break and suggests they buy something hot to endure the cold of the early morning. As they guard the hallway, one of them imagines what kind of fancy banquet young Master Song must be eating in his room. Without the guards noticing, the real protagonist becomes a blur, using the shadow steps technique. Standing in front of a luxurious door, Yimo wonders if that heady out is really the song leader's room. The small magical paper butterfly floats down the hallway, guiding the boy exactly to the target marked by the spell. Following the tracking magic, the guy stands before the large sliding door, prepared for the showdown. However, he sharpens his senses and realizes that the enemy's spiritual energy isn't coming from inside. Inside a dirty little room, someone is desperately devouring a cup of instant noodles. The fake Song Shaoan dines alone, lamenting that he would never have chosen this miserable life if he had any other option. Chewing the cheap food, he grumbles in frustration that he'd love to be living in a mansion and eating the best banquets. Fury takes over the imposter as he crushes his own cup with hatred, wishing all the suits would rot in the underworld. With his eyes wide with envy, he can't accept suffering so much just because he was born with a face identical to the rich villains. The painful memory invades the double's mind, remembering the humiliating moment he was tied and gagged on the floor. In the memory, the real Shaoan adjusts his glasses and lethally threatens him, reminding him of the consequences if his disguise is discovered. Exuding arrogance, the leader throws it in his face that the imposter will never be more than a useless and disposable copy. Without mercy, the cultivator orders his puppet to completely forget any pathetic little plans of trying to take control. Back in the present, the double grabs the glass box, announcing he's going to break the rules since his only use is to be a shadow. As soon as the lid is opened, the magical butterfly flies freely around the room, leaving the fake-suited man completely perplexed. A mysterious voice echoes in the dark, coldly asking if the imposter doesn't know who he's talking to. In a devastating attack, Yimu emerges from the shadows and lands a violent blow, making the double scream in agony. The impact throws the fake rich kid directly against the table, destroying the remains of his miserable dinner. Walking slowly, the protagonist is surprised by the lack of killing intent in the target and questions if he doesn't recognize him. Sweeting, the imposter points a finger in shock and tries to maintain the lie, shouting that he is the powerful leader of the Song family. But Yaimo advances relentlessly, exposing the farce on the spot with a sharp and intimidating gaze. With his eyes glowing with pure red hatred, the boy demands to know exactly where the real assassin is hiding. In a dark alley far away, a goon speaks on the phone, guaranteeing that dealing with a university student will be very easy. Surrounded by armed brutes, the man confirms that he has already tracked the boy's route and prepared the perfect ambush. Maintaining his tough guy persona, the leader promises to break the target's limbs and deliver him like a package. Walking calmly down the deserted street, the protagonist approaches the alley, oblivious to the gang's conversation. Focused on his thoughts, the guy assesses that the existence of spiritual artifacts proves there are advanced cultivators there. Racking his memory, he remembers that these objects gain powers when pure energy is sealed within them during mystical creation. However, this forging technique requires an impeccable control of magic that only powerful masters can command. He concludes with wonder that the only way to forge items in such a weak world would be by using a legendary pure spiritual spring. With his objective set, Yimo plans to hunt for this source of magic as soon as he sends the villain Song Shaoan straight to his grave. The gang of goons suddenly blocks the path, shouting that the night's hunt is finally over. Full of himself, the leader demands the student's legs and scoffs, asking if he'll break his own bones or prefer some help. Shrouded in the darkness of the alley, the boy just lifts his head, displaying a freezing, deadly gaze. The brute's survival instinct kicks in, making him break into a cold sweat in the face of that oppressive aura. Trying to hide his own terror, the leader screams desperately, ordering his men to attack the target without mercy. The group advances with metal pipes, laughing sadistically, while the protagonist waits patiently with his dark magic. Very convinced, the mastermind thinks his best warriors will crush the kid in an instant. Before the gang can even react, Yimo explodes forward with speed and lands a brutal, bloody blow, tearing apart the first attacker. The tense journey continues inside the limousine with the fake rich kid tied up while the real villain stares at the glass box. The fancy container completely isolates the magical paper butterfly, which glows intensely with a greenish hue in the dark. Far away, the enormous city skyscraper stands out, illuminating the serene and starry night. The protagonist observes the view from the top of the building, reflecting on the next steps of his hunt. With his own spiritual butterfly glowing on his fingertip, he swears that the death warning has already been given. The promise that they will meet again very soon carries a completely lethal tone in the boy's voice. Elsewhere, the matriarch of the Zhou family admires the pill, calculating that there are only a few days left until her resources are harvested. She plans to use the items at the Great Assembly of Cultivators, but suddenly gets startled, asking who is there in the shadows. Two sinister figures emerge from nowhere, mocking that the brilliant perception of her old sect is still very sharp. A bald monk covered in a red aura praises the woman's intuition, even though she is gravely injured and weakened. The hostess is immediately shocked upon recognizing that the nightly intruders are real cultivators. Maintaining a defensive posture, she demands to know what that dangerous duo wants, invading her house like that. Spinning his prayer beads, the monk calls her benefactor and teases that her mind is already calculating an escape route. Soon, a huge monk emerges, justifying that the two have teamed up only to ensure their prey cannot escape by any means. Pressured by their oppressive presence, the woman concludes that her enemies value her highly to send two strong masters together. Forcing a confident smile, the matriarch directly questions what the grand objective of such an unexpected visit is. The chubby monk warns that they've come to take her on a little trip and hopes she won't try to resist uselessly. The bald monk, however, loses his patience and suggests breaking all her limbs to make transportation easier without any fuss. Seething with anger, the woman concentrates a purple energy in her hands and asks if the duo has forgotten exactly where they're standing. Spreading the lethal magic through the garden, she decrees that since the two of them came there, they will be buried in that place forever. A thick fog immediately surrounds the intruders, leaving the brute completely confused by the sudden surprise attack. The bald monk covers his mouth in desperation upon noticing that the dark purple gas is an extremely poisonous toxin. The matriarch trusts the immunity of the magic herb in her mouth, calculating that the corpse flower has the power to take down even an elephant. Knowing she doesn't stand a chance in a fair fight against two, she takes advantage of the poisonous gas distraction to try and sneak away. However, an absurd magical pressure appears right in front of her, completely blocking any escape route from the yard. Cornered and breaking into a cold sweat, the woman freezes before the bizarre energy that has isolated her path to freedom. A menacing shadow rises right behind her, revealing the dark and oppressive power of the legendary shadow magic. Observing the mysterious silhouette emerging from the fog, the matriarch deduces in terror that the man belongs to the terrible hidden sect. The newcomer walks calmly, confirming he's from the same bloody faction that annihilated her old sect years ago. Desperation grips the woman as she questions the intruder's identity, since their agreed-upon attack date had not yet arrived. The revelation of the face under the purple flames leaves the hostess completely stunned, unable to understand how it could be him there. The villain disguised as Yimu burns a spell in his hands and cynically asks if she's very shocked by this special visit. Far from that chaos, a security guard yawns, bored, asking his suited colleague what they're going to eat at the end of their shift. His partner in the suit agrees to the well-deserved break and suggests they buy something hot to endure the cold of the early morning. As they guard the hallway, the guard imagines what kind of luxurious banquet young Master Song must be eating in his room. Without the guards noticing anything, the real protagonist becomes a magical blur, using the invisible steps technique in the shadows. Standing in front of a fancy door, Yimo wonders if that protected hideout is really the song leader's room. The small paper butterfly floats down the hallway, guiding the boy exactly to the target tracked by the enchantment. Following the luminous magic, the guy stands right in front of the large sliding door, fully prepared for the showdown. However, he sharpens his perception and notices with surprise that the dangerous enemy's spiritual energy isn't coming from inside the room. Inside a dark and dirty little room, someone is desperately devouring a cup of instant noodles. The fake Song Shaoan dines alone, lamenting his own life and swearing he would never have chosen this path if he had any other option. Chewing the cheap food, he grumbles in frustration that he'd love to be living in a giant mansion and eating the most expensive banquets. A blind rage takes over the imposter as he crushes his own cup with hatred, wishing all the suits would rot in the underworld. With his eyes wide with pure envy, he can't accept suffering so much misfortune just because he was born with a face identical to the villain's. The painful memory invades the double's mind, remembering the humiliating moment he was tied and gagged on the floor. In the cruel memory, the real Shaoan adjusts his fancy glasses and lithely threatens him, reminding him of the consequences if his disguise fails. Exuding absolute arrogance, the leader throws it in the weakling's face that the imposter will never be more than a useless and completely disposable copy. Without a shred of mercy, the cultivator orders his puppet to completely forget any pathetic little plans of trying to take his place. Back in the depressing present, the double grabs the glass box, announcing he's going to break the rules since his only use is to be a shadow. As soon as the protective lid is opened, the magical butterfly flies freely around the room, leaving the fake-suited man completely perplexed. A mysterious voice echoes in the dark, coldly asking if the third-rate imposter doesn't know who he's talking to. In a surprising and devastating attack, Yimo emerges from the shadows and lands a violent blow, making the double scream in instant agony. The absurd impact throws the fake rich kid directly against the wooden table, destroying the remains of his miserable dinner on the floor. Walking slowly through the room, the protagonist finds the lack of killing intent in the weak target strange and questions if he doesn't recognize him. Sweating on the floor, the imposter points a finger in shock and tries to maintain the lie, shouting that he is the powerful leader of the Song family. But Yimo advances relentlessly, exposing the ridiculous farce on the spot with a sharp and completely intimidating gaze. With his eyes glowing with pure red hatred, the boy demands to know exactly which hole the real manipulative leader is hiding in. In a dark alley far away, a goon speaks on the phone, assuring his boss that dealing with a university student will be very easy. Surrounded by dozens of armed brutes, the man confirms that he has already tracked the boy's route and prepared the perfect ambush. Maintaining his tough guy persona, the leader promises to break all 4 of the target's limbs at once and deliver him package. Walking calmly down the deserted street, the protagonist approaches the dark alley, completely oblivious to the armed gang's conversation. Focused on his thoughts about magic, the guy assesses that the existence of spiritual artifacts proves the world harbors real cultivators. Racking his memory for the rules, he remembers that these objects gain powers when divine energy is infused and sealed during creation. However, this brutal forging technique requires an impeccable control of pure magic that only masters of very high levels can command. He concludes with wonder that the only way to forge strong items in such a weak world would be by controlling a legendary spiritual spring. With a new objective set in his mind, Yemo plans to hunt for this hidden source of magic as soon as he sends the cowardly villain straight to his grave. The gang of goons suddenly blocks the alley exit, shouting that the midnight hunt is finally over for the target. Full of cheap bravado, the leader demands the student's 2 legs and scoffs, asking if he'll break his own bones or prefer a beating. Shrouded in the heavy darkness of the alley, the boy just lifts his head, displaying a freezing, deadly gaze at the scum in front of him. The brute's survival instinct kicks in at that very moment, making the big guy break into a cold sweat in the face of that oppressive, murderous aura. Trying to hide his own paralyzing terror, the leader screams desperately, ordering his men to attack the lone target without mercy. The group advances, holding pieces of wood and laughing sadistically, while the protagonist waits patiently with his dark smoke. Very convinced of his numerical superiority, the mastermind thinks his best warriors will be able to crush the kid in an instant. Before the useless gang can even react, Yimu explodes in an absurd advance and lands a devastating kick, tearing apart the first attacker in line. Staring at the target, Song Shaoan scoffs, asking where all that brave attitude the boy showed during the banquet went. Completely furious, the suited man calls the guy an insect for having the audacity to speak to Ning Qingshu right in front of him. Pointing a finger, the villain admits that his biggest mistake was letting a loser handle this situation and allowing the target to live a few more days. Yemo understands that the rich kid was also involved and questions what the real reason for being hunted with such obsession would be. With a sadistic and dark smile on his face, the leader of the Song family just repeats the question in a purely ironic way. He loses his mind, screaming that a failure being engaged to that perfect girl is the biggest stain on his life, because she was born to be his alone. Seething with anger for his own reasons, the protagonist can't believe the guy sent someone to take him out just because of a sick jealousy. Exuding a terrifying purple aura, the suited man calmly warns that it would be a great waste to finish off the boy so quickly now. A gigantic spiritual entity appears behind the villain as he mocks that a mere mortal has never witnessed such a miracle in their life. The boy looks at the magical creature with some curiosity and wonders if it might be some kind of bizarre summon. The rich guy reveals that matriarch Zhou Nei possesses a very rare body of vital energy that will serve as perfect food to strengthen his shadow. Completely consumed by greed, he swears that after this macabre sacrifice, he will achieve absolute power and become a true god. Unfazed, Yimo displays an energy in his hands and questions why the villain wants him alive, since finishing him off directly would be much easier. Very sure of himself, the cultivator explains that he purposely left clues in the kidnapping to make the Ning Harris hunt the boy to his end. Covering his own body with even more spiritual power, the villain completes his lethal reasoning in a completely cold and calculated manner. The suited man states that the perfect plan will make everyone believe that the student is the real kidnapper and murderer of the matriarch. With a mocking laugh, the protagonist comments that the chatterbox ended up confessing to all his crimes without any effort. The rich guy freezes on the spot and doesn't understand the reason for so much confidence coming from that theoretically cornered kid. Turning his head back with the utmost tranquility, Yimo asks a mysterious hooded figure if she managed to hear everything correctly. The mysterious person removes their cap, revealing their identity while confirming that she heard every word of the dirty plan very clearly. Taking off the hood for good, Ning Qingshu reveals herself on the scene, exuding a blue aura as she glares at her ex, ally with pure disappointment and anger. Overcome with absolute panic, the leader of the Songs begins to stutter, trying to claim that kidnapping her out was just a bad joke. Ignoring the pathetic lies, the young cultivator advances furiously, ordering him to return her relative immediately. With a menacing look, the girl warns that if anything happens to the hostage, she will annihilate the villain's entire family without a second thought. Seething with hatred over the trap, the suited man points his finger, accusing the boy of playing dirty against him in this ambush. The guy just shrugs, reminding him that the rich kid himself opened his mouth to brag about everything of his own free will, and without any pressure. Closing his eyes with a completely relaxed posture, the protagonist prepares the final verbal blow to destroy the enemy's inflated ego. With a sharp and shining gaze, he mercilessly states that the great criminal and manipulative leader is actually a very dumb guy. The impact of the insult makes the rich guy freak out completely, screaming the target's name at the top of his lungs while releasing a lot of uncontrollable purple energy. Maintaining her coldness, the Harris takes the lead, warning that the boy can leave now because the Zhou family has been notified and is on their way. The girl throws it in his face that an ordinary human doesn't stand a chance in a battle involving real mages, trying to get her colleague away from the danger. On the other side, the villain loses the rest of his sanity seeing their intimacy and freaks out with jealousy, surrounded by his bald goons. Without thinking about the consequences, the suited man points his finger, screaming the lethal order for the assassin monks to destroy the target right now. In the same instant, the young cultivator leaps forward, creating a barrier with her own body to protect the protagonist from the deadly attack. The hulking monk ignores the woman's warning and fires an extremely powerful magical blow, cutting through the air swiftly in their direction. Displaying his cell phone, the leader of the Songs threatens to execute the hostage with just one call if the girl doesn't get out of the way of that failure. The pressure of the cruel choice falls on the Harris's shoulders as she freezes in place, torn between saving her own aunt or her former fiancé. But the boy simply walks past her with complete tranquility, saying there's no reason for all this exaggerated concern. Surprised by the guy's attitude, the young woman turns her head, completely speechless in the face that bizarre calmness in the middle of a lethal confrontation. Pulling out his own device, the protagonist shows a photo, proving that he has already taken care of the rescue and ensured the old lady's safety. The villain falls into pure despair as he looks at his own screen, unable to understand how his impenetrable security system failed so badly. On the surveillance camera, the rich kid only finds his fallen goons and the hideout completely ruined by an unknown intruder. 15 minutes earlier, the band of assassins was hidden in the middle of the forest, awaiting orders from their boss to begin the night's hunt. Maintaining control of the operation from a distance, the white-haired suited man ordered his entire troop to just stand by and wait for the right moment. Soon after, the manipulative leader moved away from the group, claiming he needed to make a very important call in a more private place. Away in the dark woods, the villain looked back with great caution, just to make sure none of his men had followed him. On the device's screen, the message exchanged with Yimo confirmed that the traitorous double had thrown the troops off track to facilitate the hostage's escape. Back in the present, the true leader of the songs is consumed by an explosive purple aura after discovering that his puppet acted behind his back. Observing the boy's calmness, the Harris is impressed by his brilliant planning for executing an impossible rescue with such mastery. Staring at the protagonist's serene and imposing profile, the young cultivator begins to seriously doubt if that boy is really the loser from the past. Seething with pure hatred, the suited man points his finger and orders the duo of monks to destroy the target while he himself holds the girl by force. Without wasting time, the two bald brutes charge like bulldozers, breaking the ground to massacre the unsuspecting couple once and for all. Taking advantage of the chaos, the rich kid fires purple energy restraints that speed across the battlefield, aiming directly for the enemy Harris. The dark magic envelopes the young woman's body, binding her arms and legs so tightly that she can no longer move a single muscle. With a cruel smile, the villain tells her to watch her beloved get crushed, while the girl despairs, screaming for the guy to run. Like true combat monsters, the giant monks leap into the air with their fists, ready to smash the student into the ground. Spinning his own energy in his hand, the psychopathic leader brags about his victory, decreeing that the woman will never be able to protect anything in her life. Completely paralyzed, the young cultivator sinks into guilt, thinking it was her own overconfidence that condemned the boy to his end. The dust rises heavily on the battlefield as the deadly attacks from the assassin duo plummet right toward the protagonist's head. However, the massive blows only hit the concrete, shattering the ground, without finding the slightest sign of the student's body in the middle of that smoke. The two bald brutes' eyes widen in complete shock, totally confused as to how the target simply vanished in front of them. Appearing out of nowhere with an extremely agile movement, Yimo lands a devastating kick directly to the monk's face, abusing his advanced technique. Watching the feat while tied up, the Harris's jaw drops, dumbfounded, trying to process where that monstrous and abnormal strength came from. The boy's brutal impact works like a truck, sending the assassin's heavy body flying through the air and making him slide hard across the asphalt. But instead of falling injured, the defeated enemy's body melts into the ground like sand, revealing the use of a very rare substitution spell. The fake body collapses into a puddle of dust and pieces of magic paper, completely nullifying the real damage the monk would have taken from that crushing blow. The amulet's magic reacts quickly, gathering the scattered earth into a small tornado as the dirty trick unravels in front of everyone. Reappearing unharmed and furious, the bald monk screams in anger for being forced to burn an extremely expensive and hard to get mystical item. Before the big guy finishes whining about the lost spell, the protagonist becomes a blur and already appears, covering the opponent's back. Without giving time for a reaction, the guy follows up with another devastating kick, driving the second assassin with full force directly into the stone floor of the place. The suited leader breaks into a cold sweat in the face of the massacre, recognizing that this dark speed is absolutely not human or natural. Walking calmly, Yimo lets his own blue aura overflow to a frightening level as the villain begins to understand the sad reality. Staring daggers at the scum with his magical gaze, he hears the enemy confirm in total panic that the failed exile is a true master of cultivation. The revelation drops like a bomb on the Harris's head, leaving her completely floored upon discovering she tried to protect a super powerful warrior. In slow, imposing steps, the protagonist advances, leaving a trail of blue flames on the ground, announcing that he has waited a long time for this showdown. Taking a step forward, the protagonist displays an intense blue aura enveloping his own feet. Cornered, the leader of the songs remembers sending the target to jail and hiring goons. The villain mentally replays the moment he kidnapped the boy's friend and hurt the dog. Trembling with rage, the suited man grumbles that the student has been acting like an annoying fly from the beginning. Advancing with firm steps, Yimo continues to exude a completely overwhelming spiritual power. With his eyes glowing with hatred, the guy coldly warns that he has wanted to crush this insect for a long time. In the middle of the destroyed courtyard, the atmosphere grows heavy as the fake monk's body remains stretched out on the ground. Xiaoan tries to maintain his arrogant posture, downplaying the fact that his great rival is also a cultivator. Summoning his colossal purple magic, the rich kid confesses that he avoided using it because of the high price it demanded. The gigantic shadow attacks with full force, while Qingshu watches the scene completely horrified. Lying nearby, the real bodies of the defeated monks begin to melt into a purple puddle. Yemo notices that the enemy's spell has a teleportation component and wonders about the techniques of this world. Sadistically, the villain declares that the useless goons will now become part of his own power. Celebrating the feat, the rich kid brags about having absorbed the energy of 2 warriors at once. The fallen monk's face sinks completely into the dark magic, sealing the duo's Maber sacrifice. Seething with arrogance, Xiaoan swears that his strength has just reached the legendary first level of cultivation. The protagonist stares at the scene, perplexed to realize that the enemy really devoured their entire souls. The dark purple magic begins to condense in the air, forming an extremely dense and bizarre mass. Consumed by madness, the villain points his finger, decreeing that the university student will be next. Qingshu falls into despair, blaming herself for being arrogant and underestimating the suited man's secrets. The young woman takes responsibility, feeling that the guy is only cornered there because of her. Determined, she steps forward, demanding that the psychopath let the target go, since the issue is with her. The protective attitude makes the Song family leader freak out with envy, seeing his beloved defending a piece of trash. Screaming at the top of his lungs, the rich kid swears that now the protagonist deserves to meet his end no matter what. The impact of his fury launches the shadow monster, tearing up the ground directly toward the boy. Seeing his end approaching, the heiress screams at the top of her lungs, telling her former fiancé to get out of the way. A brutal explosion of purple energy covers the entire area, completely sweeping the scene. In an absurd reflex, Yemo advances, enveloped in a blue aura, and grabs the girl by the waist at the last second. With his feet firm, the protagonist lands calmly outside the enemy's blast radius. Holding the cultivator safely, he lets the overwhelming attack pass by, kicking up a lot of dust. In total shock, the rich kid's eyes widen, unable to understand when the target dodged the blow. Still holding the girl, Yemo mocks the enemy, asking if that is the so-called first level. Leaping high, the protagonist flaunts his confidence, questioning if that power is really supposed to be strong. Feeling her ex-fiancé's magic, Qingshu is impressed to realize that his strength easily surpasses the villain's. Without letting up, the guy initiates a lethal dive directly toward the suited man in the midst of the destruction. The crushing impact hits the ground, making the rich kid spit a lot of blood, unable to believe it. Taking advantage of the distraction, the dark beast attacks by surprise and grabs the protagonist back with force. With his face contorted with hatred, the leader of the song screams desperately that he wants to see the student gone. The purple shadow fires a magical explosion at point-blank range, trying to disintegrate the boy for good. However, Yemu destroys the dark charge in an instant, breaking through the magic with his shining blue aura. Lying on the ground, Xiaoan insists on his arrogance, swearing that this trash will be swallowed by his shadows. The protagonist lands calmly, completely ignoring the pathetic delusion of the bloodied villain. Concentrating all his power, the boy pushes away the dark mist, emanating a monstrous spiritual pressure. Enveloped in an intense blue, he coldly states that in the face of true absolute power, this cheap magic, isn't even worthy of being mentioned. A brutal wave of force shatters all the concrete around them. With a sharp look, the university student coldly states that he has finally figured out the darn trick. The protagonist's hand pierces the purple illusion, grabbing the true core that controlled all that magic. Displaying a disgusting spiritual worm, he deduces that the supposed supreme technique is just a parasitic insect. Without the slightest mercy, the guy crushes the creature in his own hand, making the energy splatter far away. The broken connection causes devastating internal damage, making the villain vomit a lot of blood at that very moment. Crawling defeated, the psychopath cries, unable to accept how a piece of trash kicked out of his home did that absurd thing. Screaming in panic, the rich kid warns that his great-grandfather belongs to an extremely dangerous hidden faction. Yemo stops in his tracks, completely intrigued, wondering if this planet really harbors cultivation sects. In a hysterical fit, the suited man laughs, saying the guy's influence is nothing compared to his. Ignoring the tantrum, the boy starts walking toward the defeated man again, exuding pure lethal fury. The rich kid backs away, sweating, and threatens that his enemy won't be able to handle the consequences of a hit. The protagonist's feet continue to advance relentlessly as blue flames crack the stone ground. Terrified, the leader of the songs drags himself desperately, screaming at the monster to stop right there. The boy's bluish hand approaches as the loser tries to bargain for a forgiveness that doesn't exist. Completely broken, the suited man cries pathetically, admitting his mistake and begging for his life. Determined to end the little show, the protagonist prepares the final blow, saying goodbye to the leader of the Song family. A monstrous pillar of blue energy mercilessly crashes down on the rich kid, completely crushing him. The gust of wind generated by the brutal impact forces the young cultivator to cover her own face to protect herself. Dominating the scene, Imo remains standing with his eyes glowing red over his rival's inert body. The dust settles in the immense, destroyed courtyard, revealing the silent distance between the heiress and the student. Turning his head, the boy announces that it's all over and that he has already received confirmation of her aunt's rescue. A little embarrassed by everything that happened, the girl lowers her eyes, thanking him for the crucial help. Swallowing her pride, Kingsu laments having been ignorant for judging the guy as a loser the whole time. The protagonist kneels beside the body, saying he would have taken out the villain anyway, and has already taken what he wanted. Analyzing a golden ring, he recognizes a 4th-level spiritual artifact, despite the rustic craftsmanship. Very confused, the young woman questions why such a strong monster allowed himself to be kicked out of his family like trash. Walking right past her, the guy coldly says that the Ye family's problems are no longer his concern. Determined, the heiress promises she needs to force her advancement to the 3rd magical level at any cost. Haunted by her own family's control, the young woman understands that only absolute power will guarantee her freedom. Standing further ahead, the protagonist just looks back in silence, noticing the girl's conviction there. Yemo displays the spiritual dispersion pill, explaining their agreement. This pill is meant to disperse all the violent energy accumulated in her body. The cultivator is shocked, fearing she'll lose her entire magic base if she does this. Being very direct, he warns that her old method will be her end if she continues practicing it. But the young woman hesitates, lamenting that she would become an ordinary person for the rest of her life. Just then, she is left completely confused about where the next part of the agreement comes in. With a deep look, the boy asks if she wants to learn the true method of cultivation. The scene changes to the huge house where the protagonist is currently living. The guy soon opens the door to one of the rooms to show her the place. Carrying her suitcase, Chingsu enters the house, looking a little shy about the situation. With her face slightly red, she announces that she'll be staying at his residence for now. Noticing the girl's nervousness, Yemu naively asks if her injuries are hurting. Dying of embarrassment, she just pushes the guy inside, telling him to be quiet. Out in the yard, the heiress realizes that her colleague is getting ready to leave again. The boy confirms that the matter with Song Shaoan is over and now he needs to look for the spiritual spring. Before leaving, Yemo recommends that she cultivate near the rare silver heart grass to heal. At that moment, his puppy appears, running excitedly through the yard. Petting the animal, the protagonist promises to teach the girl the cultivation method before he goes. He also leaves the young woman in charge of taking care of the magic plant and the puppy. Chingsu is impressed, commenting that it's quite rare to see the guy with such a gentle expression. Holding the little animal, she is curious to know what its name is. The boy confesses that the dog doesn't have a name, but the rich girl insists that giving it a nickname is important. Cool with the idea, the guy decides to name the puppy Shiliu. The pup lets out an excited bark, showing that it really liked the choice. Observing the animal's joy, the protagonist thinks the name is perfect. The scene brings back an old memory where someone was calling a certain little Shilia to eat. Another voice in the memory was praising the older brother's incredible moves in a fight. The past echoes in Yimo's mind with the name being repeated very nostalgically. Back in reality inside the house, Kyungshu takes off her jacket and asks where she'll be sleeping. Sitting calmly, Yimo says he has already cleaned the guest room for her to use. Still in the room, the cultivator is apprehensive about how the guy will deal with the Song family. Exuding a blue aura, Yimo guarantees that everything is already taken care of and that the villain will disappear. Far away, a huge stone gate isolates the mountain at the back of the Song family mansion. Dozens of suits gather in a clearing, waiting for something very important to happen. In the middle of the crowd, a man anxiously asks about Shaoan's whereabouts. The family leader, Songjia, is asked if their great-grandfather will really end his seclusion today. A suited man with glasses confirms that he received direct information about the end of the isolation. Suddenly, a loud bang echoes as the heavy stone doors begin to open by themselves. Tension grips the audience as the family leader announces the elder's return. A monstrous, furry paw steps hard on the ground, startling those present. The white-haired old man appears in the shadows, murmuring that 5 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Mounted on a giant dark beast, Song Zaha emerges from the cave, exuding pure mystical power. The family leader bows to the old man, celebrating his advancement to the 3rd level of cultivation. With a powerful laugh on the beast, the old man praises his nephew's sharp tongue. Imposing, the elder master immediately demands the presence of his beloved great-grandson, Shaoan. The elder remembers that his great-grandson was dealing with a kid from the Ye family and wants to know the result of the mission. Sweating, the suited man reports that they gave up because the boy was just an ordinary person. The master's eyes widen, glowing with magic, and he questions the word, gave up, with great fury. Seething with anger, he doesn't accept that a member of the powerful Song family said something so pathetic. With a murderous look, the elder swears he himself will solve the problem if the boy wasn't capable. Without wasting time, the old man summons 2 professional assassins from his elite hidden sect. The suited man with glasses panics upon hearing the lethal order given to the experienced mercenaries. Completely insane, the master orders the duo to travel and bring him the enemy boy's head. The next morning, Chingsu stretches sleepily, unable to believe she had to wake up at 5 in the morning. Sitting calmly, Yimu explains that spiritual energy reaches its peak at this early hour. Before starting the intense training, he hands her a mug, telling the girl to drink the contents quickly. Without questioning, the rich girl takes large gulps of the mysterious drink prepared by her classmate. Surprised by the strange taste, she wants to know exactly what's in that green liquid. The protagonist reveals that he made a mild mixture because her body wouldn't handle a pure pill. Silently, he laments how weak the body structures of the people in this peaceful world are. Turning his back, Yimo tells the girl to go change clothes so they can get to work. With a serious expression, he decrees that the time has come to teach the true method of cultivation. At the bustling park, the young woman is full of embarrassment, asking if they are really going to train there. Yamu explains that energy flows better near nature, so that open place is simply perfect. Around them, the elderly gossip, thinking the young couple is doing some bizarre spiritual therapy. Ignoring the gossips, Chingsu asks how he knew her old method was so destructive. Relaxed on the rock, Yimo just tells his partner to empty her mind and focus on the magic around them. He explains that the old technique pulled in all the raw energy, slowly damaging her body in the process. The secret to true cultivation, according to the master, is to extract only the purest part to nourish the body. With his eyes glowing intensely, the boy brags that his method utilizes everything. Following the instructions, the cultivator focuses her mental strength on her forehead to guide the divine absorption. Completely focused, the girl closes her eyes, trying to find the magical flow in the natural environment. The protagonist's voice echoes, telling her to empty her mind completely and just feel the invisible flow. Diving into her own empty subconscious, she feels an absolute darkness taking over her being. Frustrated, the young woman opens her eyes, cussing for not being able to feel a single drop of spiritual energy. Observing the training from afar, an old lady comments with concern that the girl is sweating too much and suspects something is very wrong. Completely frustrated with the exercise, Kyungsu confesses that she really can't feel any of that energy at all. To solve the situation, Yimo touches his partner's forehead with a glowing finger, causing her to jump slightly. He instructs the girl to close her eyes again and try to focus on the sensation one more time. The protagonist lends his own mental strength to help his partner perceive the mystical flow hidden in the environment. Calmer with the help she received, the heiress agrees with the instruction and concentrates on the task. The cute scene makes the old folks sigh, thinking the two form a super romantic couple in the park. Diving into her own mind, Chingsu fully focuses her perception on the mysterious energy. She finally sees the magic shining in the air and is amazed by the beauty of that pure power. The guy's projection explains that this is the true invisible essence of the world, but laments that it's very weak there. Suddenly cutting off physical contact, the boy announces that their practical training is done for the day. Getting up from the rock, he tells his partner to focus on guiding this force alone to reach the first level. With the day's lessons over, Yimo calls his colleague to leave, and she just agrees. Later at the rented house, Chingshu takes a hot bath to relax her body after so much effort. However, the cultivator's mind can't stop replaying the guy's gentle touch on her forehead, leaving the young woman super embarrassed. Annoyed with her own confused thoughts, she slaps the water, yelling that this whole situation is so annoying. Focusing on what really matters, the young woman vows to continue her training, knowing she needs to reach the first level of power soon. A week later, the protagonist waits on the street at night, finding the delay of the clandestine transport strange. He reflects that he left enough pills for the girl to level up and protect the house on her own. At ease with his partner's safety, Yimo goes his own way, focused on the new mission. An old bus pulls up on the dark street, and the boy deduces that this is the vehicle arranged by the smugglers. Without wasting time, the student boards the suspicious transport to begin his secret journey. Walking down the bus aisle, he attracts dirty looks from a passenger who thinks it's crazy for a boy to go to such a dangerous place. A strange man tells the guy to pick any seat and wishes him a good trip in a somewhat cynical tone. Ignoring the warm reception, the protagonist just remains silent as he assesses the environment. The vehicle is packed with unfriendly-looking men, making it clear that no one there is a saint. Running a hand through his hair, Yimo finds the smugglers' setup quite curious. The bus finally takes off down the deserted road, marking the beginning of the journey in search of power. Far away, a commercial airplane lands smoothly on the runway of the major city of Ninghai. In the arrival hall, An old passenger grumbles in relief to have arrived, complaining that traveling at his age is very uncomfortable. Looking at his phone, the experienced assassin confirms he has received the boy's address and promises to handle the job soon. The old man walking through the airport comments excitedly that it's been 30 years since his last outing and plans to enjoy the trip. Elsewhere, Su Jingwen carefully fastens a bracelet of colorful stones on her wrist. The businesswoman remembers the moment the protagonist gave her the gift before leaving town to ensure her safety. In the memory, Yimu explained that each jade bead carries a powerful protection spell to be used in emergencies. Snapped out of her daydreams, the rich woman is startled when her assistant calls her name in the meeting room. The employee notices her boss's distraction and comments that she was smiling foolishly while staring at the new jewelry on her wrist. Jingwen just focuses on the colorful stones, feeling immense affection for the gift from her business partner. With a teasing smile, the assistant deduces that it was a gift from the mysterious boy and jokes about the situation. Trying to hide her embarrassment, the president quickly changes the subject and tells the employee to pack her bags for a boring trip. Desperate with the comical punishment, the assistant begs for mercy outside the company's giant building. Meanwhile, the clandestine bus continues its journey, crossing a dirt road surrounded by dense forest. Waking up in his seat, the protagonist realizes they've been driving through these mountains for about 6 hours straight. The driver strikes up a conversation, commenting that each passenger there must have very strong reasons for wanting to reach the dangerous destination. In the back of the vehicle, some very strange, hooded figures keep their guard up during the long journey. A sudden break throws the passengers forward by surprise, making them complain about the turbulent trip. Trying to maintain order, one of the men stands up, asking for calm and assuring he will protect everyone in the vehicle. However, the bus windshield is brutally shattered by a surprise attack, startling the bald driver. Outside, the clandestine transport has been completely surrounded by a gang of heavily armed thugs. The bandits storm the front door, brandishing sharp machetes and a strong willingness to spill blood. The man from before tries to negotiate, warning that this business belongs to a powerful local boss. Not wanting to talk, the intruder simply slashes the man's chest with a quick, bloody strike. Unable to defend himself, the passenger collapses on the bus floor, writhing in pain. The gang leader decrees that everyone must get off and cooperate, as they are hunting for an intruder who shouldn't be there. Observing everything from his seat, Yimo remains calm and wonders if he is the real target of this whole search. Realizing the imminent danger, the hooded figure stands up, complaining about being caught in the middle of an annoying ambush. The bandit approaches the protagonist and yells for the student to get up from his seat immediately. Suspicious of the boy, the aggressor demands to know what's in his backpack and tells him to empty it all out. Impatient, the gang leader tells his goon not to waste time talking and orders him to finish off the boy at once. With a sadistic smile, the brute readies his metal bat, agreeing to eliminate the obstacle. About to attack, the goon is completely lost upon noticing that the target has disappeared from the seat in the blink of an eye. The aggressor feels a strong gust of wind pass by his neck and doesn't understand where that air came from inside. Seizing the opening, the protagonist appears behind the enemy and lands a crushing blow covered in magic. With the brutal impact, the bandit's body goes through the bus window, shattering all the glass in its path. Exuding his oppressive blue aura, Yimo agrees that time is short and tells all the intruders to attack at once. Seething with hatred, the rest of the gang charges with their machetes raised, swearing to rip off the bold boy's arms. Effortlessly, the student blocks the charge and counters at an simply absurd speed. In a display of martial arts, he delivers precise kicks and punches, sending the goons flying in all directions. In a few seconds, the entire gang falls defeated to the floor while the guy takes a deep breath to relax his muscles. Dusting off his clothes, the protagonist assesses the scene and declares that the fun is over. With the danger neutralized, the other passengers finally exit the vehicle to check the damage from the ambush. Analyzing the dented bodywork, one of the men warns that the axle is broken and the transport isn't going anywhere. Desperate, the bald driver holds up his phone, cursing that isolated and cursed place. Panic grips the group when they realize they have no signal to call for help and are stranded in the middle of a wild forest. Ignoring the useless whining of the ordinary humans, Yemo turns his back and continues his journey, walking alone into the woods. The protagonist reflects that getting out of this jungle is a piece of cake for his current strength, but knows he'll need a new guide to find the city of Lishi. Just then, a voice catches his attention in the middle of the woods, making the boy turn his head to see who's lurking nearby. A masked person holding a briefcase deduces the guy's destination and proposes a deal, offering the way in exchange for protection to the city of Jiban. Without giving a darn about the dubious offer, Yimo just turns his back and coldly says he has no interest in that. The figure points a finger, demanding he think it over, guaranteeing the boy will never find his final destination without this valuable help. With a sharp gaze, the student concludes that the bandits were hunting the girl precisely, and that the main target is that mysterious briefcase. Exuding a lethal and dark aura, he intimidatingly questions what makes the figure think they have any standing to try and negotiate there. The spiritual pressure works instantly, and the person backs away, sweating, admitting defeat, and accepting their disadvantaged position in the deal. However, right after, the traveler runs desperately after the protagonist, begging him to wait just one more minute. Taking off her disguise, the girl finally reveals herself and introduces herself as Wen Dong, confirming she's a resident of that tough region. Sizing up her travel partner, she deduces with great certainty that the guy isn't going to that dangerous place just for money. To prove her reasoning, the young woman shows a small magic vial and questions if that is exactly what the student is hunting for. Far away, a convoy of heavy jeeps tears down the dirt road at high speed, kicking up a lot of dust through the dense jungle. One of the goons in the vehicles spots strange movement on the side of the road and quickly alerts the rest of the armed gang. As soon as the cars stop in front of the passengers of the broken-down bus, the bald driver celebrates, thinking they've finally been saved. Running toward the jeep, the driver asks with great relief if that armed group was sent by Master Hong to rescue them. But the answer comes in the form of a brutal kick directly to his face, sending the useless man flying backward with full force. Stepping onto the dirt ground with a fancy dress shoe, the convoy leader repeats the so-called master's name with pure venom in his voice. Smoking a cigar imposingly, the suited man throws it in their faces that the weak old man isn't going to show up to save anyone there. As the group surrounds the frightened passengers, one of the goons informs the leader that they've finally found the target they were looking for. The goons who got beaten badly on the bus appear all bruised and beg their boss for forgiveness for failing the mission so miserably. Sitting in a chair in the middle of nowhere, the suited man with sunglasses ignores the apologies and demands to know where the woman fled. Kneeling and terrified, the goon confesses he has no idea of her whereabouts, revealing that the gang was massacred by a boy. The leader takes off his glasses in complete disbelief, threatening the subordinate with his life if he's making up absurd stories about a kid. Desperate to live, the bald driver steps forward and promises to give away the couple's escape route in exchange for a safe ride out of there. The other passengers confirm the story on the spot, detailing that the mysterious figure wore a mask, but clearly smelled like a woman. Finding the information quite useful for the hunt, the boss puts his sunglasses back on and tells the witness to keep talking. Pointing into the dense woods, the bald man gives the exact direction of their escape and even bets the two have already become food for wild animals. The suited man deduces that the targets are heading for a protection convoy and mocks the false sense of security the two must be feeling. Determined to finish the job, the villain orders his men to march toward the objective, while the bald man begs not to be left behind. Staring at the desperate driver with a completely empty gaze, the gang boss shows not a shred of empathy for him. The leader simply turns his back, and his goons point their guns at the informant, who panics at the cowardly betrayal. Sweating in the face of imminent demise, the man begs for his life, reminding them that he fulfilled his part of the deal and gave them everything. The negotiation fails miserably, and a scream of pure agony echoes through the dark forest, sealing the tragic fate of those travelers. The next morning, the landscape opens up to reveal the bustling streets of the famous city of Jiban, the meeting point for the region's mercenaries. Walking down the sidewalk, the girl asks Yemo to hide his monstrous strength as much as possible, leaving the guy completely confused. She explains that showing off too much power would only attract greedy big shots after the secret of the divine water, since the bandits must be on their tail. The protagonist just mutters in agreement, understanding that keeping a low profile now is the smartest move to avoid delays. Just ahead, his partner points to a man on the street and says that he is the exact experienced contact they came to find. At the door of a small souvenir shop, the old man affectionately pets his dog, thanking the animal for its hard work. The animal closes its eyes, thoroughly enjoying its owner's affection, demonstrating the strong bond between the pair. The girl calls out the smuggler's name loudly, making the veteran turn his head in complete surprise upon hearing the familiar voice. Exhaling with great relief, the old man greets the young woman, confirming their years of familiarity in that dangerous territory. Getting straight to the point, she begs the veteran to arrange a safe and urgent route for the pair to reach the city of Lushi in one piece. Very helpfully, the smuggler confirms he has a trip scheduled for today and promises to fit the two of them into his trusted convoy. Grateful for the help, the girl changes the subject, lamenting the sad situation of his wife, who has been sick in the hospital for a long time. The old man invites the pair to wait inside the shop, but a voice full of irony comes from the street, complimenting the good business. A blondish fellow appears with his goons, demanding $1 million debt and threatening to confiscate the veteran's convoy as payment. Noticing the sudden tension, Yimo assesses the uncomfortable situation and silently considers whether he should crush those annoying debt collectors right there. Under pressure, the old man tries to buy time, asking to settle this financial issue later, as he is very busy today. The loan shark shows absolute sadism, making it clear he has no intention of making life easy for the gray-haired debtor. Surrounding the entrance with his gang, the villain declares that if the cash doesn't show up today, in hand, there won't be a tomorrow to talk. Outraged by the lie, the protagonist's partner steps in and throws it in his face that the veteran hates gambling and would never risk the convoy. The shop owner loses his patience, screaming that the scum has no honor for charging absurd interest when he was completely vulnerable. Exuding total cynicism, the blonde guy guarantees that the 500,000 loan used for his wife's treatment is all registered on paper. Considering the urgency, Wendong understands that they need this transport to get out of there before the assassin gang from the forest arrives. Seeing no other quick way out, the girl steps forward, taking the heat and guaranteeing that she herself will pay the smuggler's debt now. The old man tries to stop her from making the sacrifice, but the young woman reinforces that the protection of that convoy is the only thing that matters at that critical moment. Celebrating the good news, the loan shark snaps his fingers, satisfied, and recalls the cruel terms of the contract the veteran signed in desperation. A suited goon shows the paper, reinforcing the trap, where the 10% interest increases drastically with each day of delay. Holding the document maliciously, the villain states that the 15-day delay has turned the initial debt into an amount of $6.5 million. The veteran seethes with anger, accusing the gang of blatant fraud, as this insane amount is a daylight robbery. Clapping provocatively, the blonde guy accepts the lack of payment and proposes to resolve the conflict using the city's cruel rules. The loan shark points to his suited partner and suggests that a round of dice will decide the fate of that mountain of debt once and for all. With an exaggerated bow, the man in glasses, named William, formally introduces himself, accepting the challenge against the young outsider. Desperate about the trap, the old man begs his partner not to accept the contest, warning that the man is the unbeatable genius of the casino. Ignoring the whining, the villain decrees the rules of the table, stating that a win forgives the entire debt, but a loss will double the amount on the spot. With a manic look dominated by shadows, the collector tests the girl's courage, wanting to know if she has the guts to go along with this madness. The protagonist crosses his arms, realizing his ally is completely cornered, knowing that using brute force now would ruin the rescue. Maintaining a firm posture, the partner deduces that this whole disgusting challenge is just the second trap in the dirty plan to steal the transport. She accepts the provocation, remembering that she was trained in childhood to decipher results using a sharp sense of hearing to track the sound of the dice. Without wasting time, the opponent shakes the cup with great technique and slams the object hard against the wooden surface to start the contest. Confident in her secret abilities, the young woman goes all in, asking if the scum will really honor the result of the game of chance. The old man still tries to grab his ally by the shoulder, screaming desperately that the whole thing is a rehearsed fraud to destroy them for good. Exuding great arrogance, the loan shark opens his arms and falsely swears that he always keeps his promises in those lawless streets. Everyone gathers around the table to begin the tense dispute. With her gaze fixed on her opponent, Wendong announces that they can start. Adjusting his glasses cynically, William agrees to begin the game of chance. Sitting on the sofa, Imo realizes his partner has walked straight into a trap. The boy analyzes the situation, concluding that the opponent is hiding very dangerous skills. Smiling maliciously, the collector thinks it's idiotic of them to have accepted the challenge. Turns out, the suited man has been studying secret gambling techniques since he was 5 years old. Using his master's teachings, he is fully confident that he can dominate any casino. On top of all that skill, he also has the help of a special magic cufflink. Confident in this dirty trick, the villain is sure that guessing the numbers will be very easy. Exuding pure arrogance, he declares that his victory was guaranteed from the start. Slamming the cup hard on the table, the young woman finishes her move, and William tells her to choose. The goons burst into laughter, warning her not to complain about cheating when she loses. Ignoring the jokes, Wendong warns that their premature celebration will end very badly. She reflects that the mathematical probability of the game seems quite fair for both sides. However, the young woman trusts her sharp hearing, which has memorized the exact sound of each die falling. With total certainty of what she heard, she lifts her head and bets her chips on an even number. The suited man scoffs at her confidence and chooses the odd side, telling her to lift the cup. The dice reveal an even result, confirming the absolute precision of the girl's hearing. The smuggler celebrates with relief, announcing they only need one more win to clear the debt. Without losing his composure, William reminds them there's still one round left and tells the young woman to play again. She shakes the cup vigorously, demanding the villain keep his promise when he's defeated. Immediately after, the girl slams the heavy metal object against the table, sealing the new play. Maintaining her precision, the outsider bets on odd numbers and passes the turn to her opponent. With a look full of malice, the collector creates cheap suspense before revealing his choice. Watching from afar, Imo realizes the enemy's trap has finally been sprung. Displaying a sinister look, the villain shocks everyone by betting that all 3 dice will show the same number. The old man is stunned by his audacity in choosing the most difficult probability in the entire game. Realizing the danger of that risky bet, Wendong swallows hard, feeling the pressure mount. Believing in her own hearing, she lifts the cup, declaring that this dirty game ends here. Smiling cynically, the suited man just watches as despair takes over his opponent. To the girl's horror, the pieces on the table show 3 identical 6s. Completely in disbelief, she doesn't understand how her infallible hearing could have made such an absurd mistake. Perceiving the setup, Yimo notices the use of hidden magic to manipulate the weight of the objects in the game. With victory in hand, the collector demands one last round to decide the fate of the money. Consumed by frustration, the young woman restarts the game, swearing she won't fail again. Shaking the container, she closes her eyes, ordering herself to maintain absolute focus. The sharp impact of the cup hitting the wood hard ends the girl's tense move. Recalling the sound from memory, the outsider hesitantly deduces that the pieces formed an odd number. Meanwhile, the loan shark's goons await the final decision, snickering mockingly. Swallowing her uncertainty, the young woman raises her head and confirms her bet on the odd result. The thugs make fun of her fear, guaranteeing that their boss has never lost a single game. Shrouded in magic, the villain ignores his own goons, knowing they don't understand his power. Exuding arrogance, William declares that the table is his absolute domain and bets on an even number. The enemy's sudden choice startles the young woman, making her doubt her own ears again. With no way to back down, the outsider announces she will reveal the result once and for all. Just then, a firm hand grabs the girl's wrist, stopping the action immediately. The suited man loses his patience, demanding to know who the meddling kid stopping the game is. Taking the lead, the protagonist announces that he will be the new opponent for this round. William looks the student up and down, finding this change of players completely pathetic. Still nervous, Wendong tries to warn her partner that the collector in front of them plays very dirty. The boy calms his ally, assuring her that the arrogant man uses the exact same tricks as him. The revelation leaves the girl perplexed upon discovering that the blonde guy also masters the arts of cultivation. Seething with hatred at the intrusion, the villain exudes a threatening energy, glaring at the student. Banging on the wood, the lone shark questions the right of that brat to take on others' debts. Pointing a finger, the gang leader makes it clear that the original challenge was only against the woman. Ignoring the tantrum, Imo slides a credit card, revealing a balance of over 1 million. The protagonist throws the perfect bait, reminding them that the criminals only came there for money. Greed speaks louder, and the thug's eyes shine with the possibility of $1 million profit. Unable to resist the temptation, the gang boss crosses his arms, accepting the new conditions of the bet. The loan shark declares that if the boy loses, he will double the debt and also take the $1 million card. Confident in his own trick, William maintains his bet on the even result and asks for his rival's choice. With his eyes glowing red, the protagonist returns the mockery, betting on a triple number. To make the humiliation worse, he coldly specifies that all 3 numbers will be odd. The goons burst into laughter, thinking the kid is pathetically trying to imitate the boss's tactic. His allies panic, warning that the chance of hitting such a specific guess is almost nil. Adjusting his posture, the suited man falsely suggests that the boy change his choice before the embarrassment. Unfazed by the theatrics, Yemo sticks with his initial decision, demanding the cup be lifted. Surrounded by purple flames, William accepts the end of the round as he prepares his spiritual manipulation. The villain focuses his magic on the mystical cufflink, capable of moving any small object from a distance. Displaying a sick smile, the cheater casts his spell on the dice and orders the grand winner to be revealed. To the absolute terror of the gang, the cup is lifted, displaying 3 threes facing up. The gang is in collective shock, wondering if it was pure luck or an impossible move. Losing his chick composure, William slams the table, screaming and accusing the boy of cheating. The outsider doesn't swallow the hypocrisy and yells back, demanding to know why only they are allowed to win the game. Furious, William jumps up from the table, screaming that it's impossible for the boy to get identical numbers with him there. The collector almost gives away that he had already altered the pieces. Maintaining his calm, the protagonist smiles provocatively, confirming that his opponent did indeed change the results. Exuding unshakable confidence, Yemo blatantly exposes the dirty trick, revealing that the suited man used his own magic cufflink to cheat. Enveloping the cup with dark magic, the university student scoffs that the collector's technique is far too weak. The entire gang is in total shock, not understanding how the farce was discovered, while a goon demands the boss deliver on his promise of victory. Outraged by the disgusting cheating, Wendong slams the table, demanding an explanation for that fraudulent game. With no way out, William admits to the setup, covered in purple magic, and declares that none of them will leave that place alive. Exuding aggression, the villain sends the entire table flying, guaranteeing that his power goes far beyond manipulating little games of chance. With a psychopathic smile, the lone shark creates a spiritual blade in his hands, swearing the meddlers will pay dearly for annoying him. Taking advantage of the distraction, Yimo throws an object at a frightening speed directly toward the enemy. The surprise attack tears through the air, grazing by, leaving the suited man with wide eyes, completely paralyzed with shock. Immediately after, the improvised projectile hits the wall with force, embedding itself deep in the concrete. Maintaining his completely relaxed posture on the sofa, the boy stares at the collector, who freezes with the magic blade still in his hands. The shock of the blow is immediate, causing the purple magic to disappear as the gang leader collapses to his knees, completely weakened. Seeing their boss fall like that, the goons swallow hard and ask in terror if he's okay. Imposing and consumed by his flaming blue aura, the protagonist demands the promise be kept and the debt note be handed over immediately. One of the goons doesn't accept the order and starts cussing out the student, showing he still wants a fight. In a complete panic, the gang boss himself yells at his subordinate to hand over the document right away. Sweating and with a look of pure terror, William repeats the order, desperate not to further irritate that monster disguised as a boy. The thug freezes, holding the papers, not understanding why their merciless leader backed down with such fear. Snatching the note from the brute's hand, Yimo lethally warns that he won't stop anyone's end if they want to keep fighting. Threatened, the goon finally yields, stuttering that he will obey the boss's order as he releases the contract. With the paper secured, the protagonist just turns his back, ending the commotion, while the thug falls to the floor, trembling. Staring daggers at the scum with his magical gaze, the boy advises the lone shark to gather his useless gang and disappear from that place. Completely traumatized by the invisible force he felt, the suited man accepts the humiliation, confirming he got the message. Now outside, walking through the city, Wendong is curious, wanting to know what exactly her partner did to scare the collector like that. Keeping a firm pace, Yimo shrugs and blatantly lies, saying he didn't do anything special. Back at the shop, the goons still don't understand the boss's reaction, calculating they could have easily stabbed the kid with the numerical advantage. Holding his injured wrist, William curses in frustration, unable to accept how the old smuggler got the protection of a demon. The villain replays the quick clash, and is haunted by being completely neutralized in a fraction of a second. The lone shark analyzes the wreckage of his magic cufflink, remembering his master swore that not even a bomb could destroy that artifact. Traumatized by the target's absurd strength, the villain turns his back along with his gang, declaring he will flee that city forever. Far away, night falls, and a camp is set up near the city of Lushi, awaiting the arrival of the criminal group's third boss. Relaxing in the tent, the gang boss dines on a nice piece of meat while awaiting news of the operation. One of the goons enters, confirming they have already tracked the entire route, guaranteeing the enemy convoy will have to pass through there the next day. With a maniacal smile, the gang leader celebrates, remembering that the investment in heavy weapons will finally yield bloody fruits. Staring at a huge box full of military hardware, the psychopath coldly declares that he wants no survivors from that massacre. The next morning, the old veteran smiles with gratitude, thanking the outsider duo from the bottom of his heart for their valuable support. The smuggler admits he would be a goner without this essential help, lamenting that the business he built with his wife would have turned to dust. Yemo just thanks him back, noting that trying to reach the destination without the safe transport of that veteran would have been a huge headache. Exuding confidence, the old man assures the boy he can relax, as he himself has dominated that dangerous route for over 5 decades. Full of energy, he jokes that he still escorts people, and is only not leading personally today, because his advanced age is weighing on his body. The convoy of cargo trucks finally takes off down the dirt road, kicking up dust on its way to the dangerous mission in the jungle. On the sidewalk, the veteran waves with a smile, saying goodbye to his clients and wishing them good luck on that risky journey to Lushi. Now settled in the back of the truck, the duo sits with other passengers to face the long hours on the road. Curious about her past, the protagonist asks why his partner had to leave Lushi and how she ended up being hunted by bandits. Hugging her briefcase tightly, the young woman explains that she left to pick up a package, and now the gang wants what's inside. The revelation piques Imu's interest, and he very directly asks what the valuable content of this mysterious package might be. Clutching the briefcase to her chest, the outsider honestly confesses that she has no idea what she's carrying either. With a look full of tension, Wendong finishes her answer, stating that the item belongs to a real cultivator. The journey continues through the mountains as the heavy trucks cut through the dense forest on the dirt path. In the same vehicle, a hooded man lets out a cynical smile, advising a rich girl to be very careful with the passengers there. Spitting prejudice, the guy analyzes the people around them, guaranteeing that absolutely no one in that place seems to have good intentions. The pink-haired girl is very surprised by the accusation and asks how he can be so sure of something like that just by looking. Full of himself, the man introduces himself as the heir to a powerful fighting style and brags that he can read the secrets in people's hearts. Pointing to a big guy, the conceited man swears that the man's innocent face is just a mask to hide horrible sins. Immediately after, he attacks a smiling elderly woman, labeling her a typical roadside scam artist. To make matters worse, he turns to Wen Dong, calling her a classless troublemaker who only serves to attract chaos. The young woman listens, fuming with anger. Embarrassed by her allies' talk, the rich girl confesses that she can only see a bunch of ordinary, hardworking people trying to travel in peace. With malice in his voice, the fighter warns that the girl will have to trust him completely if she wants to find the legendary cultivator of that region. In his thoughts, the sly fighter eyes the girl's money, remembering that she is the heiress to a billionaire financial empire. Charmed by the scammer's smooth talk, the rich girl praises his talent while the man focuses on his plan to seduce her and make her his ticket to wealth. Assessing the environment, the suited man focuses his attention on the passengers, trying to identify any real risk to his dirty plans. The scammer's gaze lands on Yemu, who is resting with his eyes closed, considering the boy just some random security guard posing as a tough guy. With a cynical smile, the fighter mentally declares that the kid is lucky not to have crossed his path on this boring trip. Bored with the calmness of the mountain, the con artist laments the lack of danger, wishing for a heroic chance to show off in front of the rich girl. The boredom ends all too quickly when the drivers panic, screaming for everyone to watch out for the road. A monstrous explosion hits the front of the convoy, kicking up dirt and sending the first jeep flying off the path. The impact of the ambush raises a heavy cloud of smoke on the road, forcing the entire convoy to a halt in the middle of the forest. In the back of the truck, the passengers wake up with a start and fall into a total panic, not understanding the reason for the sudden chaos. Emerging from the shadows of the trees, dozens of goons armed with machetes run toward the trucks stuck on the dirt road. An authoritative voice echoes from the crowd, ordering everyone to get out of the vehicles with their hands up right now. The ambush leader complains about the bad smell of the victims, but confirms that he intercepted the correct convoy with total precision. Pinching his nose in disgust, he tells his men to search every corner, swearing to find the target even without knowing their face yet. Holding a huge machete, the villain advances toward the passengers, demanding calm in a completely sadistic and threatening manner. The eye-patched bandit leader approaches the convoy captain, warning that they're just looking for one person and there's nothing of value there to steal. Maintaining his swagger, the villain calmly lights a cigarette in the midst of the chaos. Grabbing the old man by the collar, the criminal blows smoke in his face and questions who the captain thinks he's trying to be friendly with. Sweeting, the elderly man begs for mercy, calling the aggressor Chief. But the answer comes in the form of a brutal gunshot, directly to the poor man's head. The captain's body collapses to the ground as he lets out a scream of agony. Without a shred of pity, the leader warns that the next time one of those filthy rats tries to talk back, the result will be the same. With a sadistic smile and gun in hand, he declares that the next person to speak will lose their head. Panic grips the passengers as the bandits begin to search everyone on the side of the road. Just then, one of the goons violently grabs the pink-haired girl as she screams desperately. The thug finds the situation amusing, complimenting the hostage's beauty and announcing he's going to conduct a very detailed inspection of her. Lying on the ground trying to get away, the rich girl cries and begs for the so-called Mr. Chen to save her from this disgusting situation. However, the supposed hulking fighter is completely huddled and trembling with terror under his own cloak. Totally cowardly, the scammer thinks that these guys are cruel assassins, and that he doesn't stand a chance of playing the hero now. Observing from afar, Emo concludes that the gang is not a real threat to his identity and remembers that firearms don't affect cultivators. With a serious look, the protagonist suspects that the previous ambush group was the one who leaked their route to this new gang. Nearby, an old lady steps forward to defend the rich girl, accusing the adult men of having no shame in attacking a girl. Desperate, the young woman pulls the con artist's cloak, reminding him that he charged a fortune, promising protection as a descendant of a cultivator. Sweating nervously, Chen stammers a confirmation while mentally cursing the girl for opening her mouth. Hearing the magic word, the gang leader shows an interested smile and comments that his boss always talks about these legendary cultivators. Pointing the gun directly at the scammer, the villain scoffs that if he's the real deal, a simple bullet won't be enough to take him out. Terror grips the fake fighter, who immediately collapses to his knees on the ground. Crying and trembling, the coward begs the boss to stop playing with his life. He bows down in the dirt, confessing that there's no cultivator, and that he was just squeezing money from the rich girl. The rich girl's eyes widen in total shock at the blatant betrayal she just heard. In tears, she demands to know about the promise to cure her grandfather's illness, but the con artist tells her to shut up, admitting the lie. The fake master throws it in her face that she was just a walking goldmine perfect for him to profit from. Finding the little show boring, the gang leader clicks his tongue in disappointment, questioning if every cultivator is just a fraud. However, the villain turns his head, noticing there's a very interesting fellow in the middle of that frightened crowd. Surrounded by armed goons, the boss points out that the filthy rat in the back hasn't taken the threat seriously at any moment. Staring back at the enemy, Yimo displays a dark and freezing gaze without showing a shred of fear. The leader aims his revolver, demanding the kid kneel and beg for mercy like the others. Before the boy moves, his outsider partner steps in front, trying to protect her ally. A shout of warning echoes through the chaos as a loud gunshot breaks the mountain's silence. In an act of pure sacrifice, Windong throws herself in front of the boy and takes the bullet directly to the chest. The hostages scream in horror, realizing the bullet hit exactly near the young woman's heart. The protagonist catches the girl's body, completely surprised that she risked her own life to save him without fear of the end. Coughing up a lot of blood, the outsider explains that her gang always pays its debts and confesses she didn't expect to feel so much pain. Accepting her own end, she apologizes to the student, feeling she won't make it out of that forest alive. Suddenly, a strong green magical glow illuminates the young woman's injured body. Using healing magic, Yimo stops the bleeding on the spot, ensuring she won't meet her end there. The boy calmly stands up while his partner lies on the ground, feeling her body completely healed. Walking slowly toward the gang, the protagonist furiously declares that absolutely no one is meeting their end today. He stops in front of the band of assassins, exuding a heavy and oppressive aura. The bandit leader freezes in shock upon seeing the miraculous healing, and realizes he has finally found a real cultivator. With a trembling hand, the villain lowers his gun for a brief moment, feeling the weight of that revelation. Regaining his swagger, the suited man points the revolver again, and ironically questions what happens if someone takes out a legendary immortal. Yemo continues walking calmly, enveloped in his strong blue aura. Panicking, the thug pulls the trigger, firing a shower of bullets at the target all at once. But the boy becomes a blur and rips off the shooter's arm in a swift and merciless attack. Blood splatters far as the gang leader lets out a deafening scream of pure agony. Standing in front of the defeated man, the protagonist coldly replies that the trash was about to find out the answer to his question. Lying on the grass, holding the bloody stump, the psychopath curses the boy as a scumbag while crying in pain. Hiding in the back, the fake fighter breaks into a cold sweat as he witnesses the monstrous strength of a true cultivation warrior. Like a true coward, the con artist lets go of the rich girl, planning to sneak away in the middle of all the chaos. Furious with the humiliation, the mutilated boss screams for the entire gang to tear the kid to pieces at once. The gang charges forward with fury, swearing to avenge the third leader of their criminal group. Without hesitation, Yimo conjures a blue energy blade and executes a wide slash, cutting through the wind. The brutal shock of the magic hits the enemy front line with a crushing impact. The force of the blow sweeps away dozens of goons at once, sending them all flying through the air like rag dolls. Far from the chaos, an elite sniper pulls out a heavy weapon, daring the boy to withstand the shot. The shower of heavy lead flies toward the protagonist, but he deflects the projectiles, creating sparks in the air. In an absurd leap, Yimo clears the enemy blockade to reach the sniper in the rear. The charge results in a monstrous explosion that instantly destroys the bandit's armored vehicle. The few remaining goons freeze, watching the fire burn away their last hope of winning that fight. Sweating with terror, the guy with the headband realizes that this monster is completely unbeatable for ordinary mortals. With no other alternative, the goon swears he needs to go get some secret thing to try and save the gang. But the shadow of death already covers his back as Yimo appears by surprise right behind him. Birds fly away, startled, across the clear sky as a muffled scream echoes through the forest. Taking advantage of the massacre, the scammer Chen runs desperately through the woods, wanting to save only his own skin. Out of breath, he spots some tents set up in a clearing and deduces he has found the gang's base. Approaching the empty camp, he focuses on the armored jeep, hoping to find the key in the ignition and drive away. Running without looking at the ground, his foot catches on a heavy metal box hidden in the grass. The trip is bad and the coward falls flat on his face, scraping his whole body. With a sore shoulder, the con artist looks back, furious, trying to understand what piece of junk tripped him. Lying on the ground, the scammer Chen notices a large, mysterious metal box left in the middle of the grass. Lifting the heavy lid, the coward's eyes widen in complete shock at what he has just found. He realizes the box doesn't hold normal supplies, but a very heavy military rocket launcher. Trembling with fear, the con artist backs away immediately, muttering that he needs to find the keys and get out of there fast. Turning his back on the weapon, He tries to convince himself that he has nothing to do with that explosive and deadly armament. However, a menacing shadow suddenly appears right behind the fake fighter in the middle of the camp. The gang leader appears exuding pure sadism and blocks the scaredy Cat's escape route. With a malicious smile, the villain announces that the game is over and that the coward's fate is already sealed right there. With nowhere to run, Chen collapses to the ground in absolute panic, facing the cruel assassin. Cowering in the dirt, the con artist clutches his clothes, trembling from head to toe, expecting the worst. But Ye Mo silently appears behind the suited man, completely changing the tense atmosphere of the place. In total shock, the gang boss yells, threatening the boy and throwing the power of the feared flower gang in his face. Tired of this rambling, the protagonist just sighs, questioning why all these lowlifes repeat the same phrases. Without giving time for a reaction, the student advances and grabs the leader's face with a hand covered in pure blue magic. Staring at the villain with glowing red eyes, Ye Mo coldly declares that the enemy's identity doesn't matter at all. Far from the chaos, the surviving passengers watch the end of the fight and wonder if the nightmare is finally over. The rich girl comments, perplexed, to Wen Dong, trying to understand if that boy is really a legendary cultivator. Relieved, they notice that the guy seems like just a normal student and celebrate that the drivers are still alive. The group prepares to get back in the trucks and disappear from that dangerous road as quickly as possible. Hiding in the bushes, one last goon aims the rocket launcher, laughing and swearing to erase the witnesses. Consumed by madness, the shooter screams at the top of his lungs, sending everyone to the underworld as he pulls the trigger. The impact of the shot creates a deafening flash, launching the explosive warhead tearing through the wind in the forest. The deadly missile quickly crosses the sky, heading directly toward the defenseless group that was ready to leave. Smiling sadistically, the thug is absolutely certain that such heavy weaponry can take out even a cultivator. Noticing the threat approaching at high speed, the protagonist calmly turns his body to face the projectile. Desperate at the scene, the outsider's eyes widen and she screams her partner's name, thinking it's his end. The shooter laughs completely insanely in the middle of the bushes, hoping the boy turns to dust in the explosion. Suddenly, the assassin's expression changes to total shock, unable to believe what his eyes are seeing. The boy activates his shadow steps technique, advancing like a blue lightning bolt directly toward the flying warhead. In an unreal display of strength, Ye Mo catches the tip of the missile with his bare hands, covered in intense magic. Sparks fly as the student's hands grip the military warhead with immense force, trying to stop its advance. The weight of the thrust drags the boy's body backward with violence, tearing up the dirt ground for several meters. Emanating a gigantic blue aura, he locks the projectile in the air, making everyone question if he is even human. The girls are left with their jaws on the floor, agreeing that this display of physical strength has completely surpassed logical limits. Focused on the block, the protagonist assesses that at the second level of cultivation, the impact of a missile still hits pretty hard. Quickly, he envelopes the rocket's metal structure with his magical energy to nullify its propulsion force. Maintaining perfect focus, Ye Mo uses the spiritual flow spinning counter clockwise to tame the attack speed. With the situation under control, the guy firmly plants his foot on the destroyed ground, stopping his own body once and for all. Immediately after, he spins his body on its axis, confidently announcing that the show isn't over yet. Using the momentum of the movement, the student hurls the rocket back into the forest with absurd brutality. The warhead tears through the skies in the opposite direction, returning the deadly attack exactly to the one who fired the cowardly weapon. The shooter goon freezes in terror, illuminated by the fire, lamenting not having fled while he still had the chance. The devastating explosion sweeps through the thug's hiding spot in the bushes, creating a colossal fireball on the mountain. With the absolute danger past, the protagonist calmly walks back to his allies, who ask if he's okay. Ye Mo calmly replies that he just scraped his hand, leaving them even more shocked by this monstrous resilience. The passengers are dumbfounded, confirming that the boy returned a missile with his bare hands and suspect he's the bandit's target. Overcome with panic, a man yells that if they take this powerful warrior to the city, everyone will become a target too. Cowardice takes over the group, who agree to abandon their savior right there, on the road to protect their own lives. Outraged by the ingratitude, a guard from the convoy tells everyone to shut up, reminding them that the boy just saved their lives. Maintaining his honorable posture, the security guard thanks the protagonist, bowing his body in total respect for the unbeatable protection. Sitting on the ground with his arms crossed, the man declares he will not abandon the hero, no matter what, and dares anyone to try and stop him. The firm attitude makes the cowards rethink the situation, realizing that the protection of such a monster is much more advantageous. However, the fearful man continues to sweat, fearing the reaction of the mafia gang that controls the streets of their destination city. To calm things down, Wen Dong joins the conversation with a smile, guaranteeing everyone's safety under the banner of the Pudao Association. The faction's name sends a chill down the men's spines as they remember the legend of Boss Fang Nan, the assassin who wiped out 5 gangs in one night. The dark story tells that this relentless warrior spread so much terror that he earned the fame of the region's evil ghost. Taking off his cap with great pride, the girl shocks the group by revealing that this fearsome leader is her own biological brother. After the end of the tense journey on the mountain, the convoy finally arrives on the bustling and dangerous streets of Lushi City. In the local alleys, various charlatan vendors shout at the top of their lungs, offering fake divine artifacts and news about cultivation. The dirty alleys are filled with opportunists selling any mystical junk to easily squeeze money out of innocent outsiders. In one of the city's alleys, several suited men are violently thrown through the air, screaming in pain during a heavy beating. The brutes of the Pudao Association mock their rivals' weakness, complaining that those rats weren't even a good warm-up. Lying beaten and bruised on the ground, the enemies grumble in anger, questioning if only their faction has the right to do business there. The red-haired fighter loses his patience with the defeated man's audacity and readies his fists to continue the massacre without mercy. However, a black-gloved hand touches the stressed goon's shoulder, telling him to stay calm and not get worked up over nothing. The big guy obeys instantly as the mysterious voice confirms that only people approved by them work in the area. Exuding a lethal aura, the feared Fang Nan appears in the alley, coldly warning that no one should be selling stuff in his territory. Absolute terror grips the defeated traffickers, who begin to stutter as they recognize the famous evil ghost of the region. Trying to hold back his panic, the leader of the suits crawls in the filth, admitting he knows the monstrous strength of that man. Using what little courage he has left, the man threatens the warrior, revealing that he works directly for the powerful Master Hong. But the intimidation fails miserably, making leader Fang kneel beside the trafficker to correct him in a very dark way. With his face close to the scared enemies, the evil ghost whispers, reminding him that he's the one who runs these streets. Displaying terrifying, demonic red eyes, the faction boss makes it very clear that he doesn't care one bit about this so-called Hong. The lethal warning is followed by a series of brutal assaults, making the trafficker's screams of agony echo through the narrow alley. As his allies finish the dirty work, Fang Nan listens to his partner's concerns about his sister's disappearance, but just tells him to stop jinxing things. Annoyed with the situation, one of the goons glares at his gang partner and asks if he's trying to start a fight, claiming he just stated the facts. Tired of this useless argument, Fang Nan tells them both to stop this silly bickering all the time so they don't cause even more headaches on the street. The faction leader excitedly announces that the girl sent a message saying she would arrive today, justifying why he's out patrolling the streets. With that, he calls his subordinates to the city entrance and plans to buy the meat pies his sister loves to eat to celebrate. Far away, the heavy military truck continues its journey, kicking up dust on its way to the duo's final destination on their secret mission. In the back of the vehicle, Yimo awakens peacefully as someone announces they have finally arrived in the city of Lushi. Pushing aside the truck's tarp, the boy hears the driver announce that vehicles are not allowed in the city, forcing everyone to continue the rest of the way on foot. The passengers soon begin to get off the transport on the side of the road to finish their long journey by walking down the busy street. Yimo walks calmly, enjoying the local breeze and observing his surroundings with a serene posture. Before him appears the bustling entrance to the place, making it clear that this is the famous and dangerous Lushi. At the security barrier, the guards impatiently shout for people not to block the passage, reinforcing that cars are prohibited there. Nearby, one of the goons flatters a man named Shi, stating that he has become Mr. Hong's big favorite at the moment. Shi Wei lets out a proud laugh and confirms that the boss loved the banquet he organized, bragging that he knows exactly the master's tastes. The flatterer agrees, saying that everyone in the city must respect him now, but the leader cynically tells them to stay humble. To celebrate the good times, Shi Wei promises to pay for everyone's visit to the brothel tonight, making the whole gang shout with joy. Suddenly, the goon interrupts the party, calling the boss's attention to something strange approaching on the street. The gang leader focuses his gaze on the crowd and immediately recognizes the convoy of trucks belonging to the veteran Zhuo Agu. Observing the young outsider walking with Yimu, the criminal thinks with malice that a small, defenseless rabbit has just arrived in his territory. Oblivious to the danger, Wen Dong hands a small vial to her partner and declares that their agreement is officially over. The protagonist holds the shining vial and notices that the spiritual liquid inside is a little different from the one he received from the brute before. Analyzing the magic carefully, he concludes with frustration that the energy generated is very low and seems to be completely mixed with other substances. Noticing the guy's dissatisfaction, the young woman calls his attention, somewhat confused by his unexpected reaction to the agreed upon payment. Just then, one of the convoy managers informs the barrier leader that the protection fee has already been paid, and requests free passage for the group. Shi Wei flashes a cynical smile, assuring the convoy gang they have full permission to enter the city, creating a little suspense. Pointing his finger authoritatively, the villain declares that everyone can pass, except for the girl, who must stay behind with them. Using a flimsy excuse, the suited man claims he needs to conduct a very detailed inspection of her to ensure the entire city's safety. The convoy man tries to intervene, begging for mercy, reminding him that she's just a young girl who poses no danger. With no patience, the gang leader lands a brutal slap on the man's face, yelling at him to know his place. Seething with arrogance, Shi Wei demands to know since when he needs a loser's opinion to act and orders his goons to tie everyone up. Furious at the cowardice, Wen Dong steps forward, accusing the man of being a great traitor and telling him to get his goons out of there at once. Laughing at the threat, Shi Wei mockingly calls the girl princess and warns that the old boss doesn't call the shots around there anymore. Pointing a finger in her face, the villain makes it clear that Master Hong is the one who sets the rules in the city now, making her faction useless. The young woman's face darkens with hatred, and she questions if the traitor isn't afraid of suffering the grave consequences at the hands of Fang Nan for saying that. Holding a bat, the thug bursts into laughter, doubting that his rival has the guts to set foot in that territory, and orders his gang to attack. Before the goons can advance, a sharp blade cuts through the air at an impressive speed, right toward the attacking group. The sword embeds itself violently in the ground, inches from the villain's face, making him break into a cold sweat of terror as he feels death so close. Appearing imposingly in the middle of the courtyard, Fang Nan makes his presence known, exuding an aura of pure authority against the traitors. Staring daggers at the enemies, he coldly questions since when his association allows filthy rats to act with such audacity. With firm, heavy steps, the warrior advances, dominating the environment and forcing the thugs to retreat in panic at his arrival. Shi Wei and his goons lose all their previous swagger, their jaws dropping before the fearsome figure of the gang leader. Silence falls over the city entrance as the two rival groups face off in a tense showdown, about to explode into violence. Without showing any hesitation, the hero pulls his sword from the stone ground with a single swift movement. Completely changing his intimidating expression, he flashes a gentle smile at his sister and welcomes her back home. Totally relieved, Wen Dong waves excitedly, celebrating her older brother's saving arrival right on time. The protagonist analyzes the gang, noticing they exude magic from using the spiritual liquid, but focuses all his attention on the newly arrived leader. Staring at the warrior's greenish aura, Yi Mu is impressed to conclude that this man is about to reach the true first level of cultivation. Sweating nervously, the coward stammers, asking how he dares to invade enemy territory, accusing the warrior of looking for a fight. Maintaining his calm, Fang Nan explains that his first objective there is simply to take his own sister home safely. Exuding pure sadism, he completes his thought by asking if the powerful boss would really start a war just over a piece of trash. The suited man seethes with hatred at the direct insult, but the hero just turns his head, calling his sister to leave with him at once. Feeling his own authority crumble, the villain loses what little patience he had and violently shoves a goon to clear the way. Consumed by envy, he whispers venomous insults to his ally, calling the imposing warrior a disgusting piece of trash. Ignoring the tension in the place, the guy with the headband runs toward the girl with open arms, yelling that he missed her a lot. Completely overshadowed and humiliated, the traitorous leader turns his back, covering his own body with a murderous and desperate aura. Firmly gripping a sharp knife, the thug swears to himself that he will no longer allow anyone to look down on him. In a fit of blind rage, he charges the hero, screaming that the idiot just walked right into a deadly trap without realizing it. One of the faction's allies tries to intervene in the madness, shouting that the traitor is breaking the peace agreement between the two regional gangs. The villain lets out a maniacal laugh, agreeing to break the rules, claiming that laws are only for restraining the weak, and he has a great chance right there. Launching a cowardly attack from behind, he declares with pure malice that this useless agreement means absolutely nothing to his plan. Without even needing to turn around, the great leader just touches his own sword, stopping the movement with a perfectly trained reflex. The metallic sound of the blade being drawn breaks the courtyard's silence, showing that the cowardly charge didn't catch the hero off guard. Using the sword's hilt, Fang Nan easily blocks the attack and lands a heavy blow directly to the desperate aggressor's chest. The protagonist observes the fight from afar, displaying a sharp gaze and clearly impressed with the faction warrior's fluidity. In a display of agility, the leader creates afterimages, applying a devastating sequence to massacre the traitor in mid-air. Analyzing the refined technique, the student silently assesses that the human's speed has already reached a small fraction of his shadow arts. With his opponent completely destroyed by the sequence of rapid blows, Fang Nan lands flawlessly on the asphalt with his sword in hand. Without losing the insane rhythm of the battle, he turns his body and immediately follows up with a crushing punch directly to the face of another thug who tried to approach. The impact is so sudden that the goon freezes with his eyes wide with panic, having no chance to even try to block the merciless blow. With the force of the impact sending the enemy flying, the wooden stick he was using clatters to the ground, marking the crushing defeat of another piece of trash. The invincible warrior remains standing in the center of the chaos, while the rest of the enemy gang continues to fall in pain, scattered across the street. The boy gives a slight smirk, completely satisfied to see that there are honorable and skilled warriors surviving in that weak world. Suddenly, the sound of applause echoes through the scene, followed by a voice praising the monstrous power of the famous ogre of Lushi City. Elegant and firm steps break the tension of the environment as a man in a fancy suit walks slowly toward the battlefield. The man smiles, praising that the warrior already possesses the same majesty as the former president, while the goons scream in shock that Master Hong has arrived. Bleeding on the ground, the coward lets out a hysterical laugh, begging the boss to take out his rival right now and sink the enemy association once and for all. Worried about the tension, an ally warns that the rival gang is watching and that a fight would plunge the entire city into uncontrollable chaos. Taking the lead in a friendly manner, Master Hong assures them there has been a misunderstanding and orders them to clear a path to celebrate the family reunion. Fang Nan's allies are completely confused by the peaceful attitude of that criminal leader. Desperate, the traitor Shi Wei yells, questioning the decision, warning that retreating now will send the enemy association's morale soaring. Without warning, a swift and violent impact hits the talkative thug's head. Holding a smoking gun, Hong throws it in his face that the coward is just a discarded dog and has no right to question his orders. Bleeding and sweating, the traitor holds his wound, realizing his own place in the food chain. Sheathing his sword calmly, Leader Fang thanks the local authority for their understanding. He soon turns his back and calls his allies to leave and return home in peace. In the shadows, the Mafia Master watches the group leave, maintaining a mysterious and calculating gaze. All this happened because of an event 2 minutes earlier, when Hong was observing the ambush from inside his armored car. The suited man was calculating with a partner the chances of annihilating their rivals right there, estimating a good margin of victory over the warrior Fang. However, the suited man beside him declares, sweating, that the real chances of success are less than 5%. The partner tensely explains that his own magic makes him extremely sensitive to absurd dangers, going far beyond the fear of normal weapons. Focusing on the real monster, he confesses that every cell in his body screams in terror, just from looking at the young man walking with the hero. The advisor finishes his warning by telling the master to stay as far away as possible from that dangerous boy. Now in the comfort of a luxurious hideout, one of the goons collapses on the sofa, grumbling that he's completely exhausted after the commotion. The faction leader sits in an armchair, asking for a glass of water to relax a bit with his group. Being very welcoming, Fang Nan introduces their current base to the boy, and says he has already prepared a comfortable room upstairs. The protagonist takes a sip of his drink, politely thanking them for their great hospitality. With a sincere smile, the criminal leader thanks the student for saving and protecting his sister in the forest. Maintaining formality, Yimo replies that he only helped the girl because he needs to ask for a small piece of valuable information from the two siblings. The guy reaches into his inner jacket pocket to get the item that motivated the entire long journey. Placing the small vial on the table, he gets straight to the point, asking where exactly they got that magic liquid. The warrior in the overcoat reacts with some surprise upon seeing the clan's personal item in the hands of an outsider. Annoyed, one of the allies questions why the inheritance left by the boss's father is in the possession of that unknown brat. Sitting in the armchair, Wen Dong asks the team to calm down, confessing that she herself passed the artifact to her ally of her own free will. She explains that she doesn't have the necessary talent to absorb that pure energy, using the vial as the perfect payment for his protection. The warrior calmly accepts the deal, but regrets to inform him that his father only left the item with them before disappearing without a trace. The student focuses his gaze in silence, frustrated at having lost the clue, while the hero deduces the reason for this sudden interest. Connecting the dots, the warrior asks if the outsider is also a cultivator, receiving a direct and very blunt confirmation from the guy. The goons are in total shock, questioning if the boy carries the same mystical powers as their old master. His travel partner herself widens her eyes in surprise, finally understanding the origin of all that monstrous strength in the forest. Sighing in frustration, she realizes she missed her chance, while her brother humbly asks the young master to accept a small friendly duel. The leader explains that he has been consuming the divine water for years, and feels he has finally awakened his gift, reaching the long-awaited level of the mystical arts. With a respectful bow, Fang Nan begs for the fight just to be able to measure his own level against a real warrior. Observing her brother, The girl mentally laments that he has always been obsessed with this magic and desperate to prove his worth. In her memories, her father always demanded that his children lead common and peaceful lives far from that dangerous underworld of cultivation. Full of expectation and completely focused on the challenge, the criminal leader awaits the mysterious guest's response. Without any ceremony, the protagonist just turns his head to the side and refuses the proposal in a completely cold and direct manner. Walking away from the counter, the student declares with total conviction that the local hero cannot be considered a real cultivator. Stopping in the middle of the hall, Yimo completes his thought, making it clear that beating him won't bring any magical answers. Not accepting the rejection, Fangnan anxiously questions if the rich outsider simply doesn't want to waste his time helping. The boy faces the group, guaranteeing that the problem isn't a lack of will, but the huge difference in levels that exists between the two of them. Surrounded by a threatening blue aura, Yimo Lethley warns that if they fight for real, the warrior will end up badly hurt. The gang leader freezes in absolute silence, absorbing his guest's dangerous warning. In his mind, his father's cruel words echo, stating that the hero's current strength wouldn't last a single blow against a cultivator. The memory reinforces the order for them to live as ordinary people without stepping into that dark world, but the warrior calls out to the boy, ignoring the past. With a look full of pure determination, the hero refuses to accept that weakness again. Bargaining with his own life, Fangnan promises to reveal the exact location of the divine water spring if the guy fights him. The entire team panics, accusing their leader of giving away their late father's biggest secret just for a fight. The protagonist listens to the group's outcry in silence, pondering if the exchange is really worth the effort of combat. Realizing the golden opportunity falling into his lap, a slight victorious smile appears on the student's face under the hall's shadows. With his red eyes fixed on his opponent, Yimo accepts the deal on the spot and declares the start of the challenge. The group moves to a large, well-lit room where the leader explains that the place was built with maximum fortification to withstand heavy attacks. Getting into a classic combat stance, the warrior reinforces for his guests to fight using his full maximum strength there. Watching from the corner, the red-haired goon complains that hitting wooden posts is a bore and wants to take the chance to fight too. Worried about the numerical advantage, the leader warns his friend, reminding him that the opponent has limited stamina and shouldn't face everyone at once. With a long sigh, the protagonist exudes a subtle energy, calmly announcing that all this concern is a waste of time. Fangnan loses his combat stance, completely confused by the boy's tranquility. Enveloped in intense blue magic rays, the boy challenges the three strongest fighters in the room to attack him at the same time. The absurd taunt leaves the leader and his team completely indignant at the outsider's lack of respect. Gritting his teeth, the blue-haired ally loses his patience, warning that he doesn't care about the guy's heroism and asks if this is a joke. Desperate, Wendong runs toward the goons, trying to stop them from taking on the outsider's dangerous fight. Ignoring the girl, the large redhead enters the arena, asking his older brother not to interfere in this personal combat. Full of himself, the brute asks his partner to start the timer to measure the duration of the massacre. With a purely arrogant smile, he brags that he can take down the spoiled kid in just 5 little minutes. The fighter explodes forward with speed, breaking the training room floor as he charges full force at the target. Launching a lethal flying kick, the aggressor sees the protagonist calmly dodge by just leaning his body back. Not giving up, the redhead immediately follows up with a crushing punch aimed at the boy's face, swearing he'll wake him up to harsh reality. Tired of this pathetic scene, the outsider slaps her own forehead, lamenting that her crew is going to get beaten like trash today. The heavy punch lands squarely in the student's palm, who blocks the absurd impact without moving a single muscle. Taking advantage of the opening and the enemy's desperation, Yimo flashes a sadistic smile, preparing his relentless counterattack. With uncanny ease, he uses the aggressor's force to spin him in the air and slam his heavy body directly onto the hard floor. In a monstrous advance, the boy plows through the rest of the team, causing an explosion of energy and destruction that leaves Fangnan himself terrified. Maintaining his always serene posture, the protagonist exudes a powerful blue aura without showing any concern for the fight. Raising just one finger, he coldly announces that the first attacker has already been totally defeated. Angered by the humiliation, the blue-haired fighter orders the entire team to advance and attack the enemy at the same time. The three goons charge together in a swift assault, intending to corner the student in the middle of the training room. The blue-haired guy leaps and throws his entire body weight into a direct blow against the boy's face. But Yimo just tilts his head, dodging the attack with absurd ease, and without taking his hands out of his pockets. Staring daggers at his opponents with a lethal red gaze, he calculates the exact route of all their attacks. Seizing the opening in the air, the protagonist counters by smashing the intruder against the floor while calmly blocking another blow. Lying there, The blue-haired fighter is in shock upon realizing that the outsider managed to predict all their movements. Without letting up, Emo grabs the fallen enemy by the arm and throws him far away as if he were a light doll. Immediately following up, he lands a surgical kick that sends the next aggressor flying across the scene. The impact is so strong that the red-haired brute ends up embedded in the destroyed wall, trying to understand the guy's strength. Standing intact in the middle of the chaos, the student scoffs, asking if that's all the power the faction has to show. The three fighters retreat, panting, trying to catch their breath after getting beaten badly by that monster. The blue-haired guy sweats, realizing the disadvantage, while the protagonist gestures for them to come at him again. Not accepting the beatdown, the goons charge again, betting everything on a desperate triple assault. They surround the target from all sides, trying to create an impenetrable blind spot around the boy. The guy with the headband concentrates pure magic in his hands, screaming that now there's no way for the brat to escape. A shower of swift, coordinated blows rains down on the protagonist, covering the entire attack area. Imposing, Yamo just takes a step forward with his eyes glowing as the punches graze by without leaving a scratch. Planting his foot firmly on the training arena floor, the student shatters the concrete with absurd pressure. A massive wave of blue energy explodes from his body, sweeping away the entire enemy team at once. In a brutal sequence, he strikes one fighter's throat while already smashing another's face. The blue-haired guy backs away, panting, trying not to pass out from the insane blow he just took. Observing the boy's quick block, the fighter thinks he has finally found a perfect opening to counterattack. Consumed by fury, the goon with the headband summons a powerful purple aura, focusing all his life force in that moment. Yemo maintains a calm guard, waiting for the enemy to show his big final trick. The aggressor leaps with full force, landing a very strong magical attack that tears through the air directly toward the outsider. With a completely empty gaze, the protagonist just raises his hand and catches the rival's energized fist without the slightest effort. Completely shattering the other's magic, he throws the brute against the floor, causing a devastating purple impact in the room. Watching the chaos, the blue-haired fighter comes to believe that his ally's blow had finally hit the target. Displaying an intimidating aura, Yemo decrees the end of the fight, warning that they would get seriously hurt if they continued. The team leader just stammers, unable to process the crushing humiliation they just suffered. With the three fighters down and completely exhausted, one of them asks Wendong how long the fight lasted in total. Looking at the timer on her phone, the outsider replies that they only lasted less than 2 minutes in that entire beatdown. The large redhead screams in anger, punching the wall, completely furious for losing so quickly. Sweating and staring at the floor, the blue-haired fighter admits that the strength difference between them is an unreachable chasm. Looking at the boy in the middle of the rubble, he is shocked to realize that his opponent hasn't moved from the same spot since the duel began. Walking to the destroyed arena, Fang Nan approaches, bowing his body to thank the guest for his mercy. Yemu explains that the warrior is already 1 foot into the first level of magic, only lacking the skill to store spiritual energy. The revelation shocks the criminal leader, who anxiously asks if the student used his full maximum strength in that small test. The protagonist just closes his eyes in a deadly silence, letting the obvious answer hang in the air of that broken room. Downcast, Fang Nan understands the sad reality and concludes that his father forbade him from cultivating magic because he was too weak for it. The redhead questions what the silence meant, only to be called an idiot by his partner, who confirms the boy's absolute superiority. With the demand made, the university student gets straight to the point, demanding the information about the location of the promised divine water. Accepting the fair defeat, Fang Nan lets out a long sigh and agrees to fulfill his part of the bet with the outsider. He reaches inside his dark coat, looking for the secret item that held the answer. Displaying a small blue crystal, the warrior reveals that his late father's last words pointed to that. The local hero states with conviction that the great mystery of the exact location is hidden inside that little stone. The mystical necklace glows softly as Fang Nan confesses he was never able to decipher the object's true meaning. Sitting in the armchair, he says he studied the crystal for years in secret, but it always seemed like a common decorative stone. The group gathers around the coffee table, paying full attention to the negotiation of the gang's valuable artifact. Holding the item carefully, Yemo confirms it's a memory stone and explains that humans can't see its secret. The red-haired goon is confused by the explanation, while the protagonist prepares to access the magical item with his own energy. Enveloped in intense magic, the boy channels his spiritual energy into the necklace, confirming that this is not normal. The mysterious jewel immediately reacts to the mystical command, emitting an extremely strong blue light throughout the hall. The magical flash blinds the entire team, who cover their faces, startled by the explosion of power coming from the simple little stone. With the artifact glowing in the palm of his hand, the student officially presents the legendary memory stone of that world. The light condenses in the air and projects an advanced, spiritual recording right in the middle of the table, floating in front of the shocked group. The image of a smiling bald monk forms, revealing the old master who greets the stone's bearer with great respect. Moved by the shining apparition, Fang Nan and his sister scream, calling for their father at the same time, trying to reach the ghost. The protagonist raises a finger, warning that the image is just a recording left by a cultivator of the 4th level of magic. Without interacting with the environment, the projection begs the cultivator, who activated the stone, to spare the lives of his naive children. With her eyes welling up with tears, Wen Dong murmurs the word, "Father." Feeling the pain of hearing that protective voice again, the virtual elder states he knows the outsider came for the divine water spring and guarantees that the sacred place still exists there. Ye Mo pays full attention as the monk asks the intruder not to try and open the spring, because it is already almost completely dry. Consumed by remorse, the master reports that his own selfishness drained the magic from the place and ended up causing the destruction of a country. Carefully evaluating the old account, the boy silently deduces that this old man might know where to find other pure springs. The hologram continues its confession, admitting that he decided to bury the secret with himself to prevent that magic from bringing more chaos. The wise old man predicted that the fatal secret would one day leak, putting his own children's lives in great danger against real mages. Revealing the location once and for all, the projection invites the mysterious cultivator to visit his small, isolated temple on the mountain. The image extends a hand, offering free access, stating that he locked all the dark secrets inside his own prayer room. Bidding farewell to his fellow cultivator, the old monk bows his head, thanking and pleading once more for his family's safety. Completely shaken by his father's love, Fang Nan keeps his head down in silence, listening to the elder call his name in a gentle tone. Ye Mo's eyes widen in surprise upon noticing that the message contained a secret trigger exclusively in case his own son activated the stone. Continuing the secret message, the projection congratulates his son for reaching a new level and apologizes for leaving so suddenly. Overcome with emotion, the warrior stammers the word "father," while his sister clasps her hands in prayer, crying a lot. With a serene smile, the old man implores his heir not to seek the spiritual spring and to focus on living well with his sister. The recording begins to shine intensely, warning that time is running out as it calls the young man's name affectionately. Noticing the energy dissipating, the protagonist quickly extends his hand to try and capture the last bit of magical essence. Enveloped in light, the monk's ghost asks for forgiveness one last time before beginning to fade away for good. Ye Mo touches the luminous energy with the palm of his hand, absorbing the rest of the magic that still lingered in the air. The flash finally disappears completely, returning silence and darkness to that meeting room. Clutching his own clothes tightly, the criminal leader tries to hold back the sadness of losing his father again. Trying to comfort the warrior, Ye Mo breaks the silence, assuring his colleague that he has already done an excellent job so far. Still with his head down, Fang Nan thanks the student for his words, feeling a slight relief in his heart. Immediately after, he promises to reveal the exact location of the small secret temple, the place where he grew up with his sister. Very helpfully, the outsider offers to guide the guy there the next day, as she needs some time to prepare. The protagonist agrees with the idea and just replies calmly, accepting her schedule. The peace of the agreement is suddenly interrupted by the sound of violent, banging echoing on the glass doors of the building. A glass bottle shatters violently against the wall as a voice tells everyone to go straight to the underworld. Furious in his hideout, Shi Wei throws objects, screaming that everyone looks down on him, and orders a general massacre. Watching the outburst, one of the goons cautiously asks what their gang's next step will be now. The traitor turns his head, consumed by hatred, swearing he will get revenge and return the pain of his injury 100 times worse. Without wasting time, he extends his hand hastily, demanding his ally hand over his cell phone. Already on the call, the villain announces that the plan has been moved up, and tells his partners to come to Liu Shi as soon as possible. On the other end of the line, a red-haired suited man guarantees that this part is his responsibility, and he doesn't need to be reminded. Holding a sharp blade, the criminal partner coldly warns that his goons are already fully prepared. With a confident smile, the redhead states that he can take the target's life whenever he desires. Elsewhere, the piercing sound of heavy banging interrupts the silence of the night at the glass door. The facade of Fang Nan's building trembles, with the aggressive insistence of whoever is trying to get in at all costs. Hearing the noise, the protagonist turns his head with a very suspicious and serious expression. The sound of continuous pounding doesn't stop echoing, making it clear that the nightly visitors are in a hurry. Sitting in the armchair, the warrior leader questions who would have the audacity to seek them out at such an inconvenient hour. Ye Mo analyzes the situation, raising the suspicion that something went very wrong with the lookouts outside. Taking the lead, the student walks through the dark hall to find out who is knocking like that. The metal doorknob is turned firmly, unlocking the heavy door in the dead of night. Upon opening the passage, Yemo's eyes widen in extreme surprise at the visitor he finds there. Wringing her hands nervously, the pink-haired rich girl from the convoy greets the boy, stuttering a lot. Entering the room slowly, she apologizes for the intrusion, assuring she didn't mean to bother them so late at night. Wendong finds the visit strange, demanding her name, while the leader confirms she came with the veteran from the trucks. With a trembling voice, the girl ignores the homeowners and says she is there exclusively to find Mr. Yi. The protagonist points to himself, completely confused as to why a stranger would be looking for him. In desperation, the rich girl lowers her head, begging the boy to help save her grandfather's life. Catching her breath, the young woman explains that the old man returned from a trip with a mysterious illness that is slowly corroding his health. Holding her own hands, she laments that his time is running out and only a legendary cultivator can reverse it. The student thinks he would love to take the job to make some cash, but the mission for the spring is the absolute priority at the moment. Noticing the guy's hesitation, the rich girl hurries to say that she's not asking for a free favor. The young woman displays a purple stone, stating it's a family heirloom linked to mages, and offers it as an advance payment. In that same instant, Emo loses his calm posture upon recognizing that the artifact is the extremely rare purple heart vine. This type of plant requires an absurdly harsh environment to grow, serving to extend life or refine magical power. Evaluating the item, the guy knows that it will accelerate his training, but the big problem is the lack of healing amulets now. Being realistic, the protagonist warns that he needs time and asks for her contact information, promising to go as soon as he's ready. Greatly relieved by the promise, the girl hands over the bracelet on the spot, fully trusting the warrior's word. Holding the valuable jewel, the student flashes a satisfied smile, planning to use it to find the spring later. Back on the sofa, Fang Nan strikes up a conversation, remembering that the young woman's former protector mentioned her family's fortune. Without hiding anything, the rich girl calmly reveals that she lives in the capital, and that her father's name is Zhanlong. The heavy name echoes in the room, bringing to light the magnitude and prestige of that famous billionaire empire. Surprised, Yimo recognizes the name of the chairman of the world's top 5 conglomerate who passed the inheritance to his daughter. His outsider partner clasps her hands, completely speechless upon discovering she is in the presence of such a powerful heiress. The scene changes to the luxurious facade of a modern mansion under the clear, fresh light of the following morning. Walking through the immense living room, a butler respectfully announces that Master Hong's coffee has just been prepared. Accompanied by a bodyguard, the mafia boss relaxes in the armchair, telling the employee to come in at once. However, the servant hides a shiny machete behind his back as he stealthily approaches the boss. Shi Wei appears out of nowhere, launching a deadly attack, while the master realizes the fake butler's ambush, screaming the traitor's name. Master Hong doesn't lose his boss-like composure, angrily questioning if the rabid dog has decided to bite its own master now. Exuding arrogance, the traitor mocks the old man's confidence, warning that he's too senile to understand the real situation. Shi Wei points to the crowd around them, guaranteeing he brought all his goons and questions where the master's security is. Relaxing on the sofa, the old mobster calls his rival ignorant for trying to measure true strength using only numerical superiority. The leader greets his suited partner with a monocle, apologizing for the inconvenience, while his ally confirms he's paid for this. Holding a magic cane covered in purple flames, the so-called Mr. Wu assumes a combat stance, announcing he is ready. However, Shi Wei lets out a malicious smile, and simply gives the attack order to the master's own bodyguard. In an overwhelming betrayal, Wu spins his lethal weapon and strikes the other mansion's security guard in the blink of an eye. With a sadistic gleam shining through his monocle, the traitor scoffs that the old mobster never suspected him for a moment. The rival gang leader bursts into laughter, humiliating his ex-master for never expecting a stab in the back from someone so close. Bleeding and choking, Hong questions the reason for this disgusting betrayal, remembering they overcame many obstacles together. Without a shred of pity, the suited man with the monocle brings down his merciless blade, firing the final blow directly at the target. The mafia master takes the fatal blow to the chest, falling completely defeated in the face of that surprising alliance. Gripping his weapon, the assassin retorts that he did all the dirty work alone, while the boss kept the biggest profits. Satisfied with the execution, Shi Wei already declares the next target, ordering his troops to invade Fang Nan's territory to dominate the city. The suited assassin adjusts his monocle, assessing that there's only one guy near Fang Nan he can't take out. Shi Wei is shocked by the news, questioning if the mysterious boy is also a magic cultivator. The assassin confirms the suspicion, warning that the target is stronger, but guarantees that his older brother is on his way. with the combined forces of the two master assassins in a coordinated strike. Absolutely no one from the rival faction is getting out of this story in one piece. The scene shifts to show labored steps climbing along, exhausting stone staircase. Completely wiped, Wen-dong confesses she never realized just how high this mountain was. She pleads with Yimo to wait up, claiming she can't take another single step. Our protagonist compliments the isolated temple's hiding spot, figuring no one would find the place easily. Showing no signs of fatigue, he tells his partner to hurry it up, since they still need to deal with that girl from the convoy's grandfather. At this, she grumbles in frustration about his absurd physical stamina as she finally reaches the top of the stairs. Catching her breath while sitting on a step, the young woman points out the entrance to the place where she and her brother grew up. The ancient temple, named Yakshavidyaraja, stands silently, surrounded by the trees of the immense mountain. The outsider duo passes through the wooden gate, entering the quiet courtyard of the abandoned sanctuary. Yamo senses the strong flow of spiritual energy there and concludes that the monk used the place as a training dojo. Walking through the yard, Wen-dong points out that her late father's room is right there in the main house. As soon as they open the old sliding door, the accumulated dust flies up, making the girl cough a lot. Inside, she explains that she and her brother searched every corner and never found any locked doors. Holding the monk's mystical key, the student considers that the object isn't meant for opening a normal box. The young woman observes the old furniture in the room, feeling an immense wave of nostalgia hit her chest upon returning. Several memories flood her mind, recalling the times she ran and played in that room with her brother. The girl remembers always running to complain to her father whenever she lost in their childhood games. The late monk would console his daughter, promising to buy extra sweets just for her at the temple fair. Back in the present, the outsider focuses on the statue, explaining that the monk spent the whole year praying in front of it. Curiously, her father never took the sculpture with him on his travels, always preferring to keep the sacred piece at home. Yemo analyzes the multi-armed divine figure, finding the whole situation pretty weird for a monk. The guy questions the reason for worshipping a wisdom king, and she agrees that it was always a great mystery. Kneeling near the object, the outsider reveals that it was the master himself who hand-carved the entire piece. The boy connects the dots and confesses to being impressed with her late father's hidden forging strength. Without wasting time, the protagonist concentrates his blue aura and applies the magic directly to the mysterious sculpture. The boy's spiritual energy unlocks a hidden mechanism inside the stone, making a sharp click in the room. Immediately, luminous blue lines cover the entire structure of the deity, startling the young woman. Completely shocked, Wen-dong listens as her partner explains that it's a door made of spiritual artifacts. He teaches that cultivation has 12 levels, and the skill difference between each stage is an absolute chasm. The first 2 levels focus only on strengthening raw energy, while the 3rd and 4th unlock true spells. Only warriors who reach the 5th and 6th levels of magical power can be called true immortals. From there, the techniques for refining pills and forging magic weapons reach a level that humans could never comprehend. Holding the mystical key, the guy guarantees that the monk's forging skills surpassed all expectations. The outsider stares at the student, amazed that he knows such ancient secrets despite being so young. With great precision, the protagonist inserts the small object into the magical panel revealed by the glowing statue. The entire sculpture begins to melt in front of them, as if it were made of pure wax. He grabs a hidden box from the base while she anxiously asks if the secrets of the spiritual spring are inside. Opening the luxurious chest, they find a green jade pendant and a wooden plaque engraved with coordinates. Analyzing the plaque on his phone, Yemo grumbles that he doesn't feel any magical aura coming from these simple objects. Wen-dong confirms the coordinates on the map, warning that the search area is huge, but it's very close by. Walking through the courtyard, the boy decides to camp in the region to search, and his partner says she'll stay to clean the temple. Excited about the place, she suggests the duo go relax at a wild hot spring hidden in the mountains. The peaceful atmosphere vanishes as night falls, revealing cries of a hunt in the middle of the dense, dark forest. Bare, panting feet run desperately, stepping on the wet ground of the thick woods. A boy runs for his life, terrified of the relentless pursuit of the men right behind him. Panic is written all over the boy's face as he breaks into a cold sweat, knowing the hunters are closing in way too fast. Completely exhausted, the little boy hides behind a huge tree, trying not to make a sound. A heavily armed mercenary appears on the trail, grumbling about the kid's skill at hiding in the shadows. The soldier sadistically yells, using the boy's sister as blackmail to make him come out of hiding and surrender. His squad partner tells him to shut up, warning that their captain won't like that shouting at all. The little fugitive lets out a sigh of relief upon hearing the heavy footsteps, moving away from his hiding spot. Huddled by the cold tree root, he starts to cry quietly, calling for the sister who was taken by the gang. Trembling with fear, the kid prays for divine protection to make it back alive and warn the village chief. Far from the chase, Imo holds the green jade pendant inherited from the old monk, illuminating the darkness. A campfire crackles peacefully at the makeshift camp set up by the protagonist in the isolated forest. Sitting near the fire, the student assesses that he's been searching for 3 days and hasn't found any trace of the spiritual spring there. He considers the terrible possibility that the spring is already dry, which would make it impossible for him to level up his power. Absorbing the weak aura of the environment would take a century, forcing the warrior to urgently think of an alternative plan. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps in the bushes breaks the silence of the night, catching the boy's attention. The fugitive boy stumbles out of the dark woods, leaving the cultivator confused by the unusual presence there. Yemo wonders what a kid would be doing lost on the dangerous mountain so late at night. The boy stops on the spot and screams desperately, telling the stranger to flee the imminent danger. With his eye glowing a pure lethal red, the student detects the swift approach of the enemy troops through the forest. At the top of the embankment, the mercenaries find the duo, thinking the big kid is an accomplice of the little one. The shooter points his machine gun and warns that anyone who meddles in their business ends up gone. Racking his brain, Yemo recalls his partner's warnings about the goons who dominate the war-torn region. Preparing to fire the heavy weapon, the soldier scoffs, calling the guy unlucky for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The boy cries in terror, begging the young man to run because the mercenaries shoot to kill without mercy. Ignoring the desperate warning, the protagonist becomes a blue lightning bolt and charges up the cliff face at a monstrous speed. In a merciless attack, the boy's magical hand shatters the military firearm as if it were a mere plastic toy. The shooter freezes in total shock, seeing his own weapon destroyed. He can hardly believe it and questions if the boy in front of him is even human. Facing the mercenary, the student warns that he's been threatened with guns way too many times lately. He grumbles that it's really annoying, especially since he hasn't found what he's looking for. Completely out of patience, the boy announces he's in a terrible mood today. With a lethal move, he lands a crushing blow directly to the scared mercenary's chest. Seeing his partner fall, another soldier pulls a knife and charges forward. Furious, cursing the stranger, he tries to avenge his colleague by launching a deadly attack at the target's back. The aggressor puts all his strength into the blow, wanting to slice the enemy, screaming with hatred. The mercenary tells the boy to go straight to the underworld. But Yemo dodges the cutting attack with absurd ease. Using his monstrous agility, he grabs the opponent's armed arm before the blade gets close. Using the momentum, the student throws the soldier's body onto the dirt ground. The violent impact instantly breaks the enemy's posture. The mercenary's knife flies through the air during the heavy fall. Without losing rhythm, the protagonist grabs the enemy weapon in mid-air, already preparing his next move. Like an unstoppable blue lightning bolt, the boy charges the rest of the squad. He executes precise and swift cuts, taking down several soldiers at once in the middle of the forest. Hiding in the bushes, the little boy watches the massacre, amazed. He can't believe the savior took down the group alone and suspects he's the man his sister always talked about. With the entire squad defeated on the ground, the protagonist discards the dirty knife. He just sighs tiredly, grumbling that the whole situation was a huge pain in the neck. Walking through the woods, the boy laments having wasted 3 whole days searching there. He's furious for not finding the spring and still getting guns pointed in his face. Cutting off his thoughts, a timid voice catches his attention. The little boy approaches slowly, trying to talk to his savior, making Yemo turn his head curiously. Full of admiration, the little one asks if the young man is the great celestial god. The boy is sure of it, stating that only a true deity would have such strength. The student doesn't understand any of that crazy talk. He cuts off the boy's excitement on the spot, warning that the kid has the wrong person and that he's no god. Grabbing the protagonist's arm, the little one insists on calling him a god. He introduces himself as a resident of Shea Village and reveals that his older sister is the village's saint. In an act of desperation, the boy kneels in the dirt, begging for help. In tears, he pleads for the hero to save his sister, who was kidnapped by those bad men. Yemo analyzes the situation with a very serious look. He mentally deduces that the armed mercenaries he just crushed were the ones responsible for taking the girl. Noticing the stranger's silence, the child panics, crying hard. The little one asks in anguish if the deity doesn't believe his story. In a flash, the boy remembers a crucial piece of proof to convince the hero. He excitedly announces that he carries a very important mystical symbol given to him by his own sister. The boy extends his hand, displaying a small, shining green pendant. He guarantees that the village saint said the true celestial god would recognize that object on sight. The student's eyes widen in complete shock at the piece in the boy's hand. He immediately recognizes the familiar jewel, losing all his relaxed posture from before. Holding the jewel, the guy confirms that the shape is identical to the one he already has, just looking a bit newer. The kid celebrates the reaction, confirming the prophecy. Kneeling beside the child, the boy tries to confirm if his sister really protects that sacred village item. The boy affirms that the piece is passed down from generation to generation there. Processing everything, the protagonist connects the dots of the mystery. He suspects that Wen Dong's late father was the so-called deity, and that the divine spring is linked to this village. Putting the pendant in his pocket, the student lets out a slight sigh of relief. He concludes that all the headache of that long journey through the mountains was finally worth it. With his objective set, Yimu assumes a posture of pure determination. He calls the child to follow him and announces that the two of them are going to rescue the kidnapped saint right now. The scene cuts to a heavily protected military base in the middle of the night forest. The mercenaries' camp is illuminated by floodlights and surrounded by high walls. In one of the warehouses, a soldier violently throws a young woman into a dark cell. The mercenary yells for the prisoner to stay quiet in there and locks the door. Lying on the cold floor, the pink-haired girl is revealed to be Shi Wangqing, the village saint. Gagged and with her hands tied, she glares at the wall, exuding pure indignation. Heavy footsteps approach the defenseless prisoner in the cell. An intimidating voice echoes through the room, complimenting the girl's beauty and calling her a rare legend of that region. The man stops in front of the kidnapped young woman, revealing his dirty intentions. He comments on the fame of her village for protecting the secret of the divine spring for millennia. Kneeling beside the tied-up girl, the villain tries to give a false sense of security. With pure cynicism in his voice, he tells the saint not to be afraid of his presence there. The intruder reveals he's wearing a sinister mask with frightening glowing eyes. Taking control, he warns that he will ask questions and immediately demands the exact location of the spring. Far from the camp, the duo advances stealthily through the dark woods. The little boy strikes up a conversation very worried, asking what the grand plan is to save the trapped girl. The protagonist replies that they need to reach the enemy base before coming up with any strategy. He analyzes that the gang looks like a well-trained organization. Enveloped in blue magic, Yimo remembers the time he stopped a missile with his bare hands. He admits the test hurt him and that the current army must have even worse weapons on site. Deciding to be more cautious, the student listens to the child vent. The little one laments that his sister planned his escape, but the soldiers ended up finding him in the woods. The swift walk through the forest finally comes to an end as the duo breaks their pace at the edge of an embankment. The child quietly says they've found the right place. Hiding behind the dense foliage, the boy tells the little one not to take another step. He notices the heavy surveillance and warns that the guards will spot them if they advance. The little one points to the illuminated valley, confirming that this is exactly where the saint was imprisoned. The villain's hideout is a true gigantic military complex. Focusing his enhanced vision, the protagonist's eyes glow intensely in the dark. He maps the surroundings, calculating the exact number of enemies on night watch. The base has armed patrols, jeeps, and even armored war tanks. The student observes the heavy structure, confirming his suspicion about the group's arsenal. Even with that entire army protecting the place, the hero shows not a shred of fear. He maintains his cold posture, plotting the best plan to invade the fortress. The guy discreetly slides his hand into his own pocket, looking for a special resource. Silently, he murmurs that he'll need to use an old trick for this mission. The boy displays the golden ring he stole from the former leader of the Song family after their battle. He swears that the spiritual illusion artifact will be extremely useful in this infiltration. Just below on the trail, two guards patrol the area, distracted. One of them tells his partner he's taking a quick smoke break in the bushes and asks for cover for a few minutes. The soldier moves away from his colleague, grumbling indignantly about the pressure of night duty. He complains that the leadership is always rushing everyone for any little thing. As soon as the mercenary enters the blind spot, a blue shadow attacks without warning. The protagonist lands a precise blow to the soldier's neck, knocking the man out instantly. Taking advantage of the silent fall, Yimu drags the unconscious soldier's body behind a giant tree. He does everything with great agility to avoid raising any suspicion. Hiding in the middle of the dense vegetation, the boy activates the power of the stolen ring. A silent, magical aura envelops the area as he prepares his camouflage for the mission. Using the ring's magic, the guy perfectly assumes the appearance of the unconscious soldier. He finds the technique useful, but complains about needing to touch the victim to copy their identity. Suspecting nothing, the partner who stayed on watch loses his patience with the delay. He shouts his friend's name, wanting to know if the cigarette break is over yet. The patroller grumbles, telling his colleague to get back to his post. He reminds him that the two of them still need to finish the team's last round before returning to the barracks. Perfectly playing the part, the disguised boy emerges from the bushes. Responding casually, he waves to his colleague, pretending to be in a hurry to finish the shift. The cold light of the full moon illuminates the tents of the military camp. A tense silence hangs over the isolated fortress as the pair of guards walks toward the entrance. Once inside the base, the stranger carefully analyzes every door and warehouse. In his mind, he tries to deduce in which of those gray buildings the kidnapped girl might be. Suddenly, a strict order interrupts the infiltrator's walk. Someone yells for the soldier to stop, warning that it's forbidden to wander around the camp at that hour of the morning. A tougher officer covered in bandages approaches the spy, demanding an explanation. Suspicious, the big guy demands to know which squad he's from and asks for his identification on the spot. Feigning total submission, the infiltrator lowers his head, apologizing for breaking the rules. He makes up a story that he was just looking for an isolated spot to smoke in peace. The officer checks the ID badge, recognizing recruit Li Yan's reputation as a chain smoker. The student lets out a nervous laugh, accepting the scolding for disrespecting the rules. The big guy threatens to report the infraction, but tells the recruit to follow him to help with an urgent task. With no way to refuse the summons, the spy agrees, feigning great honor. Walking together, the officer reveals that a kid's escape led to the execution of several guards. To avoid new mistakes, he summons the rookie to guard the local prison today. The stranger agrees immediately, a subtle smile spreading across his face at his great luck. He deduces that the super-protected prison is exactly the girl's captivity. The veteran warns the recruit to pay attention on the job. He swears that the place's leader is a merciless man and wouldn't hesitate to take both their heads for any silly mistake. The duo arrives at a brightly lit warehouse in the military base. The big guy tries to lighten the mood, saying it's just the two of them on shift, and they don't need much formality there. Entering the prison facilities, the bright light reveals a corridor filled with fortified cells. The two patrolmen march through the oppressive environment, ensuring security. The officer tries to build a friendship with the recruit during their round. He confesses that he worked his way up the ranks with great effort and understands well the struggle of being at the lowest level of the troop. Through the metal bars, they observe the civilian victims huddled in the darkness. The veteran lets out a heavy sigh, feeling a bit of pity for those innocent people crammed together. Probing the ground, the protagonist throws a bait to his colleague. He questions why the soldier doesn't free the civilians, if he really feels sorry for their tragic situation. The big guy's face darkens, reminding him that obeying orders is his duty. He believes the leader will release the civilians in the end, as they only serve as political hostages with no real value. The student finds the soldier's naivety ridiculous. Knowing the hostages won't get out of there alive, he dismisses the conversation and refocuses on his main mission of finding the girl. Walking through the damp corridors, the infiltrator scans every prison with his eyes. He remembers the little boy's description, confirming that the young woman has very striking pink hair. Suddenly, the boy's attention is stolen by a familiar head of hair at the back of a warehouse. He stops walking on the spot, suspecting he has finally found his desired target. Through the iron bars, Yimo confirms that the woman tied up on the floor is the kidnapped saint. Staring at the locked cell, the boy deduces he needs to come up with a rescue plan soon. With his head elsewhere, the officer mutters that the presence of other people, there will be an annoying problem for him to solve later. Near the cell bars, he tells the injured prisoner that the wound will heal soon if the bandage is changed 2 more times. At that exact moment, Yimo stealthily appears behind the guard, exuding an intense blue aura and fully prepared to strike. Far from the military base, Win Dong waits on the porch, thinking her ally is incredible and certain that he's in no danger out there. The hideout's peace is shattered by the sound of heavy footsteps, slowly approaching on the wooden floor of the entrance. Full of excitement, the young woman turns quickly, calling Yimo's name, thinking he had finally returned from his mission. However, her smile vanishes instantly upon recognizing the figure, asking in total shock what happened to her brother, Fang Nan. The hero appears, walking in great pain, carrying a briefcase and supporting a woman who is all bruised and bleeding on his shoulders. Breathing with difficulty, the criminal leader reveals to his sister that a tragedy has just befallen Gao Yu and the rest of the team.